The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 1, Mo-Wa. In the year 2022 of the Tao calendar, on the 10th day of September. In Tongxian City, outside the gates of Tongxian Sect, on a mountain. 10-year-old Mo-Wa, wearing the plain robe of an outer sect disciple, squatted uninterestedly behind a huge rock at the base of the mountain, holding a piece of grass root and intently drawing complex patterns on the ground. By the hour of Mao, disciples from the sect who came to learn gradually made their way up the mountain, in groups of twos and threes, chatting and laughing. A chubby boy dressed in the standard outer sect robe, adorned with precious jade ornaments and with a round, small-eyed face, accompanied by 2 or 3 attendants, found Mo-Wa behind the rock, contentedly drawing something. The chubby boy looked around left and right, and seeing no mentors from the sect around, he cautiously called out. Mo-Wa. Mo-Wa looked up, his handsome face as picturesque as a painting, his eyes clear as if scooping up a pond of crystal water. The chubby boy lowered his voice and asked, "Is it done?" The 10-year-old Mo-Wa, behaving beyond his years, patted his chest. "I handle things, you just relax," and then took out several arrays from the storage bag behind him, white paper and red ink, and handed them to the chubby boy. "Check if there's anything amiss." The chubby boy solemnly took them, opened the copy, glanced at it, and then said with a pained expression, "I can't understand." Mo-Wa patiently explained. The homework assigned by the mentor was the basic patterns of the 5 elements array. I've drawn it for you and purposely made 6 mistakes to prevent the mentor from realizing that these weren't drawn by you. 6 mistakes, isn't that a bit too many? Mo-Wa silently looked at him. The chubby boy soon realized his mistake and reflected. One shouldn't be too greedy. It's already good that I can hand in the homework assigned by the mentor. Doing too well would only arouse suspicion. Once discovered by the mentor, if my father finds out, he'll surely beat me severely, which would not be worth the loss. Mo-Wa nodded. You're wise, young master to figure it out so quickly. The chubby boy stuffed 2 spirit stones into Mo-Hua's hand. Brother Mo, you have good insight, knowing how clever I am. Here are the spirit stones. I'll still come to you next time the mentor assigns array homework. After saying that, he tucked the arrays into his robe and sprinted up the mountain. Mo-Wa carefully put away the 2 spirit stones and picked up a new piece of grass root to continue drawing on the ground. Shortly after, a thin young master, shaking a gold-sprinkled paper fan, with a sharp and distinguished face and more jade ornaments on his body, approached. Mo-Wa also handed him an array chart. The thin young master glanced at the chart and then signaled to a servant. The servant came forward, took the chart, and handed Mo-Wa 2 spirit stones. The thin young master took the array chart but did not leave. Suddenly, he closed his fan arrogantly and said, "This young master is also very skilled in array formation. It's just that I don't have the time to do these basic formations, so I had you write them for me." Mo-Wa, uninterested in engaging further, picked up the grass root and continued drawing on the ground. The thin young master, slightly annoyed, then sneered, "It's said among the early-stage chi cultivating disciples of Tongxian Gate, you draw the best arrays. I wonder how you compare to this young master. Maybe we should compete sometime?" Mo-Wa thought to himself, "You're already having me do your array homework. What do you think of your own level?" However, adhering to the principle of harmony brings wealth, Mo-Wa still lifted his head and picked flattering words. Of course, the young master's mastery of array formation is far superior. The Qian family is the leading clan in Tongxian City, and your lineage in array formation is unmatched by other cultivators. The thin young master's expression slightly brightened. Then he asked, "Then tell me, among the early-stage chi cultivating disciples of Tongxian Gate, is there anyone whose skill in array formation surpasses mine?" "There are indeed a few." The thin young master displeased. "Who are they?" "Like me, of course." Mo-Wa wouldn't foolishly say that out loud. "There are quite a few, too many to count right now." The thin young master clearly got angry. "This is a good thing." Mo-Wa lied blatantly. The thin young master sneered. "People whose family status isn't as good as mine, who don't have as many spirit stones as I do, but whose array skills surpass mine, there are a lot of them. You mean to say I'm stupid and can't compare to others? How is this a good thing?" Mo-Wa replied, "Think about it, you're just at the chi cultivation stage, yet you have foundation building cultivators working for you. You're just a first grade array master, yet you have second grade array masters at your beck and call. How prestigious is that? The stronger the abilities of the cultivators under you, the greater your own skills appear." The thin young master paused, then had a sudden realization. That does make some sense. "See?" Mo-Wa affirmed. The thin young master nodded, looking down at the myriad of cultivators below, his neck held even higher. "Exactly. No matter how talented you are, how hard you practice, in the end, aren't you still working for my Qian family?" After duping the young master of the Qian family and seeing him off proudly, Mo-Wa continued practicing array formation on the ground with his grass root. Before long, several wealthy cultivators came by, exchanging money for goods, buying several array formations from Mo-Wa with spirit stones. By the time Mo-Hua's hand-copied array formations were sold, he had gathered 12 spirit stones. 12 spirit stones were quite a sum for a rogue cultivator, but for cultivation, they were far from enough. Mo-Wa sighed, a hint of helplessness on his youthful face. For the low-level cultivators, the path of cultivation was bleak. In the first year of the Tao calendar, over 20,000 years ago, the largest power in the cultivation world, the Tao court, unified the 9 provinces of cultivation, enfeoffed noble families and sects, and established a unified rank system to standardize the levels of cultivation professions. The Tao court also promulgated the Tao laws to restrict cultivators from wanton killing, looting, and harvesting life essence. Thanks to this, the cultivation world developed and prospered for over 20,000 years, flourishing tremendously, its territory vast, its cultivators countless. Yet while the Tao court thrived gloriously, the noble families prospered, and the sects dominated regions. Only the low-level rogue cultivators, with no affiliation, lived in hardship, with no hope for advancement in cultivation. After 20,000 years of proliferation in the cultivation world, humans without spiritual roots were naturally eliminated, leaving only those with spiritual roots who could cultivate. But as more cultivators arose, the more spiritual energy they consumed, depleting the spiritual energy of the world. Now, if cultivators wished to advance in cultivation, they needed not only legacy but also spirit stones. However, with large families occupying the spirit mines and major sects monopolizing legacies, ordinary rogue cultivators found no path to cultivation. In Tongxian City, the vast majority of rogue cultivators, lacking legacy and spirit stones, spent their lives merely at the chi cultivation stage. The chi cultivation stage, merely the most humble ants under the vast heavenly path. And Mo-Wa was one of these countless ants. And likely, he would be for life. Mo-Hua's youthful face bore a hint of bitterness. The heavenly path might be fair, but cultivation certainly is not. Mo-Wa, a second-level chi cultivating rogue cultivator, was born into a family of chi cultivators. His father, Mo Shan, hunted demons for a living, always battling with demonic beasts, his body covered in scars. His mother worked in a kitchen, her lungs frequently pained by the heat and smoke, often coughing painfully. His parents scrimped and saved every spirit stone they could just to allow Mo-Wa to join the outer sect of the Tongxian Gate for cultivation. But no matter how Mo-Wa cultivated, with his mediocre spiritual roots, slightly better than ordinary people but far from the genius rampant in the cultivation world, he was destined to be just an average member. No matter how much he cultivated, he would likely remain just a chi cultivator. With the family's dire conditions and lack of spirit stones, Mo-Wa could only cultivate up to the 6th level of chi cultivation like the other disciples before leaving the sect to find a trade to make a living. But Mo-Wa was also naturally frail. The crafting of tools and hunting of demons, usual professions for physically strong cultivators, were not suitable for the inherently weak Mo-Wa, who might even struggle to find a job to feed himself. Should he marry and have children in the future, the burden would increase, and all the spirit stones would be used to support his family. Without spirit stones for cultivation, Mo Hua's cultivation level would forever stagnate, living his life merely as a chi cultivator. Just like all the impoverished rogue cultivators in Tangshan City. Just like the countless low-level cultivators in the cultivation world. Forever just a chi cultivator. The 10-year-old Mo Hua sighed, adjusted his mindset, and then entered the sect for classes. After a day of cultivation, Mo Hua returned to the disciples' residence, read some cultivation scriptures, and by the hour of Z, he lay in bed. As Mo Hua closed his eyes, a fragmented stele appeared in his sea of consciousness. The stele bore no inscriptions, but from the first glance Mo Hua sighed, he knew the name of the stele. Dao Stele. Chapter 2, The Dao Stele. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Ever since Mo Hua could remember, a Dao Stele had appeared in his sea of consciousness, accompanied by some fleeting memories. In those memories, Mo Hua lived a brief life in another world devoid of spiritual energy. In that life, Mo Hua's family was ordinary, but he studied diligently, achieved good grades, and was admitted to college, majoring in fine arts, with a passion for studying traditional Chinese painting and calligraphy. After graduation, he worked in a major company as a graphic designer, often working overtime. He died of overwork in his 20s. His life as a student was spent studying, and after graduation, it was consumed by work, living under constant stress and anxiety. When he came to his senses, he realized he had lived a muddled life and died unexpectedly. In his final moments, his life flashed before his eyes like a reel of film. He realized he hadn't done anything truly valuable in life. He hadn't shown filial piety to his parents, hadn't pursued his dreams, had no love, and hadn't seen the vast world's landscapes. These memories were blurry, and sometimes Mo Hua couldn't tell if they were real or not. Like Zhuangzi dreaming of being a butterfly, it was unclear whether it was Zhuangzi dreaming he was a butterfly, or the butterfly dreaming it was Zhuangzi. As time passed, Mo Hua stopped worrying about it. The past was the past, and now, at the age of 10, he lived in a world of cultivation. And he was a cultivator. A cultivator who could fully comprehend the heavenly Tao, traverse the 9 provinces, pick the sun and moon with one hand, and bury the stars with the other. Or, he could be a cultivator who spent his life cultivating chi, unable to fly, fight, or use many spells, and live a humble life. Without the Dao Stele, Mo Hua guessed he would probably be the latter, humble type. The Dao Stele floated in Mo Hua's sea of consciousness. It was wide, ancient, and oddly shaped, seemingly insubstantial, yet it seemed to ripple with a profound and mysterious aura. At times, it appeared utterly serene, as if nothing existed at all. On this void-like surface of the stele, one could draw array formations, and each time an array was drawn, Mo Hua's spiritual sense would strengthen. In the world of cultivation, array formations were revered. Learning array formations was the most challenging of all cultivation practices, and the most important aspect was spiritual sense. Array formations consisted of patterns that were the painstaking depictions of the heavenly Tao by ancient cultivators. The patterns of the arrays resembled ancient texts or simple drawings, each containing infinite mysteries. Drawing an array formation connected one's sea of consciousness to the secrets of the heavenly Tao, consuming a significant amount of spiritual sense. If a cultivator's spiritual sense was insufficient, drawing an array could lead to exhaustion of spiritual sense, and even the shattering of the sea of consciousness, resulting in death. To become an array master, one must continuously study various array patterns and practice various formations. Thus, learning and practicing array formations was difficult, and array masters often died from insufficient spiritual sense due to forcefully drawing arrays. Mo Hua drew array formations on the Dao Stele, which consumed his spiritual sense, but when he erased the drawn arrays, the spiritual sense was instantly restored, making his spiritual sense abundant. From existence to non-existence, and then from non-existence back to existence, it was akin to the great Tao, profoundly mysterious. And with each drawing of an array formation, Mo Hua's spiritual sense increased slightly. Although it was a minor increase, it was indeed an increase. As far as Mo Hua knew, there were no cultivation techniques in the cultivation world specifically for enhancing spiritual sense. Increases in spiritual sense mostly depended on breakthroughs in cultivation levels. Therefore, even a slight increase in spiritual sense was extremely precious. As long as he kept drawing array formations on the Dao Stele, Mo Hua could improve his skills in array formation, and as long as he continued drawing arrays, his spiritual sense would keep strengthening. With a strong spiritual sense, Mo Hua could learn more advanced and powerful array formations. One day, he could become a powerful array master through this. Array masters held a revered status. Even ordinary array masters who drew arrays for others earned a considerable income in spirit stones. Once one became an array master and could draw various profound arrays, they had the means to continue cultivating and wouldn't have to spend their lives just cultivating chi. Mo Hua thought quietly to himself. But becoming an array master was also fraught with difficulties. Learning arrays and becoming an array master was challenging. In the cultivation categories set by the Tao Court, the recognition of an array master was the strictest and most demanding. Array formations were made up of patterns, with the simplest arrays containing only one pattern. Each additional pattern raised the array's level, enhancing its effectiveness and requiring a greater amount of spiritual sense. Drawing 1 to 5 patterns qualified one as an array apprentice. Drawing 6 to 8 patterns could make one an array master, but such a master was just ordinary and not recognized by the Tao Court's ranking. Only by drawing 9 patterns and passing the Tao Court's ranking assessment could one become a true first-class array master. Becoming a first-class array master was almost like ascending to heaven for a chi cultivating cultivator. A first-class array master was essentially a guest of honor in major families and sects. Even foundation-building cultivators dared not offend them easily. Even if they did nothing, they would receive a monthly stipend of spirit stones from the Tao Court's Tianshu Pavilion and have countless young and beautiful female cultivators breaking down their doors, vying to become their Tao companions. Apart from the extreme difficulty of the assessment, each state also had a quota for becoming a first-class array master. Whether one could become a first-class array master depended both on effort and fate. With bad luck, if the quota in one state was full, even if one had the skills of a first-class array master, they wouldn't get a quota in that assessment and would have to wait for the next one. Some array masters spent their lives attempting the assessment and wasted their years. Countless low-level cultivators exhausted their minds and grew old without ever achieving their lifelong wish to advance to a first-class array master. The so-called quota limitation by the Tao Court was generally just an excuse predetermined by major families and sects. They needed the title of first-class array master to add glory to their direct descendants or direct disciples, making them stand out as geniuses. Those low-level cultivators who toiled to become first-class array masters were just dust underfoot, never noticed. It was already night, and Mo Hua lay in the bedroom of the disciple's residence, his spiritual sense immersed in the sea of consciousness, continuously drawing array formations on the Dao Stele. The array formation Mo Hua was drawing was called the dual-element array, which included 2 patterns and was one of the basic array formations. However, this array formation was one Mo Hua had never successfully drawn before. Early-stage chi cultivating disciples, like those in the outer sect of the Tangshan sect, generally lacked sufficient spiritual sense and could rarely learn an array containing a single pattern in its entirety. But Mo Hua had already mastered the single pattern and could draw it effortlessly. Mo Hua wanted to learn more challenging array formations, so every night, he practiced the dual-element array on the Dao Stele, which included 2 patterns. After dozens of nights of repeated practice and persistent effort, Mo Hua finally succeeded. For an array master learning array formations, each pattern was a threshold, and drawing an additional pattern was like climbing a step. Being able to draw 2 patterns meant Mo Hua's spiritual sense and array mastery were already far superior to his peers in the early chi cultivating stage of the outer sect disciples at Tangshan sect. His array mastery was probably unique among them. Mo Hua breathed a sigh of relief. When the hour of Mao arrived and dawn broke, his spiritual sense left the sea of consciousness, and Mo Hua opened his eyes. Despite having drawn arrays all night, Mo Hua's spiritual sense remained clear, and he didn't feel tired, as if he had just had a restful sleep. He opened the window, and the morning sunlight shone on his fair and delicate face. The rising sun outside the window draped the sky in rosy hues. The 10-year-old Mo Hua took a deep breath, gazing at the horizon with a determined look. As long as he kept practicing array formations and continuously honed his spiritual sense, one day, he would surely become a first-class array master. At that moment, like the rising sun, he would take a significant step towards seeking the path of immortality. And he would no longer be just a chi cultivator. Chapter 3, The Array Master. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua woke up at the hour of the rabbit and started his routine cultivation. An hour later, after concluding his practice, he headed to the classroom to await instruction. Instructors in the sect are collectively called educators, and teach outer sect disciples various disciplines including cultivation, array formation, pill concoction, and artifact forging, while also supervising and guiding their practice. Like other sects in the cultivation world, the Tongxian sect also categorizes disciples into 3 types: direct disciples, inner sect, and outer sect. The outer sect is open to the public for the purpose of teaching and cultivating new practitioners, funded by the disciples' entrance fees, which are essentially tuition. Outer sect disciples learn the publicly available teachings of the sect, and upon graduation or departure, they retain a nominal relationship with the sect but are not materially bound to it. The inner sect is the core of the sect, where disciples are deeply integrated and manage the sect's enterprises such as spirit mines, spirit lands, caves, and commercial operations. Inner sect disciples have access to teachings and spells not typically shared outside, bonded by a master-disciple relationship that ties them closely to the sect. Misdeeds by an inner sect disciple can implicate the sect, and those who betray their masters are often seen as committing a grave transgression, with severe consequences. Direct disciples of the sect are the inner sect's elite, either blood related to the sect leader or elders or having a deep master-disciple relationship. Direct disciples are the core of the sect, often ascending to crucial positions such as sect leader or elder. The teachings of the direct disciples include the sect's most esoteric doctrines, and if a direct disciple betrays the sect, they are hunted down to death. The Dao law prohibits vigilante justice and indiscriminate killing. Pursuing the betraying direct disciple goes against these laws and will bring accountability from the Dao court. However, such matters are typically managed by local Dao court authorities. The Dao court, being the most powerful, does not interfere directly in such affairs, especially concerning major sects with significant influence. But none of this concerned Mo Hua much. He was just an outer sect disciple of the Tongxian sect, neither of the inner sect nor a direct disciple. Even if he wished to be targeted, he was not considered significant enough. Mo Hua longed to join the inner sect, but without spirit stones or connections, it seemed unlikely in this lifetime, let alone becoming a direct disciple. Settling into his seat, Mo Hua focused his mind until a stern-looking educator, around 50 years old and of the 9th level of chi cultivation, entered the room. Among the Tongxian sect, this educator held a high position because he alone taught array formations and was rumored to possibly become a ranked array master within a few years. All chi cultivation phase disciples learned their array formations from him, regardless of their background. He treated all equally, making no exceptions in reprimanding or disciplining those who erred. Thus, the disciples both respected and feared him. Annual tuition was due once a year, hence classes were held annually. Today was the last day of the sect's annual training. After today, a month-long break would commence. The disciples' grades for various courses would also be released today. The educator held a stack of report cards in his hand. The disciples were anxious. Mo Hua was initially indifferent, but seeing his peers' nervousness made him anxious as well. Soon, Mo Hua received his grades. As usual, he excelled in array formations, earning the highest grade, an A. In the Tongxian sect, not many could achieve such a grade in arrays, and Mo Hua was among the few. His cultivation was rated B. It wasn't for lack of effort but because his innate talents were limited. With a mediocre 5-element spiritual root, his progress was constrained. For other subjects that could be mastered with time, like the history of Dao or theories of chi cultivation, he also scored A's. However, for subjects requiring materials purchased with spirit stones, like pill concoction or talisman making, he scored B's and C's. Coming from a poor family, Mo Hua couldn't even afford a proper alchemy furnace. His grades in these subjects depended mostly on luck and were inconsistent. But overall, his performance was commendable. As the saying goes, one brilliant trait overshadows many flaws. Excelling in the difficult art of array formations was no small feat. The educator spoke briefly before stepping out for a moment. The disciples began whispering and glancing at each other's grades. Mo Hua, you got an A in arrays again. A disciple whispered after sneaking a peek at Mo Hua's report card. Another, A. I always get a B. I got a C. Arrays are so hard, my head hurts just thinking about them. The disciples gradually crowded around Mo Hua. HMPH, a disciple from the Qian family, dressed in a silver-white robe, scoffed unhappily. What's so great about that? It's just the simple arrays of the sect that get you an A. What did you get? Another disciple challenged. Why should I tell you? The Qian family disciple retorted disdainfully. Another disciple sneaked a look at his grades and laughed loudly. He got a C. The room burst into laughter. You got a C, and you're laughing at someone who got an A. Shameless. Thicker face than a forge. Even though he's from the Qian family, he's dumber than me. I got a B. The Qian family disciple, red-faced with anger, retorted, what does an A matter? Without an array master, you robes understand nothing. Pointing at Mo Hua and the others, he sneered, you lot, just frogs in a well, without legacy, will never, listen carefully, never produce a real array master. If you don't understand, I can repeat it. Robes never deserve to be array masters. The surrounding disciples fell silent. Mo Hua looked at him as if he were foolish, then stood up, bowed respectfully to someone behind the Qian family disciple, and said, Good day, educator. The Qian family disciple turned stiffly, realizing the educator was standing right behind him, his face livid. The sect is meant for teaching and cultivation, not for your petty comparisons and slander. You can't even master basic arrays, and yet you have the nerve to mock your peers? Now, stand outside as punishment until dusk. Redraw the basic 5 elements array patterns 100 times. Show them to me when school resumes next year. If you can't, don't bother returning. The Qian family disciple's face turned ashen, but he dared not utter a word of rebuttal. The educator, with high authority, could discipline even the Qian family's direct descendants, let alone this lesser branch member. The Qian family disciple sulkily went to stand as punished. The educator stood in front of Mo Hua, silent for a moment, then patted his thin shoulders and sighed, don't mind what others say, just focus on learning. Mo Hua, expression unchanged, respectfully bowed to the educator, this disciple will heed your words. The educator nodded, then moved to the educator's seat and gave a few more instructions before announcing the sect's annual break, allowing everyone to go home. The disciples, barely containing their excitement, bowed to the educator, thanking him for a year of guidance and cultivation, then scattered like birds and beasts. The sect was on break, and the disciples were overjoyed. Mo Hua watched them, his heart heavy. These chi cultivation period disciples, mostly young and carefree, had no idea of the hardships of a cultivator's life. Thinking of his father's scars from hunting demons and his mother's worn face, Mo Hua's heart ached, and he sighed deeply. Becoming a ranked array master was still a distant dream, but within his means, he wanted to make life better for his parents. With his grades in hand and 12 spirit stones in his pocket, Mo Hua left the Tongxian sect, not heading home but towards the market instead. Chapter 4, The Fire-Resisting Hairpin. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The market is a place for low-level cultivators to trade cultivation items, offering a miscellaneous array of items including pills, array formations, and spiritual tools, though generally of low grade and mixed quality. As the new year approaches, the market is bustling with many cultivators coming and going, creating a noisy atmosphere. Mo Hua heads straight to a small stall at the end of the street. The stall owner, an elderly man surnamed Sun, known to acquaintances as Old Sun, has a son who works in Wanbao Building. Occasionally, his son gets some substandard goods that Wanbao Building doesn't want and sells them cheaply to his father for street vending. Old Sun, hawking his wares, looks up to see Mo Hua running towards him, his pale face flushed with exertion, and can't help but tease. Little brother, what spiritual tool are you here to look at today? Don't tell me you're just looking and not buying again. With a wave of his hand, Mo Hua declares, buying. Old Sun wonders, isn't it a few days till New Year's? Did your family give you your New Year's money so early? Mo Hua responds, slightly annoyed, what New Year's money? This is money I've earned myself. He pats his pocket as he speaks. Hearing the clear sound of spirit stones clinking in the pocket, Old Sun perks up and eagerly says, I have all kinds of pills, arrays, and tools here, all beautiful and affordable, guaranteed satisfaction, and all from Wanbao Building, so you know the quality is top-notch. What are you looking to buy? If the quality was really top-notch, Wanbao Building would sell it themselves, but Mo Hua isn't concerned. He can't afford Wanbao Building's prices anyway. Do you have any fire-resisting spiritual tools? Old Sun, with a knowing look, pulls out a burlap bag and spreads it out in front of Mo Hua. You mentioned this a few days ago, and I paid attention. I went back and specifically found a few excellent fire-resisting tools, all portable and beautifully designed. What do you think? Mo Hua is surprised at Old Sun's preparedness, a testament to decades of market experience, always ready to seize a business opportunity. The spiritual tools displayed before Mo Hua vary in style. There are rings, jade pendants, lampstands, and even a hood and a scarf. By the looks of it, his stall is the most well-stocked in the market. After a careful examination, Mo Hua picks up a hairpin, antique in design yet delicate, and asks, what is this pin? Old Sun explains, this is a fire-resisting hairpin, a standard-issue spiritual tool. It's made to a uniform standard, with a basic fire-resisting array carved on it. It needs to be charged with spirit stones, and when activated, it can isolate fire chi, keeping the wearer cool. Though it consumes spirit stones, one stone can last 3 months, making it quite economical. Mo Hua looks doubtful. A standard-issue tool from Wanbao Building being sold here must have some defects, right? Old Sun laughs, you know quite a bit. If there were no defects, it would be twice as expensive at Wanbao Building. But saying it has defects is not quite right. Pointing at the peony pattern on the pin, Old Sun continues, the craftsman added a few extra strokes while engraving this peony, so it didn't meet the standard and was categorized as a second-grade item. But the array inside is intact, and its effectiveness remains the same. Mo Hua nods, feeling this pin is the most suitable, and asks, how many spirit stones? Old Sun strokes his beard, a flat rate, 15 spirit stones. Mo Hua shakes his head, 5. Old Sun's eyes widen, who taught you to bargain like this? Mo Hua, a bit embarrassed, I heard it at other stalls, that's how they all haggle. Old Sun laments, the times are indeed changing for the worse, even good kids are getting corrupted. Then he says, 14 stones, I can't go any lower. Mo Hua tentatively offers, 6. After some haggling, they settle on 10 stones. Old Sun feels he can't go any lower, not a single spirit stone less, and Mo Hua, having inquired about the prices at other stalls, knows there's no cheaper deal, so he agrees. Old Sun takes the spirit stones from Mo Hua and wraps the hairpin in a cheap but nicely made paper box, handing it over while constantly muttering. If my grandson were half as clever as you, I'd have him man the stall, but alas, my grandson is too simple, barely speaks to strangers. Mo Hua, satisfied with the purchase, waves goodbye to Old Sun and walks away with a spring in his step. A nearby stall owner chuckles, Old Sun, you lost money this time. Old Sun strokes his beard, not really, just made a little less. The stall owner, curious, asks, 10 spirit stones is no small sum, I wonder who the kid bought the hairpin for. Fire-resisting hairpins are for resisting the chi of the stove, who else could it be for? Watching Mo Hua's figure gradually receding into the distance, Old Sun sighs softly, he's a good kid. Mo Hua's home is on a quiet street at the edge of Tongxian City. The house is old and just big enough for a family of 3. The neighborhood is mostly inhabited by low-level chi cultivating loose cultivators who make a living by doing odd jobs. Although not wealthy, the community is vibrant with everyday life. As evening falls, smoke rises from the houses, and dim lights flicker. Mo Hua rushes through the door, calling, Mom, I'm back. A plainly dressed woman with a gentle face steps out from the inner room. Seeing Mo Hua, her eyes light up with surprise, and she pulls him close, touching his head and pinching his face, before saying, have you been working too hard at cultivation? You've lost a lot of weight. Mo Hua replies, I haven't lost weight, and then takes out the box, Mom, this is for you. The woman, momentarily stunned, opens the box to find a hairpin. This is a fire-resisting hairpin. You work in the kitchen at the inn, and being exposed to the heat for long periods isn't good for your health. This pin can shield you from the heat, making you feel much cooler. The woman, named Lu Ruha, is Mo Hua's mother and a low-level chi cultivating loose cultivator in Tongxian City. Life as a loose cultivator is tough, and there aren't many good opportunities to earn spirit stones, especially for those with children. Raising a child, covering living expenses, and affording the materials needed for cultivation pose significant challenges for ordinary cultivators. Lu Ruha has good culinary skills and helps in the kitchen of a small inn in the city. Larger inns usually use stoves crafted by artisans, which consume spirit stones to convert spiritual energy into cooking heat. To save costs, smaller inns do not use spirit stones for cooking but instead have cultivators with fire spiritual roots use their spiritual power to generate cooking heat. Over time, this can harm the body, drying out the meridians and causing symptoms like lung pain and dry coughs. As Lu Ruha works in the kitchen, she periodically uses her spiritual power to provide heat, earning about 30 spirit stones a month. Although it harms her health, it's considered a decent job for loose cultivators, many of whom would like the opportunity but don't get it. Looking at the hairpin in her hand, Lu Ruha presses her lips together, silent. Mo Hua quickly adds, the spirit stones for the hairpin were earned by helping fellow disciples, no cheating, stealing, or robbing involved. Lu Ruha can't help but smile, feeling warm yet slightly teary. I can't accept this hairpin, dear. You're still young, and you'll need many spirit stones for your future cultivation. Save them, I can take care of myself, you don't need to worry. Mo Hua confidently says, we can worry about the future later. Maybe I'll become a great cultivator at the Golden Core or Nascent Soul stage one day, and then I'll have as many spirit stones as I need. Lu Ruha laughs, tapping Mo Hua's forehead, at such a young age, you've already learned to boast. Mom, please keep it. I bargained with others for a long time to buy it. If you don't take it, then I wasted all that effort. Mo Hua then takes the hairpin and carefully inserts it into Lu Rua's hair, then runs to get a mirror. Look, does it look good? Seeing the reflection of the woman in the mirror, adorned with the simple yet elegant hairpin, and looking graceful and beautiful, Lu Rua's heart softens, and she gently says, I'll keep the hairpin. But next time, I won't accept any more gifts. Okay, Mo Hua nods repeatedly, Mom, is dinner ready? I'm hungry. Yes, it's all your favorite dishes, eat up. Lu Ruha is an excellent cook, and although the dishes are simple and lack spiritual essence, they are delicately and deliciously prepared. After eating and chatting with his mother, Mo Hua returns to his room to read. After midnight, Mo Hua enters his sea of knowledge and practices array formations on the Dao steel all night. When he wakes, it's dawn. Mo Hua sits cross-legged, holding a spirit stone, continuing his routine cultivation practice. When he opens his eyes again, the sky is slightly bright, and the beautiful morning sunlight shines into the room. Mo Hua stretches lazily in bed, preparing to get up, then hears heavy footsteps outside. Mo Hua rolls over and peers through the door crack, seeing a man covered in bloodstains and looking exhausted step into the house. It's Mo Hua's father, Mo Shan. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 5, Mo Shan. Mo Shan is a chi cultivation beast hunter of the 8th level who makes his living by hunting demonic beasts and harvesting their materials. Though it sounds impressive, it is in fact a grueling and risky occupation. Most demonic beasts in the cultivation world are far stronger than human cultivators, making them exceedingly difficult to hunt. Typically, demonic beasts of the same realm require a team of 5 to 10 cultivators for a successful hunt, and even then, success isn't guaranteed. Even if the beast is slain, its more valuable parts are often damaged during the fight, fetching only a modest sum of spirit stones. The profits, once divided according to each team member's contribution, are minimal. Injuries are another hazard. The cost of medicinal pills for treatment can be substantial, potentially leading to a financial deficit. A serious injury might permanently end a hunter's ability to make a living. Mo Shan is a burly man, a solo practitioner with a rugged, handsome face marked by the trials of his trade. Though still young by cultivator standards, his life outdoors has weathered his appearance. Upon entering his home, Mo Shan sets down his blade in the unknown beast's pelt he carried on his shoulder, sighing in relief. His coat is worn and stained with blood, both fresh and old, mostly from beasts, but some from himself or his comrades. This hunt must have been rough, Mo Hua guessed quietly. Mo Shan's brows were furrowed, his expression somber, and his blood-stained clothes added a forbidding air to his presence. However, this fierceness melted away when he saw his wife, like a battle-weary warrior returning home, shedding his heavy, scar-laden armor. Is everything okay at home? Mo Shan asked, his voice hoarse from fatigue but still gentle. Lu Ruha was tidying his belongings and fetched a clean cloth to wipe his face. Everything is fine at home, don't worry. Seeing his dusty face, she couldn't help saying, take care of yourself when you're outside. Mo Shan smiled and then looked around the house. Has Huer returned? He just got back yesterday. The sect is on holiday now, and he's probably still asleep. I'll go wake him. He'll be so happy to know you're back. Mo Shan glanced at the blood and wounds on his clothes and stopped her. Let him sleep a bit more. Sect cultivation is tough too. I'll take a bath first, apply some herbal medicine, and change these clothes. That's a good idea. Why don't you eat something first? Lu Ruha suggested. Having traveled all night, Mo Shan was famished. Lu Ruha's cooking was excellent, and even though the meals were simple, Mo Shan devoured them hungrily. Usually, he would have to settle for cold, hard rations or sparingly use vitalizing pills. But now, eating the meals his wife prepared washed away all his fatigue and hardships. Mo Shan ate a lot and drank a large bowl of fragrant, sticky porridge, finally exhaling a long breath of relief. Lu Ruha, noticing the bloodstains on his clothes, then asked worriedly, did someone get hurt again? We lost 3, and old Chu was seriously injured. Mo Shan sighed as he began to recount the hunt. We were 8 when we cornered a demonic wolf over 3 meters tall. We had it trapped and were slowly draining its demonic energy to finish it off. However, another hunting team passed by, mostly novices who hadn't seen much blood yet. They recklessly tried to steal our kill and ended up being devoured by the beast. The beast replenished its energy from their blood and went berserk. Old Chu and I used up all our spiritual energy to finally take it down, but the loss was heavy. Old Chu lost an arm and bled profusely, his vital energy severely depleted. He might not be able to continue as a hunter. Old Chu has a 2-year-old child, and his wife only supplements their income with some gardening. Now with his severe injuries and the high cost of healing pills, even if he recovers, I don't know how his family will manage, Mo Shan added bitterly. Lu Ruha sighed. When we were in a tough spot, Old Chu lent us some spirit stones even though he wasn't well off. We still have some saved. Let's give them to Old Chu first to at least get him treated. Mo Shan nodded. That wolf beast hasn't been sold yet. It should fetch about 300 spirit stones. We'll give Old Chu a larger share and lend him some more to get through this, but... Mo Shan felt guilty. Huer is supposed to start his sect cultivation next year. I was hoping to earn enough from this hunt, but now... Lu Ruha held his hand. As long as the family is safe, we can always find a way to earn spirit stones. I've saved some from working in the tavern kitchen, and we can borrow some more. It won't delay Huer's cultivation next year. Mo Shan looked silently at his wife, her once youthful and beautiful face now slightly worn. He felt even more remorseful. Quit the kitchen job at the tavern. The heat harms the heart, lungs, and meridians. Next year, I'll find more hunters, kill more beasts, and earn more spirit stones. I won't let you suffer like this. Lu Ruha smiled wryly, proud yet modest, and pointed to her hairpin. See what this is. Mo Shan hadn't noticed when he walked in, but now, he saw that the hairpin was different from the usual. What's this pin? It's a gift from Huer, called a fire-resisting hairpin. It wards off the heat from the stove, keeping the heart and meridians much cooler. Huer is really thoughtful. Mo Shan felt both reassured and ashamed. I haven't given you a gift in years. Lu Ruha chuckled. Huer is your son, so his gift is as if you gave it. Mo Shan laughed, then bittersweetly added, in cultivation, they often talk about fate. Perhaps my greatest fortune in this life is having a wife like you and a sensible son like Huer. Lu Ruha playfully glared at her husband, but couldn't help laughing. Watching his wife smile, Mo Shan silently resolved to recruit more skilled beast hunters after the new year, aiming to venture deeper into the mountains to slay more demonic beasts, earn more spirit stones, and ensure his family would not endure such hardships. Moreover, he was determined to secure a better future for his son. Mo Hua heard everything from inside the house and sighed. Unbeknownst to him, his parents had always endured the hardships of the cultivation life. Perhaps in any world, the burdens parents bear are always much heavier than their children imagine. Even as cultivators, they toiled for spirit stones and struggled for a living. Though cultivators and mortals may seem different, in some ways, they are not so different at all. Reflecting on this, Mo Hua wondered silently, is there a way I too can earn spirit stones? Chapter 6, Spirit Stones. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua thought to himself in the room for a while, waiting until Mo Shan and Lu Ruha finished their conversation. He changed into casual clothes and then, pretending to know nothing, happily walked out of the house. The family of 3 was eating. Mo Shan had already eaten, so Mo Hua kept talking to him about the amusing hunting tales. Mo Shan selectively shared a few stories, such as a one-eyed wolf, a 2-headed tiger, and a 3-legged wild boar. Some teams killed a mature demonic beast but failed to retrieve its core. They stripped off some worthless fur and only realized their mistake when it was too late. The core had already been taken by others, causing the team leader to regret so deeply that he spat blood and fainted. Someone even captured a beast of ancient lineage, which was then sold to a major sect for a high price, securing a life of ease. However, one day, that person vanished without a trace. Mo Hua listened with great interest, aware of the bloody, dangerous, and cruel elements his father intentionally omitted from the tales. Parents always wish to shield their children from harsh realities, hoping for a pure and joyful childhood. After the stories, 3 little heads peeked outside the door, their eyes gleaming as they saw Mo Shan and Lu Ruha at home. They stood in unison and greeted. Hello, Uncle Mo, Auntie Lu. The 3 children, surnamed Meng, lived on the same street and their families also relied on hunting beasts for a living. The Meng elders were friends with Mo Shan and lived nearby, so Mo Hua had played with them since they were young. The 3 were named Meng Da Hu, Meng Shuang Hu, and Meng Xiao Hu, in the order of their birth. In the area near Tongshan City, tiger-like demonic beasts were the strongest. Naming children after tigers was hoped to endow them with tiger-like strength and majesty. True to their names, the children looked robust and strong. Mo Hua, the youngest and often ill as a child, was unlikely to grow up tiger-like. Seeing his delicate and clean features, resembling a porcelain doll, Mo Shan took the character Hua from Lu Rua's name for his son, calling him Mo Hua. Lu Ruha gave each child a steamed bun. They said they didn't want it, but couldn't help reaching out to take it and stuffed it into their mouths, their cheeks bulging as they said, "Thank you, Auntie Lu." Lu Rua's cooking was the best in the neighborhood, which made the other children quite envious of Mo Hua. Mo Shan waved them off. "Go play together, but remember to come back for lunch." Mo Hua and the 3 children nodded and dashed out the door. Among the Ming children, Da Hu was straightforward, Shuang Hu was clever, and Xiao Hu was talkative. All were older and taller than Mo Hua, usually leading the play. Da Hu talked nonstop about where to see dragon dances, where fireworks were lit, where it was crowded, and where there were dancing, graceful girls. But they talked too much and couldn't decide where to go. Finally, they agreed that adults pick, but children want everything. They would visit each place. As the year end approached, disciples seeking to join sects were on holiday, and cultivators working abroad returned home, making Tongxian City much livelier than usual, and the streets were packed. Some at the Qi cultivation stage flaunted their martial skills with swords and spears, while spirit cultivators performed flashy, albeit useless, spells that left the children awestruck and envious. Those skilled in crafting mechanisms made toys that moved on their own with just a bit of spirit power, wooden rabbits, dogs, cats, and various other items, too numerous to fully take in. Da Hu, Shuang Hu, and Xiao Hu were having a blast, finding everything fresh and exciting, exclaiming with joy, while Mo Hua played along but kept an eye out for ways to earn spirit stones. Looking around, he found that the profitable ventures were already taken, and those not yet undertaken were beyond his current capabilities. Watching the cultivators performing and hawking their skills, Mo Hua sighed inwardly, realizing that making a living was not easy. Shuang Hu noticed Mo Hua's dispirited mood and asked, "Mo Hua, are you worried about something?" Upon hearing this, Da Hu immediately said, "Has someone been bullying you? I'll beat them up." Xiao Hu also nodded vigorously, "Beat them, beat them." The Ming family elders had always instructed them to take care of the frail Mo Hua, and with Lu Ruha making delicious food and always saving some for them, the 3 felt indebted and loyal. Whenever someone tried to bully Mo Hua, they didn't hesitate to roll up their sleeves and fight. Mo Hua, recognized as the smartest among the local cultivators, often helped with homework questions, which only strengthened their bond. Seeing them eager to fight, Mo Hua couldn't help but smile and said, "No one's bullying me. I was just thinking about how to earn some spirit stones." Earning spirit stones. Da Hu and the others also grew concerned, not knowing much about that. They could help in a fight, but earning spirit stones was beyond them. Mo Hua's thoughts turned again, asking, "Do you know how array masters earn spirit stones?" The vast world of cultivation was limited to daily practice and studying array formations for Mo Hua, leaving much unknown. He was aware that becoming an array master meant not worrying about basic needs, but how ordinary, especially low-level apprentices, made a living was still a mystery to him. Da Hu often wondered about and might know something Mo Hua didn't. After thinking, Da Hu shook his head and said, "The certification for array masters is very tough. Our neighborhood doesn't even have a first-rank array master, and I don't know much about it. Not just our neighborhood, even in the whole of Tongxian City, there aren't many array masters, and even fewer who have passed the certification to become first rank. Our distant uncle in the Ming family has been studying arrays for 20 years and still hasn't passed." Xiao Hu said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You heard wrong. Uncle Meng is just an array apprentice. He wanted to study under a master but couldn't answer the questions posed by others, and they wouldn't accept him." Shuang Hu interjected, then counted on his fingers. "Apprentice, ordinary array master, first rank array master. Uncle Meng isn't even close to certification. Those who are, already have some fame." Mo Hua curiously asked, "So, how does he make a living?" "I heard he draws simple arrays for merchant guilds and earns some spirit stones, then uses those to buy ink and paper to practice more arrays, then goes on helping the guilds with arrays without ever becoming a master." "Merchant guilds, huh?" "Yes, even if you don't make it to first rank, being an ordinary array master and drawing arrays for merchant guilds can still earn you quite a few spirit stones, enough to not worry about food and drink," Shuang Hu explained, then asked Mo Hua, "Do you want to be an array master?" "Yeah," Mo Hua didn't hide it. "I'm too weak physically, probably can't become a beast hunter, and would likely lose half my life to a single swipe from a beast. I need to find a way to make a living, but talking about this is still too far off. I first want to see if I can earn some spirit stones. If I can, I'll treat you to pastries." Hearing this, Da Hu and the others instantly brightened up. Sure. You're so smart, you'll definitely be able to earn spirit stones and become an array master." Pastries. For ordinary cultivator families, even simple street pastries were a rare treat. After another round of visiting, they hadn't seen any of the dancing girls they talked about, but they visited everything else, and around noon, they all returned home satisfied for lunch. Mo Hua finished lunch and told his parents he was going out to play, then headed alone to the north side of Tongxian City. The north side of Tongxian City was prosperous, and the south side was lively. The south side had many markets, mostly small vendors and stalls, while the north side had more merchant guilds, offering everything from spirit talismans to pill instruments, with more regular products of better quality and, of course, higher prices. But Mo Hua wasn't there to shop. He didn't have the spirit stones. He walked from one end of the street to the other, looking at all the merchant guilds, then entered one that had an array drawn on its entrance but was comparatively shabby and quiet, attracting the least business. Chapter 7, Destiny's Shop. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. A signboard hung in front of the business premises, inscribed with the words, Destiny's Shop. The interior was compact and somewhat rudimentary, adorned with array formations of various patterns. Some arrays seemed to have been hanging there for a while, their ink slightly faded. The counter was relatively high, and seated atop it was a middle-aged, somewhat portly cultivator with a clean-shaven face, who appeared to be the manager of the shop. A bell hung from the doorframe, ringing crisply as Mo Hua entered. The chubby manager, who had been dozing off with half-closed eyes, was startled awake by the bell. He looked around, saw no one at first, and was about to get angry when he lowered his head and spotted a small head peering over the counter. The manager paused, noticing Mo Hua was alone, and then spoke, "Young man, where are your parents?" Mo Hua shook his head. "I'm not here for my parents, I'm here for you." The manager paused again. "You're looking for me? What for? Do you need someone to help draw array formations?" The manager found this amusing and teased, "What, you, a little guy, can draw arrays?" Mo Hua replied modestly, "A little." Laughing, the manager said, "A little won't do. You need at least to be at the 6th level of Qi cultivation, possess a sect's learning jade slip, be an array apprentice, have an array master as a teacher, and also pay a deposit before you can draw arrays for us." Mo Hua was taken aback. He hadn't known about these many requirements, none of which he met. Quickly thinking, Mo Hua said, "All right, I lied. I'm not very good, I'm helping my brother with it." The manager didn't mind, asking, "What does your brother do?" "My brother is an array apprentice, studying under an array master and helps draw basic arrays for shops like this to earn some ink and paper money. He's too busy with his studies, so I run errands for him." Mo Hua then slightly altered the identity of a distant uncle from the Ming family to fit the story. The manager stroked his chin, pondered for a moment but then refused. "No, verbal assurances aren't enough. If your brother wants to draw arrays for our shop, he has to come himself." Mo Hua quickly added, "Do you also require a deposit?" The manager nodded, "Correct." "The deposit, does it cover the cost of the array patterns and the materials needed to draw them?" "If so, even if I lied and you took the deposit, you'd merely be selling an array and materials at a fair price, not making a profit but not losing either." Indeed, the deposit was higher than the cost of the materials, and as for the array patterns, they were just the simplest and most common, costing hardly any spirit stones. Thinking this over, the manager hesitated. "Is business not so good here?" Mo Hua then asked. Business was indeed slow, with few customers each day, few arrays sold, and even fewer array masters, or apprentices, willing to draw for them, which explained the shop's quietness. However, the manager wouldn't admit it, and held his head high, albeit a bit sheepishly. Seeing his reaction, Mo Hua seized the opportunity. My brother's arrays are very well drawn. Everyone says that in a few years, he'll definitely become an array master. After another 10 or 20 years, passing the qualification test, he might even become a first-grade array master. Then he'll naturally help you draw more advanced arrays, and you'll profit, won't you? Qualification? That's not so easy. The manager inwardly scoffed, but as the saying goes, don't despise the poor youth, who knows about the future. If he could become a first-grade array master, indeed, it would be good to form a kind relationship for future favors. Rules, well, they're mostly for show, as long as the arrays are drawn correctly. You make some sense, the manager said, but you said your brother draws well. That's just your word, which can't be taken as fact. You're just a child and don't know good from bad in arrays. How about this? Show me an array your brother has drawn. If it's really not bad, I'll agree to do business with you. Mo Hua didn't actually have a brother, nor an array drawn by one. He had his own drawn arrays in his storage bag, but those were from his sec lessons, breaking down basic array patterns or their combinations, slightly different from complete arrays. A discerning eye would see right through if he handed them out. After a moment's thought, Mo Hua brightened. I didn't bring any of my brother's arrays, but he once taught me a bit. I'll draw for you, and you'll see if my brother's arrays are good. You can draw arrays? The manager was taken aback, thought for a moment, and then agreed. He was curious about how well this child could draw, so he pulled out an array pattern from under the counter, handed over some ink, paper, and a brush to Mo Hua. The pattern was titled Blazing Fire Array, a complete array containing 3 patterns, taught at none of his sex lessons, a challenge beyond a mere beginner's level. Real arrays contain at least 3 interconnected patterns, like the Blazing Fire Array in front of him. Mo Hua glanced at the manager and declared confidently, this is too difficult. If I could draw it, I'd be earning spirit stones by drawing arrays myself. Why would I need my brother? The manager slapped his forehead, having forgotten. A child his age couldn't possibly draw a complete array. It was too much to expect, and it was also because he had never dealt with children in the shop before that he had overlooked this. The manager then pointed to a small part of the array pattern in the upper left corner. If you can draw this part of the pattern, I'll agree to your request and have your brother draw arrays for us. Mo Hua looked at the upper left corner, quietly relieved. It was a basic fire elemental pattern from his sect, with some detailed modifications and connections still within his grasp. Mo Hua picked up the brush, dipped it in ink, and began sketching the pattern. Moments later, the pattern was completed. The manager nodded slightly as Mo Hua drew. His handling of the brush was skilled and fluid, not tense at all, clearly well-founded. The pattern he drew was up to standard, without any mistakes. If not for family teaching, his brother must have taught him well. The manager leaned more toward the latter, considering Mo Hua's simple but neat attire, clearly not from a wealthy family, whereas a cultivator from a family with array knowledge would surely not be so destitute. Looking again at the pattern Mo Hua had drawn, the manager was quite satisfied. 10 spirit stones for the deposit, and I'll give you the necessary array patterns and materials. 10 stones. Mo Hua was stunned. He had only 3 spirit stones on him. He had earned 12 by copying array assignments for his fellow disciples, spent 10 on a fire-resisting hairpin, saved 1 by scrimping and saving, and then, that was all, his entire assets. He'd have to wait until the day of the array coursework assessment to earn that many spirit stones by drawing arrays for his peers. Who knew how long that would take? Seeing Mo Hua's expression, the manager realized the boy didn't have the spirit stones but said nothing. It was normal for a child not to have so many. Cultivation life was tough, and those in managerial positions often found themselves short of money, let alone a poor independent cultivator like Mo Hua. The manager kindly reminded, without spirit stones for the deposit, you can't take this job. Seeing Mo Hua seem a bit disheartened, he couldn't help but add, I'll keep this order for your brother. When you have the spirit stones, come and take it. Mo Hua nodded earnestly, okay, I'll go and ask my brother for the spirit stones, then come back to take the order. The manager waved his hand, go play for now, it's still early. I'm going to close my eyes and rest a bit. With that, he slowly closed his eyes and dozed off. Mo Hua left the shop, squatting on the steps, cupping his cheeks, puzzled. 7 spirit stones. Mo Hua thought about earning spirit stones by drawing arrays, but to draw arrays and earn stones, he first needed stones. Without stones, he couldn't draw arrays to earn stones. Mo Hua's head spun. Ask his parents? Mo Hua shook his head. The family needed spirit stones for living expenses. That morning, he had heard his parents talking about Uncle Chu from the hunting team who had broken his arm and needed to borrow spirit stones for recovery, plus Mo Hua's sec fees for the next term. It seemed unlikely the family had any spare spirit stones. Borrow from someone? Mo Hua's friends were even poorer than he was. None had spirit stones to lend him. As Mo Hua pondered deeply, he suddenly heard someone exclaim loudly. Mo Hua, you're actually here. Mo Hua looked up to see a richly dressed, chubby young master, surrounded by servants, staring at him angrily. Chapter 8, and Xiaofu. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Young master in? The lavishly dressed chubby boy is the eldest young master of the Yin family from Tongxian City, named in Xiaofu. Perhaps his father didn't have much hope for him, hence the name Xiaofu, which implies small wealth. However, because he is chubby, his fellow sect members privately also call him Little Fadian. Little Fadian is somewhat slow and sometimes acts like a spoiled young master, but he isn't malicious at heart and often asks Mo Hua to help him with drawing array formations for his assessments. He can't draw array formations at all, doesn't want to be punished by the tutor, nor does he want to go home and face his father's wrath, so he has no choice but to seek Mo Hua's help. At this moment, Little Fadian was fuming. How could you, Mo Hua? I thought of you as a friend, yet you look down on me? Mo Hua was baffled. How have I looked down on you? Little Fadian pulled out a formation diagram annotated in red ink from his robe. You helped me with my array homework, and you got 6 places wrong. But when you helped that skinny monkey Qianxing, you didn't make a single mistake. Isn't that looking down on me? Are you saying I'm worse than him? The skinny monkey he mentioned was the thin young master, Qianxing, a direct descendant of the prominent Qian family. The Qian family is the most influential family in Tongxian City, with the Yin family a close second. Both families run businesses and are competitors, with a long-standing grudge between their ancestors. Even the younger generations are at odds in every aspect, including their opposing physical appearances, one fat, one thin, like fire and water. Yet, both are similarly lazy in their cultivation practices and ignorant, which is considered on par with each other. Although both are considered profligates, Qianxing has a worse reputation for being arrogant and bullying others using his family's influence. Rumors say he's done many bad deeds behind the scenes, but because of his family's backing, they always get swept under the rug. Compared to him, Little Fadian just indulges in eating and drinking, flaunting his wealth without much oversight since his father keeps him on a short leash. So that's the issue? Seeing Mo Hua's indifference, Little Fadian's face turned red with rage. I'm helping you here, Mo Hua said. Little Fadian looked at him skeptically. How are you helping me? How does your array formation compare to young Master Qian's? Little Fadian said confidently, at least it can't be worse than his. Mo Hua was speechless. Was that something to be proud of? Mo Hua continued, exactly, how could he draw an array formation without a mistake? Of course, if I can't do it, he definitely can't either. So, you know this, how could the tutor not notice? The tutor is always strict and will surely punish him and inform his father. Losing face, his father won't let him off easily. Little Fadian pondered for a moment. That makes some sense, but I haven't heard about Qian Skinny getting beaten. Are you lying to me? Mo Hua gave him a look. Family disgraces are not aired publicly. A father hitting his son would definitely happen behind closed doors. You wouldn't know about it. Little Fadian nodded apprehensively. You're right, my dad beats me and never lets anyone know. Mo Hua added, did old Master not only not beat you this time but also praise you? Little Fatty Ann instantly brightened up. Right, the tutor gave me a B grade, and my dad was so pleased that he even gave me lots of good things. Little Fatty Ann's mood changed quickly. He was no longer angry and even felt a bit guilty towards Mo-Wa. I misunderstood you. Let me treat you to a meal at the Spirit Meal Tower. My family owns it, eat as much as you like. Mo-Wa didn't expect Little Fatty Ann to be unexpectedly generous but still declined. No need, I have other things to do. Little Fatty Ann was dissatisfied. My dad always taught me to repay favors. If you don't go, it means you look down on me. Thinking about his previously bruised behind from his father's punishments, Little Fatty Ann insisted more firmly. This favor is not small. You must go. Little Fatty Ann could be quite stubborn when he got into one of his moods. Mo-Wa was a bit headache-inducing. He glanced at the door of the array pavilion and suddenly said, Young Master Ann, let's skip the Spirit Meal Tower, but there's a favor you could do for me. Little Fatty Ann slapped his chest. Say it. Lend me 10 spirit stones. Little Fatty Ann frowned. He didn't actually have 10 spirit stones on him. Old Master Ann, to prevent him from frivolously spending spirit stones, never allowed him to carry more than 5. He could put the meal at Spirit Meal Tower on his dad's tab since it was just food and went through the accounts, which his dad wouldn't mind. His dad feared him wasting spirit stones on frivolous things with no paper trail, not knowing where the money went could cause big trouble. Little Fatty Ann took out the 5 spirit stones he had and then looked at his servant. Give me all your spirit stones. I'll give them back to you at home. The servant reluctantly handed over his spirit stones, just enough to make 10. Little Fatty Ann handed the spirit stones to Mo-Wa. Here you go, you don't need to return them. Mo-Wa shook his head. I'll return them in a few days. Mo-Wa weighed the spirit stones in his hand, then carefully pocketed them, bid farewell to Little Fatty Ann, and returned to the array pavilion, which was still devoid of customers, with the manager still dozing off. Mo-Wa entered, tiptoed, and placed the 10 spirit stones on the counter. I brought the spirit stones. The manager woke from his nap at the sound of the bell, saw Mo-Wa and the spirit stones on the table. The manager picked up the spirit stones, inspected them, and found them to be of decent quality, nodded, then reached under the counter and pulled out a storage bag. Here's a diagram for the blazing fire array, along with 10 array papers and spirit ink, enough to draw 10 copies of the blazing fire array. This order has a 10-day deadline. If it's late, all deposits will be forfeited. For each correctly drawn blazing fire array, you'll earn a spirit stone, but if you make a mistake or it doesn't meet the standards, a deposit of 1 spirit stone will be deducted. These are the general rules of the trade. Your brother should be aware of them. Mo-Wa nodded. If all the array formations are successfully completed, he could earn 10 spirit stones. If all fail, he would owe 10 spirit stones, with a profit if he succeeds in more than half. The manager added a reminder, remember, 10 days. Don't forget, or I'll keep the entire deposit. Mo-Wa quickly nodded, then thanked the manager and left. After returning home, Mo-Wa locked himself in his room and focused on understanding the array formations. The potential to earn up to 10 spirit stones was significant. Although he earned 12 spirit stones helping his fellow disciples with their array homework, such opportunities were rare throughout the year. Moreover, helping fellow disciples with array homework wasn't really proper. It was okay occasionally, but over time, it could hinder their progress. Working with a merchant, on the other hand, could offer a steady income of spirit stones and also practice in array formation, achieving 2 goals at once. Mo-Wa spread out the diagram of the blazing fire array in front of him. The diagram was previously prepared by another array master, serving as a template. Attached to the diagram were detailed instructions for the array, documenting the required array patterns, the usage of ink and brush, and other essential notes, a common method in the cultivation world to record array techniques. The instructions for the blazing fire array included annotations on where to use fire-related array patterns, how to connect these patterns, the mixing of the ink, and the proportions of ink to use. Many of these concepts were unfamiliar to Mo-Wa and somewhat challenging to grasp. This was Mo-Hua's first encounter with an official array instruction guide. Previously, in his sect, he had only learned the most basic arrays. Though called arrays, these usually consisted of only 1 or 2 simple patterns, used primarily for beginner disciples to get a start in cultivation, quite different from the more widely used arrays in the cultivation world. The final line of the blazing fire array instructions noted. Blazing fire array, a fire-based array containing 3 array patterns, requires a cultivation level above the 3rd G level. But what particularly caught Mo-Hua's attention was the line written in small red characters just after this. For those below the required level, beware insufficient spiritual sense. Being only at the 2nd level of Qi cultivation, Mo-Wa frowned. Every action in a cultivator's life requires spiritual sense, directing spiritual energy, manipulating spiritual power, casting spells, controlling spiritual tools, and crafting pills or artifacts. All these activities necessitate the use of spiritual sense. Of all these, drawing array formations is known to consume the most spiritual sense, a well-acknowledged fact among cultivators. But the specific warning of insufficient spiritual sense, beware, and the emphasis on a required cultivation level, highlighted in red ink, made Mo-Wa realize that he might have underestimated just how much more this could be. Could it really be that drawing array formations requires so much spiritual sense? Mo-Wa pondered, stroking his small chin. Never mind, I'll get familiar with the array patterns first. Practice on the steel tonight. After memorizing the blazing fire array diagram, Mo-Wa had dinner with his parents and returned to his room to practice with ordinary paper and ink, getting a feel for the array patterns. When it reached the hour of the rat, midnight, he lay down on his bed, closed his eyes, and the ancient, ethereal steel floated into his mental view. Chapter 9, The Blazing Fire Array. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Within the sea of consciousness, Mo-Hua's ethereal form looked just like his physical body and could move at will. However, it was not made of flesh or even spiritual power, but merely a shadow of spiritual sense. Mo-Hua's ethereal form held its breath and concentrated deeply. Using a finger as a brush, he traced the pattern of the blazing fire array on the Dao steel. Pale blue lines fluidly followed Mo-Hua's finger movements on the dark Dao steel, gradually forming intricate and mysterious patterns from simple beginnings. After completing the second array pattern, Mo-Hua began to feel an unprecedented fatigue and even pain as he continued drawing. It felt as though a dam had been breached within his sea of consciousness, with spiritual sense flowing out like tidal waters. The more the spiritual sense flowed out, the closer his sea of consciousness came to depletion, resembling a riverbed drying up, cracking under unnamed pressures, causing tingling pain and a numbness on his scalp. Mo-Hua's thoughts also became sluggish, and the third array pattern was drawn slower and slower. Suddenly, a sharp pain surged from his sea of consciousness, causing a brief lapse in Mo-Hua's focus, and he misaligned a part of the pattern on the steel. Mo-Hua had to stop, clutching his head, waiting for the pain to gradually subside. After a long while, Mo-Hua recovered and realized, drawing array formations requires a vast amount of spiritual sense, far more than other cultivation methods. Far more than I had imagined. This is why the diagrams were specifically marked in red. Those not sufficiently advanced should study with caution. If one's realm is inadequate and spiritual sense weak, forcibly drawing an array can lead to excessive consumption of spiritual sense, and even cause it to run dry. Depletion of spiritual sense brings intense pain to cultivators, potentially damaging the sea of consciousness severely, causing it to crack. If it cracks too deeply, the sea of consciousness could shatter completely, resulting in the cultivator's death. This was mentioned in class, but Mo-Hua hadn't paid much attention at the time. Now, recalling it sent chills down his spine. The blazing fire array requires the 3rd level of Qi cultivation, and I'm only at the 2nd level. Indeed, my spiritual sense is a bit lacking. Holding his head in his hands, Mo-Hua lay on the floor of his sea of consciousness, pondering, though it's a bit lacking, it shouldn't be by much. My spiritual sense is inherently stronger than others, and I've studied array formation for so long, practicing a few more times might just work. If I can't get it right the first time, I'll draw it a second time, and a third. With each attempt, my spiritual sense strengthens a bit, and with each attempt, I draw more than before. I'll eventually be able to complete the formation. After considering, Mo Hua stood up, erased the incomplete array pattern from the Dao steel, and his spiritual sense began to fill again. It was as if he had never drawn an array before, but the strokes he had just drawn were etched in his mind. Mo Hua couldn't help but marvel. Thank goodness for this Dao steel, otherwise, nearing spiritual sense depletion, I wouldn't know how long it would take to attempt a second drawing. By the time I learned the blazing fire array, probably half a month would have passed, and the pawn spirit stones would have been deducted by then. This thought pained Mo Hua's heart, sharpening his focus as he began to draw the blazing fire array a second time. In the vast wideness of the sea of consciousness, there was no sense of time passing. Mo Hua would draw a bit, stop a bit, rest a bit. When he could draw no more, he'd erase everything and start anew. After countless attempts, he finally completed the entire blazing fire array. Mo Hua exhaled deeply, collapsing to the ground, feeling like a small salted fish whose spiritual sense had been squeezed dry. After resting a bit longer, Mo Hua had the energy to stand up and admire his first completed array formation, the blazing fire array. On the black Dao steel, a complete pattern of pale blue lines, strict and beautiful, held an unknown mystery. Between the light and dark of the array pattern, it seemed to contain unspeakable rules and power. This is an array formation. Mo Hua felt a moment of enlightenment, as if there was nothing more beautiful in the world than these rules contained lines. Even just looking at them was mesmerizing. But as Mo Hua continued to watch, something seemed off. While drawing, the array lines were pale blue, but now they seemed to be fading, turning a light gray. It was as if the Dao steel was telling Mo Hua that he had drawn it wrong. Mo Hua froze. Drawn wrong? Can't be. Mo Hua felt disheartened, but he gathered his spirits to carefully check each stroke and finally found that he had indeed made errors, and not just one. Some lines were overdrawn, some connections at the wrong angles, some fusions of the fire patterns were incorrect. Because of these errors, his spiritual sense wasn't consumed as much, allowing him to complete the blazing fire array. Scratching his head, Mo Hua made a note of the mistakes, then erased the array to draw it again. This repetitive process left Mo Hua dizzy and numb. Amidst the pain in his sea of consciousness, looking at the array patterns on the Dao steel seemed to blur into double images. At some point, in a daze, Mo Hua completed the final stroke. The Dao steel seemed to tremble slightly, and the pale blue array lines emitted a gentle white light, within which seemed to flicker a firelight, like a bright candle in the darkness. The blazing fire array. Mo Hua couldn't contain his excitement. A night's fatigue was swept away. For the first time, Mo Hua personally felt the power of a cultivator, that sensation of comprehending the heavenly rules through one's own understanding and then manifesting them in an array formation, grasping the majesty of heaven and earth. Though it was just a tiny step, a small bit of power, it was the first drop of water in the great river of the Dao. Mo Hua was proud, even though the blazing fire array was only used for illumination, one of the most common and least costly formations in cultivation. At least this formation lit the first step of Mo Hua's path in cultivation. Wishing he could draw a few more times, Mo Hua knew his fragile spiritual sense was like a candle in the wind, unable to endure more. If he continued, his sea of consciousness might not dry up, but he would certainly go mad. After all, although spiritual sense does recover, the process of drawing an array was continually depleting, and it wasn't a comfortable one. This was Mo Hua's first time drawing an official array, but it certainly wouldn't be his last. He planned to practice the blazing fire array every night, and once he became thoroughly proficient, he'd start using the materials from the array pavilion to draw arrays, exchange them for spirit stones with the managers, and ideally, gather enough to ease his parents' burden. Let's call it a night. The blazing fire array shimmered brilliantly on the Dao steel. Mo Hua admired it once more, involuntarily nodding, then somewhat reluctantly wiped the array away. The instant he erased it, his spiritual sense ebbed and flowed like the tides, waned and waxed like the moon, receded like the sea only to return again, sunset followed by sunrise, those depleted senses instantly restored, filling Mo Hua's sea of consciousness anew. Standing before the Dao steel, his spiritual sense replenished. At that moment, it felt just as it had several hours ago when he first entered his sea of consciousness. This feeling of spiritual sense filling and depleting, and then filling again, no matter how many times experienced, always felt profoundly mysterious. And this experience was deeper than any before. Mo Hua looked at the Dao steel, its surface dark and deep, seemingly void, yet as if it contained everything, appearing to have nothing, yet perhaps capable of revealing all. Transforming spiritual sense into array formation, and array formation back into spiritual sense, from existence to non-existence, mutually generating and transforming. A phrase from ancient text surfaced in Mo Hua's mind. From existence, utility is derived. From non-existence, use is found. Chapter 10, Drawing Arrays. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The next morning, after breakfast, Mo Hua put down his chopsticks and returned to his room. He took out paper and ink for tracing, and while the memory of the blazing fire array was still clear, he began to meticulously trace it. He used the cheapest ordinary ink and paper, which lacked spiritual energy. The arrays drawn were merely patterns without any effect, thus consuming minimal spiritual sense and without the worry of wasting spirit stones due to failure. Relying on his memory, Mo Hua completed the tracing of the array in one go, pausing only slightly due to the minimal spiritual sense used. He took out the original diagram of the blazing fire array and carefully compared it to his tracing, identifying 3 mistakes. Setting aside the array paper, he took out another sheet and continued drawing. After 3 attempts, he finally traced a perfect blazing fire array without any errors. Mo Hua let out a long sigh of relief, stretched lazily, glanced at the small sundial on the table, and realized it was noon, which was when he finally felt hungry. Lu Ruha had already prepared a meal with rice made from spiritual rice and several simple stir-fried vegetables. The only meat dish was a demonic chicken egg. The spiritual rice was of lower quality but sufficient to satisfy hunger. The meal was simple yet delicious, and Mo Hua relished it before running back to his room to continue practicing the blazing fire array. Lu Ruha, watching Mo Hua's retreating figure, expressed her concern. This child is working too hard. He has gotten much thinner. Mo Shan nodded. It's good to be diligent, but I worry he'll overexert himself. Hua was born frail and with a weak constitution. Lu Ruha sighed. It's a pity he didn't inherit your physical talents. Instead he's frail and sickly like me. Mo Shan gently embraced her slender shoulders. How can you blame yourself? When Hua was born weak, we consulted Master Feng from Apricot Clinic. He said that a balance between spiritual sense and physical body is normal at birth. Hua was born with strong spiritual sense, which made his body weaker. Look how clever and good-looking Hua is now. That's thanks to you. Lu Ruha couldn't help but smile. Only you would say that. Seeing his wife's mood lighten, Mo Shan added, this morning, I spoke with old Joe from the demon hunting team. A few days ago, they accidentally killed a fire chick. It's not a demonic beast, but its meat contains spiritual energy. I bought some for Hua to try. It's also good for your health. Do we have enough spirit stones at home? Lu Ruha asked. No need, Mo Shan replied. We're all brothers who have hunted demonic beasts together. It's the same if I pay him back after the new year. Lu Ruha placed her storage pouch in Mo Shan's hand. Give whatever you can. We can repay the rest after the new year. Everyone needs to earn some spirit stones for the new year. Mo Shan thought for a moment and agreed. That sounds good. While Mo Shan and his wife chatted, Mo Hua continued drawing the blazing fire array into the evening until he was quite proficient. After a quick dinner, Mo Hua eagerly returned to his room, held his breath to calm his spirit for a moment, and then went to sleep on time, entering the sea of consciousness. In the ancient, empty sea of consciousness, an old stone stele stood prominently. Using his finger as a brush, Mo Hua began formally drawing the array on the stele. As the array patterns on the stele became complete, his spiritual sense poured forth. When his spiritual sense was nearly depleted, and he was almost unable to sustain himself, he finally completed the blazing fire array. Mo-Wa stopped, and the array on the steel emitted a gentle white light. The blazing fire array was an array that third-tier chi cultivators could draw. Mo-Wa, only a second-tier chi cultivator, managed it, but just barely, indicating that his spiritual sense was on par with third-tier cultivators. Mo-Wa felt a small sense of pride, then erased the blazing fire array he had drawn, and his spiritual sense was immediately replenished. He continued to draw the blazing fire array, utilizing the night to fully master the array patterns, planning to formally draw the array the next day. In the silent and empty sea of consciousness, Mo-Wa repeatedly drew the blazing fire array, reflecting on and summarizing the various problems encountered. Unknowingly, dawn broke, and Mo-Wa involuntarily exited his sea of consciousness. Feeling not the slightest fatigue, he immediately got up, sat on the bed to cultivate for a while, and after breakfast, he washed his hands and solemnly took out the array materials given by the steward. The materials included 10 array papers and 10 small bottles of light red ink. The array paper was made from demonic beast skin and bits of spiritual herbs, while the ink was a mix of fire element, demonic beast blood, and spirit liquid. Unlike the ink and paper Mo-Wa used for tracing, these contained spiritual energy and were consequently much more expensive. The steward had also included a new but crudely made brush, which was hardly better than Mo-Wa's usual one, so he continued using his own, which felt more comfortable. Mo-Wa spread an array paper on the table and carefully poured the ink into the inkstone, which helped preserve the ink's spiritual power for longer. With the array patterns of the blazing fire array fresh in his mind, Mo-Wa began to formally draw the array. The process went smoother than expected. It felt just like drawing the array on the stone steel in the sea of consciousness. Even the rate of spiritual sense consumption was the same. However, due to nerves, some strokes were slightly crooked. Although it didn't affect the array's function, the drawn array looked somewhat unappealing. After much effort and consumption of spiritual sense, Mo-Wa finally completed the blazing fire array, unfortunately making one mistake. He hadn't succeeded yet but had already lost a spirit stone. Mo-Wa felt a pang of regret. And with his spiritual sense depleted, he could no longer continue drawing arrays and had to rest with closed eyes. I wonder if there's a way to quickly recover spiritual sense. Mo-Wa thought, missing the days of practicing on the Dao steel, but unfortunately, that wasn't an option in reality. Mo-Wa rested, and before his spiritual sense fully recovered, the morning had already passed, and Lu Ruha was calling him for lunch. After a quick lunch, Mo-Wa ran back to his room and spread out a new array paper. Stabilizing his emotions and summarizing his experiences, he silently recited, "Failure is the mother of success," and began drawing the second blazing fire array. This time, Mo-Wa was more focused and careful, pondering each stroke and preemptively considering the subsequent array patterns. As his spiritual sense was used up, he closed his eyes to rest, constantly recalling the array diagram in his mind. Mo-Wa drew slowly, but time flew by. By dusk, although with some interruptions, he had finally successfully drawn the blazing fire array. Unable to hide his excitement, and overtaken by the fatigue of his exhausted mind, Mo-Wa contentedly collapsed on his bed and soon fell soundly asleep. When Mo-Wa woke up, it was already dark, and feeling famished, he followed a delicious aroma into the main hall, only to see a large bowl of meat on the table. Chapter 11, Fire Chick. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The meat in the bowl was a pale golden color, crystal clear, resembling chicken legs in appearance but the size of a pork hop that Mo-Wa had eaten in his previous life. The soup was clear with a thin layer of oil on the surface, glossy yet not greasy, garnished with some mushrooms and small chunks of bright green herbs. Mo-Wa had not eaten meat for a long time. The last was half a year ago during the demonic beast hunting festival. In the cultivation world, meat is quite expensive, only affordable during festivals and celebrations, making it a rare treat for common cultivators. There are two types of meat eaten by cultivators. One is the meat of spiritual beasts. Spiritual beasts differ from demonic beasts. They are raised by cultivators who feed them spiritual herbs and other natural spirit substances. Their meat is tender, easy to cook, infused with spiritual energy, and hence very expensive, not something a solitary cultivator could afford. The other type is the meat of herbivorous demonic beasts. All demonic beasts are killers, but not all consume human flesh. Those that feed on various spiritual herbs may be ferocious and slaughter cultivators, but they do not consume the flesh of cultivators. However, carnivorous demonic beasts usually have tasted human flesh, and if not, it is not because they do not eat humans, but because they have not yet encountered a cultivator to eat. Thus, the meat of herbivorous demonic beasts, although it has an unusual taste, is still consumable by cultivators. In contrast, the meat of carnivorous demonic beasts is bloody and impure, difficult to consume, and can easily contaminate a cultivator's vital energy, leading to disordered meridians and, in some cases, insanity. Herbivorous demonic beast meat, although not expensive, is still rarely consumed by average cultivators. The bodies of demonic beasts are much stronger than those of cultivators, and the meat of herbivorous demonic beasts is too tough to chew. It requires long hours of cooking over a fire to be palatable. Solitary cultivators cannot afford such an effort, and those who can, prefer the meat of spiritual beasts. Thus, any kind of meat is rare on the table of a solitary cultivator. The bowl of meat before them emitted a faint white mist, which, although slight, clearly contained a trace of spiritual energy. Lu Ruha waved Mo-Wa over. "This is fire chick meat, your father bought it to nourish you." She couldn't help but pinch Mo-Hua's pale little face. "Look at how thin you've become recently." Mo-Wa was a bit reluctant and asked, "This meat must be quite expensive, right?" Mo-Shan waved his hand. "We only bought half, it didn't cost many spirit stones. Plus, it was from a friend in the hunting team. Next year we'll work together, so it's part gift, part purchase." Mo-Wa said, "Dad, are you planning to go deeper into the mountains next year?" Mo-Shan nodded. "It's tough on the outer mountain now. The gains from killing a demonic beast are too low, and if someone gets injured, the costs could outweigh the benefits. The beasts in the inner mountain are stronger, but they also yield better loot, so next year." Mo-Shan suddenly stopped and chuckled. "Why am I telling you all this?" Lu Ruha gently chided Mo-Shan with a spoonful of meat soup for Mo-Wa. "Try it and see how it tastes." Mo-Wa tasted the soup and then a piece of meat. It was the most delicious meat he had ever eaten, fresh and fragrant, fatty but not oily, a feast for all senses. Mo-Wa squinted his eyes in delight. "Mom, it's really tasty." Lu Ruha laughed. "If it's good, eat more. This whole bowl is yours. Make sure to finish it," she said, heading to the kitchen. "There are more dishes to come." Mo-Shan stood up. "I'll help you." Seeing his parents heading to the kitchen, Mo-Wa quickly put several pieces of the fire chick meat into his own bowl and distributed the rest into his parents' bowls. When Mo-Shan and Lu Ruha returned with the dishes, they found their bowls filled with meat. Lu Ruha smiled warmly yet humorously. "This meat was specially bought for you. At our age, we're not expecting any advancement in cultivation. Eating this spirit-infused meat is just a waste." As Lu Ruha tried to add more meat to Mo-Hua's bowl, he covered it with his hands, shaking his head. "I've had enough. I can't eat any more." Mo-Wa covered his bowl, adamantly refusing to eat more. Mo-Shan and Lu Ruha resigned themselves but then started insisting with each other. Mo-Shan added meat to his wife's bowl, softly saying, "You've been through a lot these years, eat more to nourish yourself." Lu Ruha then transferred the meat back to her husband's bowl, softly replying, "You've been working hard outside, facing harsh conditions. You should eat more." Listening to this, Mo-Hua's teeth ached with the sweetness. He couldn't help but say, "Dad, Mom, the meat will get cold if you don't eat now." Mo-Shan and Lu Ruha, having momentarily forgotten their son was there, now noticed his watery big eyes watching them. Lu Ruha blushed slightly, and Mo-Shan coughed lightly, pretending nothing was amiss, and began eating. Seeing his parents finish the meat in their bowls, Mo-Wa nodded in satisfaction. He then thought, although the fire chick meat was delicious, it was too expensive. Demonic beast meat, although devoid of spiritual energy, could replenish blood energy, definitely beneficial for cultivators. But the meat of demonic beasts was really tough to chew. He wondered if there was a way for his parents to eat more meat. Mo Hua shelved this thought for now, as the most important task was to finish the blazing fire array, and then visit the trading house to exchange for spirit stones. After dinner, Mo Hua returned to his room, meditated to digest the fire chick meat. Since it didn't contain much spiritual energy, it didn't take long. Once the spiritual energy was refined, Mo Hua continued drawing the blazing fire array, completing another diagram before falling asleep that night. Later, he fell asleep, continuing to draw array formations on the Dao steel in his sea of consciousness, consolidating his memory of the formations, reflecting on issues with his brushwork. In the morning, he meditated and then continued drawing array formations. He managed one in the morning and another in the afternoon, both successful, but the consumption of his spiritual sense was significant. After dinner, he had to rest for a while, then resumed his dreams at night, continuing to draw array formations on the Dao steel. On the fourth day, Mo Hua's brushwork had become much more proficient, and his spiritual sense seemed a bit more robust, perhaps because he understood the blazing fire array better, so the consumption of his spiritual sense was reduced. After completing 2 formations in the daytime, he had enough energy left to draw another in the evening, but because he was a bit too hasty, he made a mistake with his brushwork, and the formation failed. At night, after falling asleep, Mo Hua continued to reflect and summarize in his sea of consciousness, practicing drawing array formations on the Dao steel. On the 5th day, Mo Hua spent the entire day completing 3 blazing fire arrays, and although they were successful, the consumption of his spiritual sense was significant, causing some dizziness and headache, but not as severe as the first time. A moment of closed eye meditation was enough for recovery. Thus, Mo Hua had used up all 10 sets of array materials entrusted by the trading house, successfully creating 8 blazing fire arrays. Though there were some flaws and much room for improvement, overall, he was satisfied. That evening, Mo Hua indulged a little, not continuing to practice array formations on the Dao steel but instead drawing several comic strips for leisure. The next day, after breakfast, Mo Hua met up with Dahu and the 2 others to go shopping. Mo Hua carried the completed array formations in a storage bag slung over his shoulder. Before heading out, Lu Ruha gave him a spirit stone and 5 broken spirit stones, instructing him to buy anything tasty or fun he saw and to be careful. Dahu and the others patted their chests, promising to protect Mo Hua and not let anyone bully him. Mo Hua and his mother waved goodbye, and he and his 3 friends set out. Dahu and the others were lively, hopping and skipping along the bustling stone-paved road, 3 tiger-headed young boys and a porcelain doll-like child, bouncing along. Chapter 12, Compensation. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. After wandering for a while, Meng Xiaohu suddenly asked, "Where are we heading next?" Mo Hua patted the storage bag on his side. "Let's head to North Street first." As they arrived at the entrance of Destiny's shop on North Street, Mo Hua stepped onto the storefront steps but turned back to see his 3 companions standing still. He couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you coming in?" All 3 friends shook their heads in unison. "I get dizzy just looking at array formations." "Me too. I've given up on array formations in this lifetime. I'm not going in either." Mo Hua had no choice but to say, "Then wait here for me, I'll be out soon." His 3 friends nodded together. Entering the shop, the door chime rang as the steward looked up to see Mo Hua standing tall with his storage bag, and couldn't help but chuckle. "It's you again, huh? Did your brother finish all the array patterns?" Mo Hua nodded, "Yes." The steward perked up. "Oh, that was quick, only 5 days." He beckoned to Mo Hua, "Let me see." Mo Hua reached into his storage bag and tiptoed to place the array patterns on the counter. The steward picked up the patterns and frowned slightly after inspecting them. Mo Hua felt uneasy. "Did I draw them incorrectly?" The steward pondered for a moment. "They're correct, but these don't seem like they were done by an expert. Some are passable, but these." He flipped through a few, revealing the ones Mo Hua had initially drawn. "These are quite off. The strokes are crude and discontinuous, as if pieced together bit by bit. Are you sure your brother is learning from an array master? This level is quite lacking." Mo Hua felt a bit embarrassed. It was his first attempt, and he had tried his best. "Can these be used, though?" The steward tapped the desk, examining the array again. "While the strokes are poor, the array itself isn't flawed. It's still usable, just that the strokes are poor." Mo Hua breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good to hear." He added, "Maybe my brother was unfamiliar with this array initially, hence the rough start, but you see, the later ones are much better, right?" After inspecting the later patterns, the steward slowly nodded. "Indeed, the latter ones are somewhat better, at least standard." "Right," Mo Hua reassured. "You can be sure he'll get better over time." The steward was amused by Mo Hua's confidence. "All right, for your sake, we'll consider this order complete. But next time, make sure the quality at least matches these later ones. No using practice arrays to fill the quota." Mo Hua nodded vigorously. The steward packed away the array patterns and counted out several spirit stones. 8 successful, 2 failed. 2 spirit stones will be deducted from the deposit, leaving a reward of 6 spirit stones. If your brother continues to draw, the deposit remains 10 spirit stones. He already has the blazing fire array pattern, just add 10 more paper and ink materials. The steward handed Mo Hua a storage bag filled with paper and ink. Mo Hua collected the materials and picked up the 6 spirit stones, unable to suppress his excitement. Earning 6 spirit stones in 5 days was comparable to the income of a mid to late chi cultivation stage cultivator. Mo Hua's mother, Lu Ruha, helped in the kitchen at Spirit Meal Tower, earning only 1 spirit stone a day. His father, Mo Shan, earned more from hunting demonic beasts, but that income was less stable, sometimes higher if valuable beasts were hunted and otherwise lower. Mo Hua thanked the steward and exited Destiny's shop, his 3 friends eagerly watching him. Mo Hua patted his storage bag and with a wave of his hand declared, "Come on, let's have some snacks." Meng Dahu and the others cheered joyfully and crowded around Mo Hua as they headed to a street-side pastry shop called Wang's Pastries. In Tongxian City, many establishments made pastries, and while Wang's Pastries didn't use exquisite materials, they were affordable. During festive seasons, common cultivators often bought these to treat their children. Wang's Pastries was famous for its 5-colored cakes, made by steaming 5 different colored spirit grains together, creating a sweet and soft treat that only cost 2 fragments of a spirit stone. As lower-tier cultivators had minimal income, many earned less than 1 spirit stone a day, resorting to using fragmented spirit stones. A whole spirit stone was divided into 10 parts, with 10 fragments equaling 1 whole stone. Fragmented spirit stones were not recognized by the Dao Court or the major sects and families, circulating only among the lower-tier chi cultivation cultivators. Mo Hua spent 2 spirit stones for 10 5-colored cakes, and given he was a child buying in bulk, the shopkeeper even gifted 2 extra cakes. Mo Hua distributed 2 cakes each, keeping 4 to take home for his parents. With 1 cake in each hand, sweet and steaming, they walked and ate. Meng Xiaohu's mouth was too hot to close, but he couldn't stop talking. "This pastry is really good. I'll eat this every day once I earn my own spirit stones." Meng Shuanghu commented, "Then you might as well marry someone who can make pastries, so you can have them every day." Meng Xiaohu had an epiphany. Right. How did I not think of that? Then became conflicted. But I already have someone I like. It's not right to be fickle. Meng Shuanghu widened his eyes. "Who do you like?" Meng Xiaohu said, "The girl who sells tofu on the West Street. I said I like her first. You can't compete with me for her." Meng Shuanghu scoffed, waving his hand. "Don't worry, her temper is terrible. I won't compete with you." While Meng Shuanghu and Meng Xiaohu chatted, Meng Dahu focused on eating his cakes, quickly finishing both and even licking his fingers. Mo Hua gave him the last cake he had saved. Meng Dahu smiled sheepishly but couldn't resist starting on the cake. Meng Shuanghu suddenly asked, "Mo Hua, did you really help with the array patterns at that shop?" Mo Hua nodded. Meng Xiaohu's mouth fell open. "You can actually draw array patterns for others now?" Meng Shuanghu gave him a look. Where else do you think the spirit stones for the pastries came from? Meng Xiaohu grasped his pastry in shock. These pastries were bought with the spirit stones you earned from drawing arrays? That's incredible, Mo Hua. You might actually become a first-rate array master one day. Mo Hua said, it's too early to talk about that. Becoming an array master isn't so simple. Let's keep this to ourselves, okay? I'll earn more spirit stones and treat you to more pastries later. Hearing the word pastries, the three friends eagerly nodded, with Meng Xiaohu promising, if I spill the beans, I'll never have pastries for the rest of my life. Mo Hua and his friends continued to roam the streets, exploring various curious and novel items, and as dusk fell, they each returned to their homes. Mo Hua gave the pastries to Lu Ruha, who steamed them before placing them in Mo Hua's bowl. After some insistence, Mo Hua ended up eating two, while Mo Shan and Lu Ruha each had one. The steamed pastries were hot and aromatic, tasting even better than at noon. Mo Hua couldn't help but ask, Mom, can you steam pastries? Lu Ruha smiled, there's nothing too hard about it. I can make even more complicated dishes. It's just that many meals require an array craftsman to specially forge a stove and integrate specific arrays. We just don't have the means at home. Are stoves expensive? A stove needs to be forged by a craftsman, so naturally, they aren't cheap. But what's even more expensive are the arrays. Getting an array master to draw arrays isn't easy, especially for something big like a stove, so unless you're opening a restaurant, nobody spends a lot on a stove. Mo Hua nodded, realizing that arrays were more widely used in the cultivation world than he had initially thought. He wondered which array was used in stoves. Mo Hua made a mental note to learn about it when he had some free time. Chapter 13. The Oil Lamp. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. In the following days, aside from eating, Mo Hua confined himself to his room, diligently drawing the blazing fire array. 5 days later, Mo Hua had exhausted 10 batches of materials but had only successfully completed 8 diagrams. One was ruined due to carelessness, and another due to a previously unnoticed error in technique. The blazing fire array is considered the most basic and fundamental array in the cultivation world, yet Mo Hua still made mistakes occasionally, some of which he had made before. Array formations are indeed profound and intricate, not to be taken lightly. Mo Hua reminded himself silently. When he found the time, Mo Hua handed over the completed arrays to the chubby steward of Destiny's shop. This time, the steward was slightly more satisfied, noticing that Mo Hua's brother's diligence had noticeably improved his technique. The steward was happy to continue their collaboration, rewarding Mo Hua with 6 spirit stones and providing him with 10 more batches of materials. Mo Hua had already earned 12 spirit stones. At this rate, he could make another deal before the year's end, earning at least 6 more stones. Mo Hua worked even more diligently on the blazing fire array, becoming more proficient. His spiritual sense also grew stronger, allowing him to complete an entire array without exhausting his spiritual sense, significantly reducing the time it took him to draw the arrays. A few days later, after dinner, as Mo Hua was about to return to his room, he suddenly heard a knock at the door. Mo Shan got up to answer it and found 2 people standing outside. One was a young man dressed in a clean, neat Taoist robe, looking well cultivated and very polite. The other was a middle-aged cultivator with a few shallow scars on his face, his expression calm but his gaze sharp, his aura much denser, likely at least at the 8th or 9th level of chi cultivation. Little friend, does a brother Mo Shan live here? Are you looking for my dad? Mo Hua asked, tilting his head. The middle-aged cultivator softened his gaze at Mo Hua. You must be Mo Hua. Mo Shan also came out and greeted, Brother Ji. The middle-aged cultivator returned the greeting, Brother Mo, sorry to disturb you so late. We've traveled from Heishan City, rushing through the night to get here at this hour. Do you have a place to stay? There is. He's a brother of my dad's generation. I was just about to visit him and stay for a while. I came to discuss the matter you mentioned before. Come in and talk. Mo Shan invited them in, and Lu Ruha tidied up the table and brewed some tea to serve. Mo Shan then introduced them to Mo Hua. This is your Uncle Ji, named Qingbai, and beside him is your brother Ji, named Li. Mo Hua greeted them formally, Uncle Ji, Brother Ji, hello. Ji Qingbai smiled and nodded. He wanted to praise them but, seeing the tall and burly Mo Shan and the delicate and fair-skinned Mo Hua next to him, he found the usual praise like father, like son, unfitting. Being a demon hunter, he usually only had the generic praise like father, like son, ready, but now it seemed inappropriate, leaving Ji Qingbai momentarily at a loss for words. This child, Ji Qingbai hesitated for a while before coming up with, looks very good. To avoid seeming perfunctory, Ji Qingbai added, he is handsome like Brother Mo, his eyes soft and temperament similar to your sister-in-law's, well-mannered. I've never seen such a good-looking child. Mo Shan didn't think much of it. Any praise for Mo Hua made him happy. After exchanging pleasantries, Mo Shan told Mo Hua, Dad and your Uncle Ji are going to discuss some things. Go back to your room and play. Okay. Mo Hua bowed to Ji Qingbai and returned to his room. Ji Qingbai, also a demon hunter, came to talk about hunting demons with his father. Mo Shan was burly, with a great talent for physical cultivation, at the 8th level of chi cultivation, experienced in several powerful physical martial arts, and rich in demon hunting experience. His reputation among chi cultivating demon hunters in Tongshan City was quite significant. Ji Qingbai came to discuss with Dad about hunting demons in the inner mountains of Dai Mountain after the new year. The inner mountains must be dangerous. Mo Hua thought for a moment and sighed. These were not concerns he could deal with now. With only the 2nd level of chi cultivation and no physical martial arts training or chosen spells, he couldn't be of much help. He decided to focus on drawing arrays. Mo Hua took out his brush and inkstone, and focused on drawing the array, hoping to complete a full blazing fire array diagram before falling asleep and entering the sea of consciousness. Dipping the brush in pale red ink, he fluidly traced one array pattern after another. Having mastered the blazing fire array, Mo Hua found the task almost effortless. After some time, the light from the oil lamp suddenly flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. Is the lamp broken? Mo Hua stopped drawing and, using the light from the hall, inspected the lamp but found nothing obviously wrong. Could it have been used too long? With plenty of time left in the evening, Mo Hua wanted to draw more arrays. What to do? Holding the lamp, Mo Hua went to the door and peeked through the crack, seeing Mo Shan and Ji Qingbai still talking. Not wanting to disturb Mo Shan at this time, Mo Hua was about to retreat when he heard Mo Shan ask, what's up? Mo Hua realized he had been noticed. With Mo Shan's level of chi cultivation, and Uncle Ji's likely higher, a peek through the crack couldn't escape their spiritual sense. Mo Hua had no choice but to say, Dad, the lamp is broken. Mo Shan gestured, bring it here. Mo Hua handed over the lamp. Mo Shan took it, twisted open the base, and remarked, it's been used for a long time, the array inside has faded. I'll buy you a new one tomorrow. Go to bed early tonight. Array? Mo Hua's eyes lit up. Dad, let me see. Slightly surprised, Mo Shan handed the lamp back to Mo Hua. Mo Hua took the lamp, recognizing the array in the base as somewhat familiar, similar to the blazing fire array but cruder and with only 2 patterns. It was likely drawn this way to cut costs. Mo Hua knew the blazing fire array well. Dad, wait a moment. Mo Hua ran back to his room, fetched his brush and ink, and traced over the faded array, then changed a few lines. Mo Shan and Ji Qingbai watched quietly. Soon, Mo Hua completed the array. Dad, try it now. Mo Shan reassembled the base, triggered a small mechanism on the lamp, and the light flickered back on, brightening the room. It works. Mo Shan was pleasantly surprised and affectionately ruffled Mo Hua's hair. Good job. Take it back and remember to rest early. Don't study too late. Mo Hua nodded. Dad, Uncle Ji, continue your talk. I'll go back to my room. He then ran back with the lamp in hand. Mo Shan turned back to Ji Qingbai. Sorry, Brother Ji, let's continue. But Ji Qingbai seemed distracted, staring at the departing Mo Hua, lost in thought for a long time before finally saying cautiously, Mo Hua is only at the second level of qi cultivation, isn't he? Chapter 14, Ji Qingbai. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Shan did not know why Ji Qingbai suddenly asked this question, but he nodded and said, Elder brother Ji is right. Mo Hua is cultivating at Tongxian sect, and he is currently at the second level of qi cultivation. Ji Qingbai found it hard to believe, the second level of qi cultivation, and he can already draw array formations? Mo Shan explained, it shouldn't be the case. He's only learned the basics of the sect, merely imitating what he's seen. Elder brother Mo is being modest. Even that is quite impressive. The few strokes he made were well formed, showing that Mo Hua has talent, Ji Qingbai commented. Mo Shan smiled, if that is true, then I'll take your auspicious words. Ji Qingbai sighed, among the descendants of his demon hunters, let alone an array master, there are few who can roughly understand array formations and draw some array patterns. Earlier this year, I went to request an array master to help draw some array formations, and I ended up swallowing a lot of humiliation, even had to smile apologetically to avoid offending him. Ji Qingbai grew angrier as he thought about it, it's just a small array formation. Not only did he demand 200 spirit stones, but he also wanted my niece to dine with him and toast him. If it were in Dahe Mountain, I really would have chopped him down. Mo Shan's expression darkened, to be so unreasonable? What else could I do? Ji Qingbai sighed, we don't understand array formations, and the younger generations won't learn them. Whenever there's an issue, we can only humbly seek help from those family array masters. They act all high and mighty, and we have to appease them. Elder brother Mo, Ji Qingbai looked at Mo Shan earnestly, if Mo Hua really wishes to learn array formations, you must let him continue, whatever the difficulties, come to me. I will help without hesitation. Elder brother Ji, you're too kind. If Mo Hua really wants to learn, I will definitely let him, Mo Shan said seriously. Ji Qingbai nodded. The two talked a little longer about demon hunting before Ji Qingbai took his leave. Mo Shan escorted Ji Qingbai and his son to the door. After Ji Qingbai left, he took his son to the west side of Nanda Street to stay at an elder's house. On the way, Ji Qingbai instructed his son, Ji Li, the demon hunting business in our Qingxin city is getting tougher, so this time I came to ask your uncle Mo to visit the inner mountains of Dahe Mountain together. You have a good talent, already at the 7th level of qi cultivation, so you should come to gain some experience. But demon hunting is our job, you should not intervene lightly. Father, I understand, Ji Li responded. I know you understand, but you are still young and might not fully grasp how fierce and cunning beasts are. You are the least experienced among us, and if you act, any weakness will cost you dearly, Ji Qingbai explained. Ji Li nodded, then curiously asked, Father, is Uncle Mo's cultivation impressive? Of course, your Uncle Mo is the most talented demon hunter I've ever met in all these years. He has great natural ability and quick reactions, with rich hunting experience. It's just a pity that, like us independent cultivators who start families and have children, all the spirit stones we gather go towards the children's cultivation, leaving less for our own, Ji Qingbai sighed. If that wasn't the case, with his abilities, he could have continued to cultivate and possibly reach the foundation building stage, Ji Qingbai continued. Ji Li fell silent for a moment, his father's cultivation could have progressed further, but the spirit stones earned were also spent on his own cultivation. Speaking of foundation building cultivators, Ji Li asked in a low voice, how is Elder Zheng's health? He's not doing well, Ji Qingbai looked dejected, Uncle Zheng is the only foundation building elder in our Qingxin city's demon hunting guild. If he passes away, we qi cultivation independent cultivators will probably be bullied by those few families. It's going to get tougher. Are there any foundation building elders in Tongxian City? There's one, with the surname Yu. He has a bad temper but is also very protective. The entire demon hunting operation in Tongxian City relies on him, and even the powerful families don't dare to go too far. If things really get tough, you could move to Tongxian City, find a Dao companion, and settle down there. I would be more at ease, Ji Qingbai advised. Ji Li, still young. Blushed, father, it's too early to talk about that. Ji Qingbai laughed, it's not too early. These things need to be planned early. Ji Li then tried to change the subject, asking, father, that younger brother at Uncle Mo's house, Mo Hua, can he really become an array master? I don't know, Ji Qingbai frowned, it's not easy to become an array master. Starting from an apprentice to a non-ranked array master, and only then can one become a ranked array master. First of all, it's not easy to be an apprentice. We independent cultivators don't have a heritage. To learn array formations, you need to find a dedicated array master as a teacher, Ji Qingbai explained. Aren't there also teachings on array formations at the sect? Ji Li asked. That's far from enough, Ji Qingbai replied. What the sect teaches is just the basics, meant to make you aware of array formations, not to train you as an array master. Ji Li was astonished, having found learning array formations at the sect challenging, and to think that was just the basics. Finding an array master as a teacher is not easy. Which array master isn't arrogant, with standards higher than the sky? Asking them to take apprentices is so hard that even spending all your wealth wouldn't be enough. Ji Qingbai grew agitated. Array formations are so difficult without a heritage or a teacher. How can one possibly learn? Ji Qingbai shook his head in frustration. So, after becoming an apprentice, can one then become an array master? Ji Li asked. Being an apprentice is just the beginning. You have to endure many years, constantly learning and practicing, to gradually improve your skills before you can become an array master, and that's just for the non-ranked ones. Then you endure more, learn more, gain some renown, and only then are you eligible for ranking. The ranking is personally determined by the Dao Court, and that's another huge hurdle. Some array masters spend their whole lives trying to get ranked, Ji Qingbai explained. Ji Li was overwhelmed by the complexity, unable to help but say, can brother Mo really become an array master? Let's hope, Ji Qingbai sighed, even if it's just a foolish dream, it's still something to look forward to. Mo Hua continued to draw the blazing fire array, and a few days later, he completed the entire array. This time he was much more proficient, succeeding in 9 out of 10 attempts, earning 8 spirit stones. On the last day of the year, Mo Hua went to Destiny's shop again to exchange the array formations for spirit stones. The manager at Destiny's shop, a stout man, was quite satisfied with the array formations Mo Hua delivered. That's more like it. Since you've taken a master and become an apprentice, this is the standard you should achieve. During the settlement, the stout manager gave Mo Hua 10 spirit stones, with an extra 2 as a New Year's gift. Although it's not much, it's still something festive. For the stout manager, it wasn't much, but for Mo Hua, it was quite a lot. Mo Hua was very pleased and chose some auspicious phrases like, wishing the manager greater success and continued brilliance, to say. The stout manager was very pleased and nodded in agreement. The next day was New Year's Eve, and Mo Hua's family of 3 had a lively celebration. The New Year's customs in the cultivation world had many similarities with Mo Hua's memories from another life, yet there were differences. For instance, although both involved hanging spring festival couplets, the couplets here glowed, the Fu character had moving cloud patterns, and the New Year paintings featuring mythical creatures like Qilin would stare at you with big eyes, sometimes even sneering, which was quite novel. The New Year's Eve dinner was the most lavish meal of the year, including some meat, which was otherwise not commonly eaten, allowing everyone to fully enjoy rare delicacies. Mo Hua had a very happy New Year. After playing with his friends for several days, he continued to draw array formations for Destiny's shop. With night and day efforts, Mo Hua could draw the blazing fire array from memory, completing 10 array diagrams in just 3 days, maintaining a success rate of over 90%. Until the 15th day of the first month, the day before he was to start his studies at Tongxian sect, Mo Hua had earned nearly 50 spirit stones. After dinner, Mo Hua was packing his belongings for his upcoming cultivation at the sect, while Mo Shan and Lu Ruha discussed the future. Chapter 15, Payment of Sect Dues. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. In the sect, the outer disciples are recruited to impart knowledge and skills for cultivation. Upon joining, disciples are required to pay a fee called sect dues. Different grades of sects demand varying amounts of dues, with higher grade sects charging more. Tongxian sect, being a first-tier sect within the cultivation world, is the largest in Tongxian City, despite being the only first-tier sect there. The annual dues here are 100 spirit stones, not including other miscellaneous fees. 100 spirit stones are not overly expensive but are by no means cheap. It's roughly what an average tea cultivating rogue cultivator might save up in a year, assuming no injuries or other major expenditures. Should there be illness or disasters, or expenses that require a significant number of spirit stones, it's possible to end up with nothing for the year. The new year is a happy time, but once it's over, the heavy burden of cultivation life seems to press down again. Mo Shan guiltily placed a storage bag on the table. I borrowed some spirit stones from a few brothers, plus some I had saved up, totaling over 80. Lu Ruha comforted, I'll also talk to the manager at the spirit meal tower tomorrow to get some spirit stones in advance. Just as Mo Shan was about to reply, he noticed Mo Hua eavesdropping at the door. Who are? Caught, Mo Hua sheepishly smiled and ran over to sit by his mother. Lu Ruha affectionately pinched Mo Hua's ear, scolding, so young, and already eavesdropping. Dad, Mom, are we short on spirit stones? Mo Shan said, we are a bit short, but your Uncle G said yesterday he'd lend me some, and he made me promise to tell you to study well at the sect. Uncle G? Indeed, your Uncle G praises your intelligence all the time, Lu Ruha said, stroking Mo Hua's head. But Uncle G's family isn't exactly flush with spirit stones either, Mo Hua noted. Mo Shan sighed lightly, I'll pay him back sooner after the new year. Nowadays, who has extra spirit stones? I do, Mo Hua chuckled. Mo Shan and Lu Ruha were taken aback. Mo Hua trotted back into the house and then out again, clutching the storage bag. Opening the bag, 50 spirit stones glinted and sparkled, a dazzling sight. However, the emotional scene of his parents praising his thoughtfulness didn't happen. Mo Shan's expression was grave. Lu Ruha furrowed her brows. What's wrong? Mo Hua asked nervously. Where did these spirit stones come from? Mo Shan asked evenly. No one gave them to me. I earned them myself. Mo Shan paused. You earned them? Lu Rua's expression softened, pulling Mo Hua into her arms. Tell Mom how you earned them. I drew array patterns for Destiny's shop. They're simple ones, but I earn a spirit stone for each. Mo Shan and Lu Ruha exchanged looks, realizing their son had been mostly indoors, coming and going briefly, earning spirit stones by drawing arrays. Looking again at the bag's contents, 1 stone per array, nearly 50 in total. Lu Ruha hugged Mo Hua tighter. Mo Shan struggled for words, finally just reaching out to gently stroke Mo Hua's head. These spirit stones are your hard-earned money. Keep them for cultivation or to buy something nice. I'll figure out something for the sect dues. Mo Hua, knowing his father's reluctance to use the stones, quickly added, then keep them for me, Mom and Dad. I'm just a kid. I can't use so many, and it's easy for others to steal or rob me. Mo Shan and Lu Ruha found no words to refuse. All right, we'll keep them for you. Okay, Mo Hua nodded firmly. All right, it's getting late. You have school tomorrow. Go to bed early. Okay, good night, Mom and Dad. As Mo Hua got up to return to his room, he turned back, Mom and Dad, use them if you need to, don't save them for me. Mo Shan and Lu Ruha couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. Watching Mo Hua return to his room and close the door, Mo Shan sighed and smiled bitterly. As a father, I'm not even close to how sensible my child is. Lu Ruha comforted, what are you saying? It's good that Huer understands and supports us. We should be happy he can earn spirit stones on his own. But, Lu Ruha looked down at the spirit stones, then up at her husband with concern. He's so young, can he really draw arrays and earn so many? I'm afraid someone might take advantage of his age. I'll check it out tomorrow. Mo Shan said, his gaze sharpening. The next day, Mo Hua got up on time, practiced his cultivation, and went with Lu Ruha to pay the sect dues and register for school at the outer gate of Tongxian sect. Mo Shan had left early as Lu Ruha mentioned, to prepare for a hunt with several demon hunters deep in the mountains. After handling the dues and registration at the outer gate, Lu Ruha couldn't help but take a few more glances at Mo Hua. Once inside the sect for cultivation, except during holidays, it was rare to see their son. Lu Ruha gave a few more instructions on good cultivation practices, relationships, and looking after oneself, before leaving reluctantly. Mo Hua waved from the gate until Lu Rua's figure vanished at the turn of the road, then turned around. Instead of entering the sect, he first headed to Destiny's shop on North Street to pick up materials for 20 blazing fire arrays, agreeing to deliver them within half a month. The sect had a monthly break, and Mo Hua planned to use these to meet and trade with the manager. The materials for 20 arrays, and the manager, considering past pleasant dealings with Mo Hua's elder brother, and the increasing quality of delivered arrays, only asked for 10 spirit stones as a deposit. After settling matters, Mo Hua left Destiny's shop satisfied. Unbeknownst to him, a burly man silently watched him leave. After Mo Hua was gone, the man entered the large doors of Destiny's shop. The bell rang as the manager looked up to see a plainly dressed but striking man with piercing eyes, giving off an imposing air. The manager could tell at a glance that the man was a demon hunter, a seasoned one who had seen real combat. His attitude wasn't great, looking at the manager as if he were a beast about to be slaughtered. Although the manager believed his own cultivation wasn't inferior, a real fight would be a different story, as demon hunters lived on the edge, constantly battling demons. Weighing his options, the manager straightened up and cautiously asked, Esteemed Taoist, what array are you interested in? The burly man was Mo Shan. He spread out a crumpled piece of paper with an array sketch, some parts incorrectly copied and smudged. What array is this? Blazing fire array. Do you accept these arrays? The man's tone made the manager uncomfortable. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't bother, but today he felt the need to be courteous and thorough with a customer. Of course, it's a commonly used array, essential for ordinary cultivator households, so it's in high demand. Mo Shan asked, the child who just left, does he draw arrays for you? The manager replied, such matters cannot be disclosed. Destiny's shop upholds the privacy of our clients, it's our principle. Mo Shan's gaze sharpened, prompting the manager to think quickly. While adhering to principles is important, flexibility is necessary in the cultivation world. Not him, but his elder brother. Mo Shan frowned, elder brother? Yes, what can such a young child draw? He's just running errands for his brother, who draws the arrays. Did he tell you that himself? Of course, the manager answered, otherwise, why would we do business with a child? After speaking, the manager watched Mo Shan warily. As for the child's full name and residence, I can't disclose that. Mo Shan scoffed, as a father, I know better than you, but knowing Mo Hua wasn't being exploited, Mo Shan's demeanor softened, and he bowed slightly, I apologize for the disturbance, I'll take my leave. The manager breathed a sigh of relief, his demeanor slightly arrogant as he nodded. As Mo Shan turned and left, only when his figure disappeared did the manager finally exhale deeply, muttering discontentedly, didn't even buy anything. Chapter 16, the third level of Qi cultivation. Published by Ranobes. The quest for immortality. After Mo Hua entered the Tongxian sect, a new year of sect life began. The Tongxian sect is a first-grade sect, which is the lowest in the hierarchy of the cultivation world. The rankings of sects in the cultivation world are strictly hierarchical. At the founding of a sect, its grade must be determined, which is audited and adjudicated by the Dao court. The criteria for setting a grade are stringent, evaluating the sect's assets, the mountains it occupies, the depth of its heritage, the virtue of its sect leader, the cultivation level and number of its elders and instructors, and the number of disciples it can accommodate, among other things. Promoting the sect's grade is even more rigorous, requiring several high-level cultivators to preach and establish themselves for a set number of years before applying for an upgrade at the Dao court's Tianshu Pavilion. Upgrading is a major event for any sect, requiring years of preparation and the need to cultivate relationships with the Dao court, consuming considerable manpower and financial resources. In the Tongxian sect, only the old sect leader is a foundation-building cultivator, far from meeting the conditions for a second-grade sect. Moreover, it's estimated that it will not qualify for an upgrade within a century. Moreover, the Tongxian sect owns just 3 peaks, Tongling Peak, Tongxuan Peak, and Tongming Peak. In the external sect of the Tongxian sect, early Qi cultivation disciples, i.e., levels 1 to 3, practice and learn on Tongling Peak, middle Qi cultivation levels 4 to 6 disciples are on Tongxuan Peak, and very few late Qi cultivation levels 7 to 9 external sect disciples are also on Tongxuan Peak. Due to their small numbers, they are simply accommodated there. Meanwhile, the inner sect and personally transmitted disciples, including the sect leader, elders, and instructors, are all on Tongming Peak. It was said that there was originally another peak, Tongxian Peak, specifically for the sect leader and elders to live and cultivate. However, due to poor management of the sect and insolvency, they tearfully sold it off. Without Tongxian Peak, how could it still be called Tongxian sect? Generation after generation of Tongxian sect leaders have aspired to redeem Tongxian Peak, but unfortunately, this great ambition has yet to be fulfilled. Each peak's disciples in the Tongxian sect are divided into 4 classes, A, B, C, and D, with the quality of disciples decreasing from Class A downwards, as does the sect's focus and cultivation efforts. Class A generally only recruits so-called children of heaven, who need good spiritual roots, high aptitude, and fast cultivation. Of course, if you have connections with the sect's elders or are willing to donate a significant amount of spirit stones, you can also enter Class A. In short, either you have talent, connections, or spirit stones. Class B includes disciples with average spiritual roots but good aptitude and diligence, and their overall performance is also commendable. Class C's disciples have average spiritual roots and aptitude, and their performance is mediocre, while Class D's disciples generally have poor spiritual roots and performance, and are essentially just getting by. Mo Hua was placed in Class B, belonging to those with average spiritual roots but who are diligent and perform fairly well in their studies. Mo Hua, at the second level of Qi cultivation, therefore lived and practiced on Tongling Peak, the mountain with the most disciples in the Tongxian sect. After entering the sect and greeting familiar fellow disciples, Mo Hua began a year of study and cultivation. Even the poorest cultivators gather some spirit stones to let their children enter the sect for cultivation, at least to lay some foundation and not be too ignorant about the various aspects of the cultivation world, so the early Qi cultivation disciples in the Tongxian sect are the most numerous. As for the mid-Qi cultivation phase, whether one can continue cultivating depends on the cultivator's own talent and family wealth. Some loose cultivator families simply cannot afford the spirit stones and have to let their children drop out, help others refine tools, do odd jobs, or learn to hunt demons in the mountains, just to scrape by. An annual tuition fee of 100 spirit stones is not a small sum, otherwise, the family would starve before the child could become skilled. And those who can continue to cultivate in the sect until the late Qi cultivation phase are even fewer. Mo Hua found that several familiar fellow disciples were no longer around. Upon inquiry, he learned that several of them had dropped out due to poor family circumstances and encountering difficulties, unable to afford the tuition. The path of cultivation is both broad and profound, and without guidance, one could wander aimlessly. Dropping out in the early Qi cultivation phase means it's very difficult to make any further progress in cultivation unless one encounters an extraordinary opportunity. Mo Hua sighed slightly, feeling pity, but his own situation was not much better, leaving him little time for such thoughts. Mo Hua spent his days attending classes and cultivating, using his free time to draw array formations, leading a busy and fulfilling life. A few months later, almost without realizing it, Mo Hua broke through to the third level of Qi cultivation. Qi cultivation progress relies heavily on persistence and accumulation, daily consistent cultivation and accumulating over months and years. If the spending on spirit stones is on point, breakthroughs naturally occur. But what loose cultivators lack the most is always spirit stones. Small realm breakthroughs rely on accumulation, mid-realm breakthroughs encounter bottlenecks. These bottlenecks require some special heavenly and earthly treasures, or pills to aid in the breakthrough. As for major realm breakthroughs, such as from Qi cultivation to foundation building, it's more a matter of fate, something that many lower-tier loose cultivators will never achieve in their lifetime. Every advancement in realm brings great benefits to a cultivator. At the third level of Qi cultivation, Mo Hua felt his spiritual power was more abundant, and his spiritual sense naturally strengthened. Previously, drawing the blazing fire ray was strenuous, but now it had become effortless, and he hardly needed to rest after completing it. Despite the anticipation, Mo Hua was still pleasantly surprised. No wonder so many cultivators endure the tedium of cultivation, focusing on advancing their realms. The unadorned joy that comes after such tedium is truly genuine happiness. At 10 years old, being at the third level of Qi cultivation, Mo Hua was considered above average in Class B. And now at the third level of Qi cultivation, Mo Hua needed to choose a cultivation technique. One day after class, the instructor, Yan, asked several third level Qi cultivation disciples to stay, including Mo Hua. Instructor Yan, taking over for the unwell elder Zhou, got straight to the point. The most important thing for a cultivator is spiritual power, whether in physical cultivation, spiritual cultivation, drawing arrays, refining pills, or crafting talismans, all require spiritual power. Strong spiritual power puts you a level above, weak spiritual power puts you a level below. The fundamental difference between cultivators is the difference in spiritual power. Spiritual power is determined by the cultivation technique, and the technique is determined by the spiritual roots. What kind of spiritual roots you have dictates what cultivation technique you can practice, and what technique you practice determines the abundance of your spiritual power. Spiritual roots are innate, predestined at birth, and cannot be changed later. You can't choose your spiritual roots, but you can choose what cultivation technique to practice. Choosing a suitable cultivation technique is greatly beneficial for future cultivation. If you have poor spiritual roots but practice the right technique, you may have a relatively long cultivation path. However, if you have superior spiritual roots but practice the wrong technique, you are essentially cutting off your path to longevity. No matter the quality of your spiritual roots, choosing a cultivation technique must be approached with the utmost caution. Cultivation technique, Mo Hua pondered silently. Mo Hua has a mid-grade lower tier 5-element spiritual root, which is considered below average among his peers in Tongxian City. It was uncertain what kind of cultivation technique he could learn with his spiritual roots. Chapter 17, Techniques. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Yan Zhaoxi spoke. The sect previously taught a breathing technique similar to this cultivation technique, which can also cultivate spiritual power but is quite basic, only suitable for cultivators below the third level of Qi cultivation. After reaching the third level of Qi cultivation, one should choose a genuine cultivation technique to learn. Of course, continuing with the breathing technique is also possible, but the cultivation will progress much slower. This is a catalog of cultivation techniques provided by the sect for the outer sect disciples, listing the names of the techniques, suitable spiritual roots, required spirit stones, spiritual items needed for breakthroughs, and the effects of each technique. Take a look for yourselves first. Yan Zhaoxi handed out the catalogs, and each disciple received one, Mo Hua included. The catalog was thin, only about a dozen pages, but it densely listed roughly dozens of cultivation techniques and related matters. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, Yan Zhaoxi said. After a moment of silence, a disciple raised his hand and asked, Sir, are cultivation techniques also categorized by attribute and rank like spiritual roots? Yan Zhaoxi glanced at the disciple and responded, at the third level of Qi cultivation, and you still ask such a basic question. It seems you haven't been paying attention in Zhou Zhaoxi's classes. Go back and copy Introduction to Cultivation once, and hand it to me in 3 days. The disciple, as if struck by lightning, stood dumbfounded for a moment before sadly lowering his head and saying, yes, filled with regret. It was careless to forget that it wasn't Zhou Jiaoxi speaking now and to blurt out whatever came to mind. Yan Jiaoxi surveyed the room and spoke earnestly. Zhou Jiaoxi is older and more lenient, not strict with you all, and you may not always pay attention in class. But selecting a cultivation technique is a serious matter. I will explain it again. Listen carefully and don't find it tedious. The disciples then sat up straight. A cultivator's spiritual root is categorized by attributes and ranks, just like cultivation techniques. The attributes of spiritual roots primarily consist of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Some are single element, some are mixed, and there are small and grand 5 elements. Beyond these, there are also special spiritual roots born from variations of the 5 elements, such as ice, thunder, wind, and the yin-yang spiritual roots, which are quite rare and seldom encountered. Furthermore, based on the quality of talent, spiritual roots are also divided into 9 ranks, from the lowest to the highest, and each rank significantly differs. The higher the rank of a spiritual root, the better the innate talent for cultivation, and the greater the capacity of the spirit seed to hold spiritual power. The classification of cultivation techniques is similar, divided by attribute in the same 9 ranks. When choosing a cultivation technique, it should match your spiritual root. The technique should match the attribute and rank of your spiritual root. The attribute of a spiritual root determines the unique nature of a cultivator's spiritual power. The rarer the attribute, the more special the spiritual power. The rank of the spiritual root determines the cultivator's talent for cultivation. The higher the rank, the greater the cultivation talent. Is a rarer spiritual root better? Timidly asked a disciple. Not necessarily. For disciples with large family clans and sect heritage, it's a good thing. But for average cultivators, the rarer the spiritual root, the fewer the cultivation techniques available, and some may even find no suitable techniques to learn, which isn't a good thing, explained Yan Jiaoxi. What if the attribute of the cultivation technique differs from that of the spiritual root? Asked another disciple. Nothing happens, Yan Jiaoxi said, because you can't cultivate it. A cultivator with a gold and water spiritual root simply cannot learn a technique of the earth and wood category. Are there no exceptions? Yan Jiaoxi raised an eyebrow and said, at least, in the annals of the Tao court over the past 20,000 years, none have been recorded. If you encounter one, let me know, it would be an eye-opener for me. That disciple shrank back, silent. Teacher, does the rank of the cultivation technique also have to match the rank of the spiritual root? Another disciple asked. Those with higher rank spiritual roots can cultivate lower rank techniques, but those with lower rank roots cannot cultivate higher rank techniques, Yan Jiaoxi replied. A disciple puzzled, why would someone with a high rank spiritual root choose a lower rank technique? Wouldn't that mean cultivating less spiritual power? The higher the rank of the technique, the more spirit stones are required for cultivation, and the more precious the celestial materials needed for breakthroughs. Some celestial materials are not something an ordinary cultivator can afford. It's not wise to choose a high rank technique and find halfway through that you can't afford to continue. Regret would come too late then. What if someone with a low rank spiritual root learns a high rank technique? The disciple asked again. Yan Jiaoxi said, according to the Manual of Cultivation Techniques, if the rank of the technique exceeds that of the spiritual root, the cultivator, after absorbing too much spiritual power, often suffers damage to the spirit sea, which can lead to a complete collapse of cultivation ability, and in severe cases, deviation and death. Some go into deviation. Does that mean some don't? Asked a disciple, eyes lighting up. Yan Jiaoxi looked at him meaningfully. Don't always think you're the special one who won't have problems while others will. Some people might have the luck in cultivation, but don't stake your life on such fleeting fortune, seeking your own death. Many of the disciples present had harbored such thoughts. Hearing this, they felt a chill in their hearts and dared not entertain other thoughts. Yan Jiaoxi continued, these are not isolated cases but the bitter lessons from 20,000 years of cultivation history. Not learning from the experiences of predecessors makes it easy to stray from the path. Once a cultivator deviates, it's often beyond their control. Some may turn back, but others never can. Yan Jiaoxi sighed, looking somewhat forlorn. Mo Hua felt that Yan Jiaoxi seemed a bit troubled. But Yan Jiaoxi said no more, instead pointing to the Tongxian Sect Qi Cultivation Outer Sect Techniques catalog, and instructed. Based on what I just explained, find a suitable technique for yourselves. Remember, in cultivation, appropriateness is best. The disciples then lowered their heads and began flipping through the catalog. Mo Hua understood the basics and started looking for a technique. His was a lower middle rank spiritual root, so he could only practice techniques of the same rank, but he was still curious about what the higher rank techniques were like. Mo Hua first flipped to the last pages of the catalog, looking at several higher rank techniques. Yellow Earth Profound Technique, suitable for Earth Element spiritual roots, allows for cultivating spiritual power for 120 cycles, at least 5,000 spirit stones required for complete Qi cultivation phase, celestial materials needed, Zhan Huang grass, bitter water root, celestial black stone. Gentle Water Technique, suitable for Water Element spiritual roots, allows for cultivating spiritual power for 130 cycles, at least 5,200 spirit stones required for complete Qi cultivation phase, celestial materials needed, 100-year rootless water, silver serpent blood. 5 elements Qi absorption technique, suitable for spiritual roots of the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements, allows for cultivating spiritual power for 150 cycles, at least 6,000 spirit stones required for complete Qi cultivation phase, celestial materials needed, gold essence stone, molten fire stone, century-old soil. Mo Hua was astounded. At least 5 to 6,000 spirit stones required for complete Qi cultivation phase, and that's just for the spirit stones needed for cultivation, not including the celestial materials for assisting cultivation and breaking through bottlenecks. Some rare celestial materials might cost even more than 5 to 6,000 spirit stones. Mo Hua had 12 for a month to earn just 50 spirit stones. The staggering cost of 5,000 stones left him reeling. Mo Hua had also heard from others that ordinary loose cultivators, even with high-ranked spiritual roots, simply couldn't afford high-ranked cultivation techniques. If one insisted on practicing them, there were generally only 2 options. One was to find a major sect, take a senior as a master, enter the inner sect, and bind oneself to the sect for life. The other was to marry into a family, allowing the family to support your cultivation, but the family would require you to change your surname, forsake your parents, your origins, and all your past. Although you would have a future, you would no longer be yourself. Either way, you were more or less bound by others. Though you had hopes for advancement in cultivation, you weren't free anymore. No wonder cultivators often say, fate first, then luck and geomancy. A cultivator's fate is set by their spiritual root and then by their birth. Changing one's fate against the heavens is easier said than done. Mo Hua sighed deeply. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 18. Choices. Let's focus on the task at hand for now. Mo Hua mused to himself, then earnestly began to flip through the lower tier techniques. Minor 5 Elements Technique, a lower tier technique suitable for cultivators with 5 elements spiritual roots. It allows for the cultivation of spiritual energy for 70 cycles. To achieve full mastery in the Qi cultivation phase, at least 1,000 spirit stones are needed, along with heaven and earth treasures like century-old soil. Rejuvenation Technique, a lower tier technique suitable for cultivators with wood spiritual roots. It allows for the cultivation of spiritual energy for 75 cycles. To achieve full mastery in the Qi cultivation phase, at least 1,100 spirit stones are needed, along with heaven and earth treasures like evergreen wood or leaves older than 10 years. 100 Flames Technique, a lower tier technique suitable for cultivators with fire spiritual roots. It allows for the cultivation of spiritual energy for 60 cycles. To achieve full mastery in the Qi cultivation phase, at least 900 spirit stones are needed, along with heaven and earth treasures like magma stone. Lower tier techniques require a significant number of spirit stones for cultivation, but they are more accessible compared to superior techniques. However, there are trade-offs. While lower tier techniques consume fewer spirit stones, the spiritual energy cultivated is also less potent. With Mo Hua's lower-tier spiritual roots, practicing lower-tier techniques means his spiritual energy is roughly only a bit more than half of those cultivators with superior-tier spiritual roots in the same realm. This disparity is just the tip of the iceberg, as the difference in spiritual energy becomes more profound with superior mid-tier and high-tier techniques. The further one progresses in cultivation, the more significant the disparity in spiritual roots becomes. Indeed, some are blessed by the heavens from birth. Mo Hua shook his head, realizing that dwelling on unchangeable spiritual roots was pointless. Mo Hua turned to the last page of the technique catalog, and was stunned by the fine print at the bottom. Technique inheritance fee. What is that? Mo Hua read the note below. The techniques of the Tongxian sect have been painstakingly compiled, studied, and refined by successive sect leaders and elders, representing the culmination of generations of effort. Disciples must pay a certain number of spirit stones to qualify for inheritance. The inheritance fee for superior tier techniques is 1100 spirit stones, discounted to 998 for those with rare superior spiritual roots. The fee for lower tier techniques is slightly less, and even less for the lowest tier, but still requires 200 spirit stones. Mo Hua was dumbfounded. There's an inheritance fee? I've never heard of such a thing before. How can the sect charge fees so arbitrarily? That's way too exploitative. With only 8 spirit stones to his name, Mo Hua sighed helplessly. This world of cultivation is all too real and harsh. Once you've chosen a technique and paid the inheritance fee, the sect will impart the technique to you. These matters are significant. It's best to discuss them with your parents or elders before deciding. Don't aim too high or miss your future path due to shallow judgment. After delivering his advice, Instructor Yan left, his demeanor suggesting he was somewhat reluctant to enforce such matters. As soon as he departed, the disciples gathered in small groups, buzzing with chatter. What's this inheritance fee? I've never heard of it before. Who knows, if the sect charges it, can we even refuse? The heaven and earth mystique alone costs over 1,000 spirit stones just in fees, tisk tisk. If you really study it, you might as well sell yourself to the sect. Thanks, my spiritual roots aren't even suitable. My parents both have mid-tier spiritual roots. Why am I stuck with low-tier roots? There's hardly any technique I can choose. You should read The Theory of Spiritual Root Evolution among cultivators to understand why you, the offspring of mid-tier parents, ended up with low-tier roots. Are there really any superior spiritual roots among us? Yes, I have a distant cousin with superior roots, but his dad gambles and his mom is lazy. Their family is dirt poor, and he ended up choosing a mid-low-tier technique, completely wasting his potential. It's truly tragic. Even if I had superior roots, I couldn't afford to cultivate them. You could marry into a wealthier family. Not a chance. The disciples' discussions buzzed around Mo Hua, who propped his chin thoughtfully. This sect inheritance fee was more than he had anticipated. There were techniques in the technique catalog that Mo Hua could choose from, but his parents had just scraped together his allowance, and they couldn't afford to pay so many spirit stones soon, even if they managed to scrape together the funds. It would be a huge burden on his family. If that's the case, I'll have to forego choosing a technique for now. I'll just make do with a breathing technique for the time being, and once I've saved up enough spirit stones through drawing array formations, I'll pick a technique from the catalog to practice. After all, I've only reached the 3rd layer of chi cultivation. There's still some time before I break through to the 4th layer. Mo Hua tossed the technique catalog into his storage bag, with no immediate plans to bring it back to his parents. His priority was to earn spirit stones by drawing array formations. Mo Hua continued his daily routine just like before, practicing cultivation, attending classes, and drawing array formations in his spare time. Life in the sect was monotonous but still quite pleasant. Tongling Peak was beautiful, shrouded in light mist with lush greenery and frequent birdsong, and scented with flowers. After class, the outer sect disciples often wandered the mountains, admiring the flowers in groups. The female disciples were pretty and paired up for walks. The male disciples chased after spirit beasts around the mountain. There were budding romances among male and female cultivators whispering sweet nothings in the flowery valleys, and jealous disciples occasionally fought. But none of this concerned Mo Hua, who was devoted entirely to learning about array formations. Besides eating and attending classes, he spent all his time studying array formations, even practicing drawing array patterns on stone slabs in his sleep. Among the familiar disciples, Da Hu was at the 5th layer of chi cultivation, while Shuang Hu and Xiao Hu had already reached the 4th layer. They were practicing at Tongchuan Peak. Although the two peaks were not far apart, they knew Mo Hua was focused on learning array formations and generally did not disturb him if it wasn't necessary. Mo Hua had a kind and unassuming face, appearing harmless to humans and animals alike, and was generally well liked on Tongling Peak. No one thought to bully him. Moreover, Mo Hua was doing well in his studies of array formations, highly regarded by Instructor Yan. If anyone tried to bully him, and Instructor Yan found out, the consequences would be severe. Instructor Yan detested disciples causing trouble and not focusing on their cultivation. If he learned of any disturbances, the punishment would be extremely harsh. Furthermore, Da Hu and the others always looked out for Mo Hua. They were tall and took the path of physical cultivation, planning to enter Dahe Mountain to become demon hunters. They usually looked for opportunities to spar when there was nothing else to do. If something happened on Mo Hua's side, they would roll up their sleeves and hurriedly run over from Tongchuan Peak. Mo Hua focused on his cultivation without distraction, the only exception being with Xiaofu. Mo Hua had borrowed 10 spirit stones from Xiaofu before the year's end and was now returning them. When Mo Hua handed over the spirit stones, Xiaofu was stunned. He had clearly forgotten about them and took a long time to remember. The Yin family was a prominent clan in Tongxian City, and he indeed did not care much about 10 spirit stones. It could also be simply because he was forgetful. After furrowing his brows in recollection for a while, and Xiaofu's expression became complex as he said, "You're the first one who's borrowed spirit stones and actually thought to return them." Mo Hua felt a mix of emotions inside. This must be what they mean by the foolish son of a landowner. Some of the lent spirit stones might have been forgotten by Xiaofu himself, while others might have been intentionally not returned by others. He truly did not lack spirit stones, so he had grown accustomed to it over time. "You're so naive, be careful not to be deceived by others." Mo Hua had started to say, "foolish," but switched to a more tactful word, patting Xiaofu's shoulder gently. And Xiaofu's expression grew even more complex, even slightly touched. "Little Mo brother, everyone says I'm stupid, but only you know I'm just kind-hearted. Of all the disciples I've met, you're the smartest. No wonder you're so good at drawing array formations." Mo Hua was at a loss for words for a moment. A month passed, and the sect had a 10-day break, giving them 2 days off. Mo Hua left the sect and headed to Destiny's shop on North Street, where he handed over the blazing fire array he had drawn to Manager Wang, then asked, "Is there a more challenging array than the blazing fire array that could earn more spirit stones?" Manager Wang glanced at Mo Hua. "Did your brother ask you to inquire?" "Yes," Mo Hua nodded. "There is." "Indeed," Manager Wang said, bending down to rummage through a drawer behind the desk before pulling out a diagram with several unfamiliar array patterns. The earth solidification array can solidify soil and stone, commonly used by cultivators to construct and reinforce buildings and windows. It's a bit more challenging than the blazing fire array, and each earth solidification array pays 2 spirit stones. 2 spirit stones. That's double what the blazing fire array paid. "Can I take a look at the array diagram first?" Manager Wang rolled his eyes at Mo Hua. "What's the use of you looking? It should be your brother." Despite his words, he handed over the diagram to Mo Hua. Basic array diagrams like these weren't particularly rare, so there was no harm in letting others see them. Mo Hua examined the diagram and realized many of the array patterns were unfamiliar, never taught by the sect instructors. "I wonder how long it will take to learn this array." The inheritance fees for the sect's techniques were too expensive, and it would take a long time to earn spirit stones with the blazing fire array. Mo Hua wanted to draw a new array but hesitated. If he didn't draw well, he might lose spirit stones, and if he couldn't learn it within the deadline, the array pavilion would deduct the entire deposit. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Mo Hua made up his mind. Even if he didn't learn it within the deadline and lost all 20 spirit stones, he could always go back to drawing the blazing fire array to earn them back. To become an array master, he would eventually need to draw arrays far more challenging than just one blazing fire array for the rest of his life. Chapter 19. Earth Solidification Array. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The deposit for the Earth Solidification Array was 20 spirit stones, and Mo Hua took out 10 from his previous earnings to give to the Pudgy manager, receiving the Earth Solidification Array diagram and 10 sets of paper and ink materials, with a deadline of 20 days. After leaving the merchant's office, Mo Hua went to the pastry shop and spent 2 spirit stones on 10 colorful cakes, then headed straight back to the sect, sharing some of the cakes with the 3 Hus. The sect's meals were not great, and the 3 were often greedy for a treat, but there wasn't much good food around. Buying some pastries was Mo Hua's way of treating them. A few evenings later, after finishing his classes for the day, Mo Hua was in his room studying the Earth Solidification Array when he suddenly heard someone knocking. Upon opening the door, he saw Shuang Hu standing there sneakily. Shuang Hu quietly handed him a greased paper package, whispering, "Keep it to yourself, don't tell others." After looking around, he ran off like a thief. The disciples' residence provided by Tongxian sect was simple, with 2 modest wooden beds and tables in each room, just enough for living. There were more luxurious accommodations within Tongxian sect, but they cost extra spirit stones. Mo Hua had a sect mate as a roommate, but he dropped out this year, not because he couldn't afford the fees, but because he found cultivation tedious and was unwilling to continue, leaving Mo Hua alone in the room. Mo Hua closed the door and opened the still warm grease paper to find a freshly roasted chicken leg. The chicken leg was the size of a fist, steaming hot, slightly charred, and emitting an enticing aroma, especially with a faint aura of spiritual energy. It was the meat of a spiritual beast. It couldn't have been stolen, could it? The Hus couldn't afford such meat, and their sneaky demeanor suggested it was indeed stolen. Mo Hua hesitated, then took a bite. It was slightly burnt and undercooked, unseasoned, and somewhat bland. Culinary arts in the cultivation world are quite particular. Handling such ingredients is tricky without specific culinary training, like the meat of herbivorous demonic beasts, which is tough and requires intensive cooking. The meat from spiritual beasts is finer, but cooking it still requires care. Apart from meat, other vegetables and fruits carry their own flavors and some spiritual energy, which if not properly matched, can taste quite odd. The chicken leg Mo Hua held was simply roasted, likely in a rush to avoid detection, which is why it wasn't very tasty. But for Mo Hua, who hadn't eaten meat in over a month, it was good enough. He finished the chicken leg with some effort, then lit a fire to burn the grease paper and threw the bones into the creek outside to completely erase the evidence. After eating, Mo Hua spent some time refining the spiritual energy from the chicken meat, then returned to studying the array. Sure enough, a couple of days later, Mo Hua heard that some Chi cultivation disciples had stolen an elder's chickens, plucked them clean, and roasted them to eat. The elder was furious, caught several disciples, and punished them severely. A few days later, Mo Hua saw the 3 Hus with bruised faces and bumps on their heads. They were stationed at Tongchuan Peak, and the elder had easily found them. They couldn't escape punishment, though it was mostly superficial, serving more as a warning to the other disciples. The 3 Hus looked miserable but stood proudly. Managing to steal a chicken right under an elder's nose was not something ordinary disciples could achieve. They saw Mo Hua but pretended not to, and Xiao Hu even winked at Mo Hua, signaling him to pretend he didn't know them. Mo Hua couldn't help but smile wryly, thinking he'd buy them more pastries next break. It was still 7 days until the next break, and 13 days had passed since Mo Hua collected the array materials from the Pudgy manager. His understanding of the Earth Solidification Array was not progressing well. The array patterns in the Earth Solidification Array were unfamiliar to Mo Hua, much more complex than the basic Earth element array patterns taught by the sect, and quite challenging to grasp. Mo Hua didn't find it too hard to memorize the array patterns, but practicing them on the steel consumed much of his spiritual sense and was prone to errors. Either the drawn array patterns didn't form an array, or they were simply ineffective, unable to channel spiritual power. After more than 10 days of trial and error, Mo Hua was still clueless. Sometimes he thought he understood, but he would make a mistake as soon as he started drawing. Finally, Mo Hua decided to seek advice from Instructor Yan. One day after class, while Instructor Yan was tidying up his desk, the students dispersed in small groups. Mo Hua approached Instructor Yan with several basic Earth element array patterns, respectfully asking for guidance. "Instructor, I don't quite understand these Earth element array patterns. Could you please enlighten me?" Instructor Yan looked at the array patterns Mo Hua handed over and said, "These are basic 5 elements array patterns, quite standard and universal. If you're having trouble, just practice more." The basic Earth element array patterns taught by the sect were indeed easy for Mo Hua, but he was actually curious about something else. Mo Hua then brought out several Earth element array patterns from the Earth Solidification Array, saying, "I came across these array patterns that seem different from what's in the textbooks, but I can't exactly point out how. They're also easy to mess up when drawing. I don't know what the issue is." Instructor Yan was surprised and said, "These are modified 5 elements array patterns, different from the standard ones taught by the sect. When drawing these, you need to change your brushwork in the order of strokes." Instructor Yan took a piece of paper and casually drew several array patterns, explaining as he went. Mo Hua suddenly understood. The method of drawing array patterns was somewhat similar to calligraphy. Apart from the standard array patterns, there were also more unique ones, each with slight variations in brushwork. These alternative array patterns were numerous and couldn't be classified, so the sect normally only taught the standard ones. No wonder they say the art of array is profound. The pitfalls are endless. If I hadn't asked the instructor, I wouldn't have figured it out even with 2 heads. Mo Hua thought to himself. And to link these array patterns to form an array, like this kind of array. Mo Hua finally brought out the diagram of the Earth Solidification Array. Instructor Yan glanced at it and recognized it, then looked at Mo Hua and said, "This is the Earth Solidification Array. It's too early for you to be learning this." "I was just curious and wanted to understand it thoroughly," Mo Hua earnestly requested. "Well, knowing a bit in advance is good for you." Instructor Yan was energized, having been teaching basic array patterns daily, and was clearly more excited to discuss a substantial array. He explained, "Arrays are formed by the arrangement and connection of array patterns. Simple arrays contain fewer patterns and are straightforward. The more complex the array, the more array patterns it contains, and the more intricate the arrangement, spatial configuration, and connections. The Earth Solidification Array includes 4 patterns, which need to be drawn in a specific sequence and orientation." Instructor Yan spoke enthusiastically, and Mo Hua listened intently until the end. Instructor Yan seemed somewhat reluctant to stop, then added a warning. "The path of array mastery is vast and profound. It's good for you to get a head start, but the things taught by the sect are just the basics, not even the basics. If you want to become a true array master, the difficulty and effort required are beyond your current imagination." Instructor Yan paused, then continued. "Also, don't aim too high and attempt to draw arrays beyond your grasp. It's okay to look at them, but actually trying to draw them can easily lead to exhaustion of your spiritual sense, so remember this well." Mo Hua bowed respectfully. "I have learned much, thank you, instructor." Chapter 20. Completing the Array. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua went back and tried to draw the array patterns as instructed by Yan Jiaoxi and indeed felt a sudden enlightenment. At night, while practicing on the steel, he found that his comprehension improved significantly faster. Some parts he didn't understand at first became clear after drawing them multiple times. Once he firmly mastered the basic array patterns, learning the variable patterns wasn't too challenging. The real difficulty was the lack of guidance. Without it, Mo Hua wouldn't think in that direction and found himself at a dead end. After practicing for another day, on the evening of the 3rd day, Mo Hua started to formally draw the Earth Solidification Array. His initial attempts weren't smooth, but after some stumbling, he finally completed it, though it took a bit long. The 4-patterned Earth solidification array took Mo Wa 1.5 hours to complete, and he needed another hour to rest due to the excessive consumption of his spiritual sense. By the time Mo Wa finished drawing the Earth solidification array, it was midnight. After checking, to no surprise, he found a mistake. He had drawn it wrong. Mo Wa sighed. In one night, he only managed to draw one, and it was incorrect. He only had 5 days to complete 10 arrays, which made his time extremely tight. What should I do? Mo Wa thought for a moment and, with no other options, decided to skip some of his cultivation classes. History and general knowledge classes on cultivation, of course, couldn't be skipped, as they were crucial for broadening his horizons and enhancing his cultivation experience. Alchemy and talisman making, which required spending spirit stones to purchase herbs and talisman jade stones and renting the sect's alchemy furnace, were expensive, so Mo Wa selectively skipped some of these classes. After all, he never saw much future for himself in these expensive branches of cultivation. He could skip all the physical training classes. Cultivators train their spiritual power through techniques and utilize spiritual power to attack through Taoist laws. Taoist laws are divided into 2 types, spell-based and martial-based. Spells involve manipulating spiritual power with spiritual sense to form attacks, while martial techniques use spiritual power to enhance the body's potential for physical combat. Those who train in spells are called spiritual cultivators, and those in martial techniques are known as physical cultivators. During the Qi cultivation phase, there are fewer spiritual cultivators and more physical ones, especially in Tongxian City, where most cultivators earn their living by hunting demons. Spiritual cultivators are weaker and less suited for demon hunting, thus, many unaffiliated cultivators take the path of physical cultivation. For this reason, Tongxian sect specifically opened a physical training course to allow inner sect disciples to train their bodies early. But physical training was not meant for Mo Wa. He didn't inherit his father Mo Shan's talent for physical training. Instead, he was more like his mother Lu Ruha, naturally frail from childhood and even weaker in constitution than Lu Ruha. According to Old Master Feng from Xinglin Hall, a cultivator's spiritual sense and body are supposed to be balanced as they are born adhering to the way of heaven. Mo Wa was born with the memories of 2 lifetimes. His innate spiritual sense was too strong, causing an imbalance with his body. As one flourished, the other waned, making him frail and frequently ill since birth. While his peers could easily lift a 100-kilogram cauldron, Mo Wa could hardly move it, even with all his might. Most cultivators his age were a head taller and significantly more robust than him. Though Mo Wa was thin, his handsome appearance and gentle demeanor, with rosy lips and white teeth, made him look like a porcelain doll at the age of 10. This appearance wasn't bad, but Mo Wa felt that a true man should be robust and imposing. Like his father, who was tall, ruggedly handsome, and imposing. In Mo Hua's dreams, he envisioned himself in a white robe, practicing peerless martial arts, his spear striking like a dragon, standing valiantly alone against thousands. Unfortunately, such scenes were only possible in his dreams. Oh, right. Mo Wa remembered that after falling asleep, his spiritual sense would automatically enter his sea of consciousness, making dreaming impossible. The instructor initially wanted to be strict with Mo Wa during physical training, but after seeing him struggle several times with the cauldron without moving it and injuring his arm, he became much more lenient. That's how cultivation is sometimes. Effort alone can't solve everything. The instructor was quite understanding of Mo Wa. When one door closes, heaven might want you to try a different path, not keep hitting the same obstacle. Thus, Mo Wa selectively skipped these classes and spent the freed up time locked in his room, focusing on drawing the Earth solidification array. After 5 days of intensive work during his break, Mo Wa finally used up all 10 sets of materials, successfully completing 6 arrays. Not only did he break even, but he also made a profit of 4 spirit stones, which pleased him. Taking advantage of the day off during the break, Mo Wa went to Destiny's shop on North Street and handed over the completed Earth solidification arrays to the chubby manager. The manager examined the arrays and commented, "Your brother's foundation in array formation is really weak, but he learns quickly. Each of these arrays is visibly better than the last." However, the manager critiqued the first array again. "This array is like that of a beginner, even some basic patterns are shaky." Mo Wa was used to the manager's grumbling. It went in one ear and out the other. Moreover, the manager was talking about his brother, which had nothing to do with him. He didn't even have a brother. Mo Wa got straight to the point. "Can they be exchanged for spirit stones?" The manager gave Mo Wa a look but still counted out 4 spirit stones for him. "Tell your brother to do better next time." Sure. Mo Wa took the spirit stones, nodding repeatedly. He spent the 4 spirit stones on pastries, eating 2 himself and saving 2, giving the rest to Dahu and the others. Dahu and the 2 were deeply moved by the abundance of pastries, and asked if Mo Wa wanted more meat. They had seen an elder raising a colorful and plump duck. Mo Wa had a headache and told them to stop stealing, or else the sect would notify their parents, and they'd be skinned alive at home. Reluctantly, Dahu and the others gave up on the idea. Afterward, Mo Wa continued to draw the Earth solidification array, doing so for over 2 months. As he drew more, he gradually mastered the technique. Initially, each Earth solidification array, including the time for breaks and recovery of spiritual sense, took about 3 hours. Now, he needed only 1.5 hours. This improvement was due to practice making perfect, a deeper understanding and mastery of the array patterns reducing the time needed to draw them, and his continuous practice of array formation, constantly consuming, recovering, and applying his spiritual sense, invisibly strengthening his spiritual sense. His spiritual sense was much more robust than before. A strong spiritual sense had clear benefits for array formation. The success rate of the Earth solidification array reached 80 to 90%, occasionally achieving success with all 10 arrays. Each array earned him 2 spirit stones. Over these 2 months, after deducting his daily expenses, Mo Wa had saved up a total of 100 spirit stones. Mo Wa planned to save up 200 spirit stones and then select a mid-grade lower-tier technique from the sect. After choosing, he would discuss it with his parents, who would surely say they could pay for the spirit stones and that he should keep his for cultivation or future expenses, such as acquiring a partner or buying a cave residence. Chapter 21, The Spiritual Pivot Array. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Afterwards, Mo Wa continued to draw the Earth solidification array, which he did for 2 months. Whenever he encountered something unclear in the array, he would consult Yan Jiaoxi. Yan Jiaoxi, a stern man with high standards, was always generous in sharing knowledge, explaining in detail and with earnest. Yan Jiaoxi felt it was too early for Mo Wa to delve into these advanced arrays without a solid foundation, but he patiently explained whenever Mo Wa asked, earning Mo Hua's deep gratitude. Sometimes, Mo Wa skipped classes to secretly draw arrays for spirit stones, and Yan Jiaoxi did not pursue it too strictly, only advising Mo Wa. A cultivator can specialize, but shouldn't be overly biased. Some techniques might be unknown to you, but you must at least be aware of them, to avoid pitfalls after graduating from the sect and venturing into the cultivation world. Mo Wa humbly accepted the teaching and benefited greatly. Now, lacking spirit stones for his cultivation techniques, he continued to skip classes to draw arrays and gather spirit stones. Each Earth solidification array, with its 4 array patterns, could earn him 2 spirit stones, speeding up his collection significantly. 2 months later, on a routine day, Mo Wa went to the steward to deliver an order, but upon entering, he found the usually quiet Destiny's shop occupied by a middle-aged man in a blue Taoist robe, drinking tea. The man's back seemed familiar, and upon turning around, Mo Wa was startled. It was Yan Jiaoxi. Mo Wa suddenly felt like he had been caught skipping class. Mo Wa? Yan Jiaoxi also saw Mo Wa, expressing surprise. The steward, sitting across from Yan Jiaoxi and pouring tea, looked up and exclaimed in surprise, "You know each other?" Yan Jiaoxi replied, "He is one of my students from the Tongxian sect." Mo Wa bowed respectfully. Disciple pays respects to the instructor. Yan Jiaoxi nodded in acknowledgement and asked, "What brings you here?" Before Mo Hua could reply, the steward explained, he's running errands for his brother, who draws arrays for our array pavilion. Once completed, he delivers them. Yan Jiaoxi nodded, asking no further. Relieved, Mo Hua handed over the array to the steward, took the spirit stones, and quickly excused himself. Disciple must leave now, not to disturb the instructor. Yan Jiaoxi seemed to have matters to discuss with the steward and, seeing Mo Hua's tact, nodded approvingly. Head back to the sect early and be safe on the road. Mo Hua bowed respectfully and left the array pavilion. The steward, watching Mo Hua's departure, said to Yan Jiaoxi, that boy is very polite and clever. You're lucky to have such a good disciple. Yan Jiaoxi hummed softly, then inquired, you said his brother draws the arrays for you? The steward presented the earth solidification array Mo Hua had delivered, remarking, it's quite well done. Yan Jiaoxi was surprised, this was drawn by his brother? What else? The steward replied, you don't think he could draw a complete array at his age, do you? Even if he drained all his spiritual sense. Yan Jiaoxi nodded, remembering that Mo Hua had consulted him about the earth solidification array, likely after seeing his brother work on it and developing questions. Having a thirst for knowledge in arrays is good, Yan Jiaoxi thought silently. If he maintains this mindset, he might truly excel in array cultivation. Yan Jiaoxi let the matter rest and surveyed the quiet, deserted shop before turning to the steward, is this how you want to live your life? The steward, sipping tea, responded, we both pursued cultivation together, you know my disposition. I'm not like you, you're now an instructor at Tongxian sect with profound expertise in arrays, close to becoming a first-grade array master. When you achieve that, you'll have connections, status, and abundant spirit stones here in Tongxian City, and the sect will surely offer you an elder's position. As for me, the steward continued, I'm content with living day by day, only superficially engaged in arrays and not fond of solitude in cultivation. Just getting by each day satisfies me. Don't look down on me. Consider those independent cultivators bustling on the streets. This leisurely life is beyond their reach. Yan Jiaoxi fell silent. The steward, seeing Yan Jiaoxi's silence, sighed, tell me, what do you need my help with? Yan Jiaoxi solemnly requested, help me find the spiritual pivot array diagram. The steward massaged his temples. After all these years, you still haven't given up. In my opinion, you're not getting any younger. It's time to find a partner and settle down. Personal matters are trivial compared to the inheritance of array techniques. Even if you find it, what then? Our grandmaster couldn't master it, nor could our master. Do you think you can? A first-grade array requires understanding 12 array patterns, and you're not even a first-grade master yet. How will the spiritual pivot array diagram help you? You might not master it even in your lifetime. Yan Jiaoxi remained silent. The steward, trying to persuade him, added, brother, let it go. Besides, you can't even find it. That traitor left the sect and stole the techniques years ago without a trace, and even the Dao court can't track him down. You're an array master, not skilled in Daoist techniques. What can you do? Yan Jiaoxi was unmoved. My master treated me with great kindness. All my array techniques were passed down from him. Now that my master is gone and the sect shattered, the techniques lost, I can't rest easy. If I can recover the techniques and continue the legacy, nothing else matters. I know you prefer comfort and won't ask much of you. Just let me know if you hear anything about the spiritual pivot array diagram. You needn't worry about the rest. How do you know there might be clues about the spiritual pivot array diagram in Tongxian City? The steward frowned. Yan Jiaoxi remained silent. The steward waved his hand. All right, knowing too much is not good for me either. I'll help you, but I also kindly remind you, you might still end up with nothing in the end. Feeling troubled yet unable to hold back, the steward continued, if I were you, I'd rather spend some effort finding a partner, have a child. Even if you can't find it, your child might continue the search, ensuring you don't die alone and miserable. While you're still not too old, find a partner, just find one, so you don't end up regretting later. The tea has cooled, I'm leaving. Yan Jiaoxi rose, brushed off his sleeves, and walked away, ignoring the steward's continuous chatter behind him. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 22, Clues. Yan Jiaoxi left the array pavilion and returned to Tungming Peak at the Tongxian sect. Each instructor at the Tongxian sect had their own residence on Tungming Peak, consisting of 3 rooms and a living hall, complete with a small courtyard where one could cultivate spiritual plants or rear spiritual beasts. Yan Jiaoxi's residence was clean and tidy, with array diagrams neatly pasted all over the walls, devoid of any other decorations. He reviewed the basic array manuals, preparing several array patterns he was to teach later in the month, and then began grading the array assignments submitted by the Qi cultivation disciples. Nearly 1,000 disciples at the Tongxian sect's Tongxuan Peak were under his supervision, and he meticulously corrected each of their array assignments, marking any errors. This task was time-consuming and required patience, but Yan Jiaoxi was meticulous in his work, a habit ingrained by his master's teachings over the years. His master, a first-grade array master, might not have been the most outstanding in the cultivation world, but he devoted his life to teaching and passing on the Tao of arrays in accordance with the heavenly principles. Now that his master had passed, Yan Jiaoxi, having become an instructor himself, could appreciate his master's painstaking efforts. As evening approached, Yan Jiaoxi lit a lamp and continued grading the arrays. The Tongxian sect was still a small and remote sect with weak cultivation heritage. Among the 1,000 disciples, only a few could draw the basic array patterns properly. Those who did well usually came from learned families or were from wealthy households willing to spend spirit stones on their education, such as children of officials serving at the Dao court, children of sect elders, or disciples from cultivation families within the city. Very few from poor, unaffiliated cultivator backgrounds managed to excel in array drawing. Regardless of their background, Yan Jiaoxi judged them solely on their arrays. He would add detailed comments to those who tried hard but lacked skill. For those who performed poorly and with a lackadaisical attitude, his comments were stern, and he took note of their names. Occasionally, when a disciple drew an excellent array, he felt reassured and would write excellent next to their work, encouraging them with a larger character than usual. Diligently grading, Yan Jiaoxi's interest was piqued by a particular array diagram. The strokes were proficient, clearly the result of considerable practice, and showed a mastery of the principles, even suitable for official array creation. He looked up at the scroll, which bore the name Mo Hua, and nodded in approval before writing excellent next to the array. As he continued grading, he revisited Mo Hua's diagram, his brow furrowed in thought. The proficiency seemed almost too polished, even effortless. For a disciple at the 2nd or 3rd level of Qi cultivation, simply being able to complete an array diagram was an achievement. Reflecting on a recent encounter at the array pavilion with Mo Hua, Yan Jiaoxi pondered silently, a question emerging. Does Mo Hua have an elder brother? If his brother is also skilled in arrays, that would suggest a familial learning, but if I recall correctly, Mo Hua comes from a poor, unaffiliated background. A family with a tradition in arrays wouldn't be impoverished. He could be helping the array pavilion with diagrams, indicating significant talent in arrays. Having taught at Tongxian sect for nearly a decade, I don't recall instructing anyone like that. Could he be from another sect? That seems unlikely, as brothers generally join the same sect, especially since Tongxian sect is the largest in the city. Tapping his fingers on the desk, Yan Jiaoxi momentarily set aside his thoughts and focused on finishing the grading. The next day, Yan Jiaoxi rose early and sought out the steward of Tungming Peak for a list of disciples' origins. Upon finding Mo Hua's entry, it read: Mo Hua, age 10, Qi cultivation level 3, lower mid-grade minor 5 element spiritual root. Father, Mo Shan, demon hunter. Mother, Lu Ruha, meal preparer. Apart from his parents, he had no other relatives, certainly no elder brother. Yan Jiaoxi felt a hunch but found it unlikely. During the morning array class, he announced an impromptu assignment: draw all the 5 elements array patterns they had learned and submit them in 3 days. The disciples, shocked by the sudden task, reacted as if struck by frost. Mo Hua, however, was indifferent. Having already assisted the array pavilion with array diagrams, drawing a few more was trivial. But why had Yan Jiaoxi suddenly assigned this work? It was uncharacteristic of him. Puzzled, Mo Hua was then approached by An Xiaofu. Mo Hua, you must help me, and Xiaofu almost cried out. Why has the instructor suddenly assigned this homework? Usually, it's only every few months that we get tested on our array skills. Caught off guard and unable to draw a single pattern due to the tight deadline, and Xiaofu had no choice but to seek Mo Hua's help. For Mo Hua, these basic array patterns were no longer challenging. He helped An Xiaofu draw the arrays, charging only a friendship price. Several other well-off but less skilled fellow disciples also sought Mo Hua's assistance, which he readily provided. With arrays to draw and spirit stones to earn, Mo Hua had little else on his mind. 3 days later, when the array assignments were submitted, Yan Jiaoxi picked out the diagrams drawn by Mo Hua and inspected them thoroughly before storing them in his bag and heading to Destiny's shop to find the stout steward. The stout steward was wary upon seeing Yan Jiaoxi. Are you here for tea or to have me do something? Just to ask you something, Yan Jiaoxi replied, relieving the steward's anxiety. Do you still have the array diagrams Mo Hua submitted to you? Mo Hua, the steward paused, then remembered, oh, that young man. Yes, I do. What about them? How many are there? A few of each, the blazing fire array and the earth solidification array. I keep them as spares. The steward handed over the diagrams Mo Hua had previously submitted for the blazing fire array and the earth solidification array to Yan Jiaoxi. After comparing them with the array homework, Yan Jiaoxi took a deep breath. The steward, curious, asked, what are you looking at? Yan Jiaoxi pointed to the array patterns in the diagrams, asking, do you think these patterns in these two diagrams were drawn by the same person? The steward examined them closely, furrowing his brow before nodding. The stroke work is quite similar, likely from the same person. Thinking aloud, the steward suddenly asked, have you met Mo Hua's elder brother? There is no elder brother. No elder brother? Then who drew these arrays? Yan Jiaoxi gave the steward a meaningful look. Stunned, the steward scoffed, are you suggesting he drew them himself? That might be possible with the blazing fire array, but the earth solidification array includes 4 patterns. Where would he get so much spiritual sense? Does he have 2 heads and 2 consciousnesses? Doubtfully eyeing Yan Jiaoxi, the steward continued, are you saying you've taught a chi cultivation level 3 prodigy who can draw arrays? You're not trying to glorify yourself, are you? I've known you for years, and you're not that kind of person. Yan Jiaoxi coldly responded, pointing at the diagrams, you yourself said these patterns and these diagrams come from the same person. If these patterns were drawn by Mo Hua, then who drew these diagrams? Silenced, the steward stared at the array patterns and diagrams for a long time before murmuring, no way. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 23, Talent. Yan Jiaoxi asked, is there a chi cultivation cultivator at the 3rd level who can draw array formations in this world? Pang Steward pondered and replied, naturally, there should be. The cultivation world is vast, and there are countless prodigies. I believe there are people born with the ability to draw array formations, though these are just rumors as I have never seen it myself. Even those with exceptional talents, despite being disloyal and betraying their masters, born into array families and learning from a young age, can also draw simple array formations containing 3 array patterns by the time they reach the 3rd level of chi cultivation. And those major families and sects, with their profound inheritances, definitely have their share of geniuses in array formations, they just don't show off. Yan Jiaoxi said, if that's the case, it's not impossible for Mo Hua to be able to draw array formations at the 3rd level of chi cultivation. Pang Steward was reluctant to admit it but had to at this point. His brother Yan, though stubborn, was always meticulous and accurate in his judgment. If that's really the case, it would be remarkable. Why don't you take him as a disciple? Pang Steward thought for a moment and continued, this kid is indeed a good seedling. Why don't you formally accept him as your disciple? It would also be good to pass down the array techniques your master taught you. Yan Jiaoxi hadn't considered this before, and was somewhat moved by the idea, but after careful consideration, he shook his head. The sect is in ruins, and the remaining array techniques are just incomplete and fragmented. What's there to pass on? Taking him as a disciple would just be misleading the young, not to mention my master's unfulfilled wishes and the lack of clues about that person. I have no interest in inquiring about other matters. Pang Steward wanted to persuade further, but Yan Jiaoxi just waved his hand. Pang Steward sighed, well, I won't persuade you anymore, since you never listen. As for Mo Hua, this kid. Don't tell anyone for now. Trees that stand out in the forest are bound to be destroyed by the wind, and that has always been the case. Besides, he's still young and must not develop a sense of pride, or he will surely stray from the right path. Pang Steward agreed, that's true. Yan Jiaoxi continued, don't let him take any more array formation orders from here either. Just find some excuse about poor business management. Although it was indeed poor business management, when said out loud, Pang Steward still felt it was a blow to his dignity, and corrected. That's not poor management, that's a laissez-faire approach to business, leaving it all to fate. And why stop him from drawing array formations, earning spirit stones, and supporting his family? Yan Jiaoxi frowned, at the 3rd level of chi cultivation, even if he can draw array formations, how much spiritual sense can he have? Drawing too much will overly deplete his spiritual sense, leaving lasting harm and damaging the foundation of his sea of consciousness. And he's still young, now is the time to solidify his foundation in cultivation, not just array formations. He needs to understand all aspects of cultivation, especially his cultivation level. He mustn't sacrifice his future for short-term gains. Pang Steward said, the family situation of independent cultivators is not that affluent, and they often don't have enough spirit stones. Even if they are poor, they cannot disregard the future. Do you know how poor ordinary independent cultivators really are? Pang Steward's expression became serious for once. Yan Jiaoxi seeing Pang Steward's serious expression, his brow furrowed slightly. Pang Steward solemnly said, I know you had a tough childhood despite having a family. Being born out of wedlock, you were not valued by your family. Later, after joining the sect and being meticulously taught by your master, you worked hard and made some progress in array formations, which improved your situation a bit. But even if your situation was not the best, you had a family to rely on, at least you had food and clothing, and life was worry-free, if not ideal. People often say that the path of cultivation is arduous, Pang Steward sighed. I have been in Tangshan City for over a decade since leaving the sect, and having interacted with many independent cultivators, I realize that although people say cultivation is tough, the degree of difficulty varies greatly. Ordinary independent cultivators struggle to make a living, and just being able to support their families is already an achievement. Some are injured by the fires in weapon forging, others lose an arm to demonic beasts while hunting, and those who sell their spiritual power to help others with chores often suffer minor damage to their meridians. If they fall ill or get injured, without spirit stones for treatment, whether they can survive depends entirely on luck. If they can survive, that's great. If not, they die. The worst is hanging on by a thread, spending spirit stones and draining their entire family. What can they do? They just want to survive. Having said all this in one breath, Pang Steward poured himself a cup of tea and gulped it down. Yan Jiaoxi fell silent for a moment, then sighed with an apologetic tone. I hadn't considered that. Pang Steward gave him a look. Yan Jiaoxi thought for a moment, then said to Pang Steward, give me the list of array formations from here. What do you need a list for? Pang Steward asked, puzzled, but still got up and fetched a book from behind the counter, handing it to Yan Jiaoxi. Yan Jiaoxi took a list of array formations, looked through it once, then picked up a pen on the table and marked several formations, noting the sequence on the back of each. What are you doing? Pang Steward asked. Yan Jiaoxi explained, next time Mo Hua comes, you let him draw the array formations I've marked on the list in the order I've noted. This way, he'll learn more solidly. Later, when I have time, I'll give him some guidance at the sect, which is better than him learning haphazardly. By doing this, he can earn some spirit stones by drawing array formations to support his family, and he'll also learn some proper techniques in array formations. After finishing his explanation, Yan Zhaoxi added, another thing, don't let him draw too many array formations. Receiving 3 or 4 a month is enough. Otherwise, if his spiritual sense is overly depleted, it will damage his sea of consciousness, leaving a serious problem. Pang Steward looked at the list in his hand and then at Yan Zhaoxi, his expression complicated. Are you really not planning to take him as a disciple? Yan Zhaoxi shook his head, then stood up and reiterated before leaving, just don't forget to follow the order I've marked. After saying that, he left without looking back. Pang Steward watched his retreating figure, unable to speak for a long while, only letting out a helpless sigh. Suddenly, Pang Steward remembered something and called out to Yan Zhaoxi. Yan Zhaoxi turned to look at him. Pang Steward hesitated for a moment before saying, there's one thing you might have gotten wrong. Yan Zhaoxi frowned, what's wrong? When Mo Hua came with the blazing fire array, he was only at the 2nd level of chi cultivation. If these array formations are indeed drawn by him, that means. Pang Steward paused, choosing his words carefully. He might have been able to draw array formations already at the 2nd level of chi cultivation. Yan Zhaoxi's pupils contracted, showing a look of disbelief. Chapter 24, Seeking the Tao. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua went to see the plump steward again, only to be told that the market had changed. The blazing fire array and earth solidification array were no longer accepted at Destiny's shop. Mo Hua looked astonished and suspiciously said, the blazing fire array is used for illumination, and the earth solidification array for building houses. Unless no one lives in Tongshan City anymore, there should still be a market for them. The plump steward internally complained about Mo Hua's cleverness, which was not always a good thing as it made him hard to deceive. Deciding not to make excuses, which only made it harder to justify himself, he simply gestured dismissively. How would I know? That's just the market now, and there's nothing I can do. Mo Hua was speechless. He had only saved half of the spirit stones needed for his cultivation technique and asked, then what arrays do you accept? The plump steward coughed and pulled out an array diagram with gold stone array diagram written on the cover. Now we're accepting the gold stone array, which also includes 4 array patterns, not much different from the earth solidification array. Mo Hua examined the array diagram and asked, Steward, what is the gold stone array used for? The plump steward replied, it's similar to the earth solidification array. Both are used to reinforce doors, walls, and dwellings of cultivators, except one reinforces wood and earth, and the other strengthens metal and stone. Mo Hua frowned. It serves a similar purpose to the earth solidification array, which no one uses. Why would this one be in demand? The plump steward glared at Mo Hua and sternly said, that's the market. Don't ask too many questions, kid. Is this array also worth 3 spirit stones? It should have been. The plump steward, feeling a bit reluctant, added, by rights, it should cost 3 spirit stones, but it's been scarce recently, so the price has gone up to 4 spirit stones, though we're not collecting many, just 5 sets every half month. Scarcity shouldn't stop us from making more, should it? Mo Hua found the steward a bit odd, but since it was Destiny's shop's business, he didn't pry further as long as he could earn spirit stones. If I successfully create all of them, I can earn 20 spirit stones every half month, which is quite substantial. Deal, said the plump steward, relieved, pulling out a storage bag from under the counter as if he had prepared it in advance, and handed it to Mo Hua. Mo Hua received the storage bag, checked it, and confirmed it contained the gold stone array diagram, and 5 sets of paper and ink, then bowed to the steward and took his leave. As he was about to exit, the steward couldn't help but call out to him. Mo Hua. Mo Hua turned back, and the steward hesitated before asking, do you find this array difficult? Mo Hua thought for a moment, noting the similarity to the earth solidification array with its 4 array patterns, and replied, it's manageable. Mo Hua took a few steps, then turned back and added, my brother should be able to draw it. Oh, the steward said, his expression complex, nodding, draw well. By the way, the steward called out again, my surname is Mo, as in, do not get angry. Just call me Steward Mo. Mo Hua nodded, all right, Steward Mo, I'll remember that. Mo Hua returned to Tongshan sect and studied the gold stone array whenever he had time. Thanks to previous consultations with Yan Zhaoxi on the earth solidification array, it wasn't too difficult to grasp. Before a class on array techniques, Yan Zhaoxi had someone distribute the previously corrected array homework. Mo Hua's diagram only received a B grade. Mo Hua looked left and right, comparing it against the sect's detailed explanation of arrays, and found no mistakes. Why just a B? Mo Hua was puzzled. A disciple sitting nearby saw the B on Mo Hua's diagram and exclaimed, wow, Mo Hua, you only got a B. Mo Hua glanced at the C on the other disciple's diagram without a word. That disciple quickly covered his C with his hand, chuckled, and then curiously asked, how come you only got a B? Mo Hua also wondered aloud, I didn't make any mistakes. I don't know why it's only a B. You didn't make any mistakes. How could the instructor give you just a B? Mo Hua showed him the diagram. Can you see any mistakes? That disciple confidently replied, if I could see any, I wouldn't have gotten a C. Other disciples around them also stretched their necks to look at Mo Hua's diagram and then said one after another. It seems like there aren't any mistakes. Mo Hua, did you offend the instructor? Be careful, the instructor might punish you. Yan Zhaoxi isn't that kind of person, though. Before they could finish, Yan Zhaoxi entered the cultivation room, causing the group of disciples to quickly retract their necks and quietly sit like quails, not daring to breathe loudly. Yan Zhaoxi conducted the class as usual and said at the end, cultivation is like rowing upstream, not advancing means retreating. The way of array techniques is the same. You must not slack off, wasting your time and talent. After finishing, Yan Zhaoxi scanned the room with a stern face and finally turned to Mo Hua. Mo Hua, come with me. Yes, Mo Hua respectfully rose and followed Yan Zhaoxi out of the cultivation room. Seeing Yan Zhaoxi leave, the disciples gathered their heads again. It's over. Mo Hua is done for now. The instructor said someone is slacking off. Was he talking about Mo Hua? But I'm slacking off too. Why didn't the instructor come for me? You and Mo Hua can't be compared. Mo Hua's array techniques are so good. The instructor values him. I'm glad the instructor doesn't value me like that. Please, never value me. Mo Hua followed Yan Zhaoxi out of the cultivation room, past the pill room, the artifact refining room, and finally left Tongshan Peak. As they walked, Yan Zhaoxi remained silent, only nodding or bowing in response when other disciples or instructors and sect elders greeted him. Yan Zhaoxi led Mo Hua all the way to his residence on Tungming Peak. Tungming Peak is where the sect master, elders, instructors, and intersect disciples cultivate and reside. It was Mo Hua's first visit, and the environment was indeed much quieter and more beautiful, with many courtyards planted with vibrant spirit flowers and herbs, and various spirit birds leisurely strolling around. Only on Tungming Peak could these spirit birds be so carefree. If they were on Tongshan Peak, they wouldn't see the sun the next day. Mo Hua remembered the charred chicken leg that the twins had given him. Outside Yan Zhaoxi's residence, an array was set up, and there was a small 8 trigrams plate on the door, probably arranged by Yan Zhaoxi himself, as other courtyards and residences didn't have this. Yan Zhaoxi traced his finger over the 8 trigrams plate a few times, and after a flash of light, the door opened. Once inside, Yan Zhaoxi sat down at the desk and directly asked Mo Hua, do you want to be an array master? Mo Hua humbly replied, disciples' talents are limited. I'm afraid I can't be an array master. Yan Zhaoxi frowned, whether you want to or not is one thing, whether you have the talent is another. Don't lose your original intention just by looking at the results. All beings under heaven will die eventually. Does that mean they shouldn't live? Mo Hua responded earnestly, disciple wants to be an array master. Why do you want to? Cultivation is difficult. Array techniques can provide a livelihood. What else? Cultivators seek the Tao to become immortals. Understanding array techniques can help seek the Tao. Yan Zhaoxi frowned, the Tao is elusive, and cultivators might spend their entire lives unable to glimpse even a hint of it. Mo Hua said, as the instructor said, the Tao is in the heavens, but the pursuit of the Tao is in the hands of individuals. Since cultivators seek the Tao, regardless of whether they achieve it in the end, they must not lose the heart to seek it. Yan Jiaoxi fell silent for a moment, then nodded. From now on, come here every day after classes. You may go back today. Yes, Mo Hua was puzzled but bowed and took his leave. Yan Jiaoxi watched Mo Hua leave inside after a long while. Chapter 25, Instruction. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua returned to his cultivation room and sat down, as a group of disciples quickly gathered around him. Mo Hua, what did the instructor want with you? Did the instructor punish you? Mo Hua honestly replied, the instructor has asked me to see him after class every day. One disciple said, it must be because you've been slacking off in your array formations, so he's angry and wants you to practice daily to avoid regressing. Another disciple sympathized, that's too harsh, having to draw rays right under the instructor's watchful eye every day. Yes, it's terrible, just one look from the instructor makes me so nervous, let alone him watching me draw rays. Mo Hua sighed as well. Seeing this, the disciples started comforting Mo Hua. Mo Hua sighed, not because of having to draw rays under the instructor's scrutiny, but because visiting the instructor daily left little time to earn spirit stones by drawing arrays for the array pavilion. However, since the instructor asked Mo Hua if he wanted to become an array master, he would likely provide some guidance, which Mo Hua considered a good thing. The next day after class, Mo Hua timely arrived at Instructor Yan's residence on Tungming Peak. Instructor Yan got straight to the point, placing a scroll of basic array theories in front of Mo Hua. The path of array mastery is long, and a solid foundation is crucial. This includes not only mastering basic array patterns and brush techniques but also strengthening one's spiritual sense and understanding scholarly treatises on array formations. The so-called array treatises are the collective wisdom and theoretical summaries of numerous masters about the myriad array formations in the cultivation world, seeking the immutable principles among the ever-changing arrays. Some cultivators can draw arrays well, but are clueless about the treatises. Once they reach advanced levels, they find themselves lost in a fog, unable to make further progress in the art of arrays. I'm only one step away from becoming a first-grade array master, and most of the sect's traditions are scattered. I can't impart you the profound doctrines as those great clans and sects can, but for your current level, it should suffice. Mo Hua sat up straighter, his expression growing more respectful. Please instruct me, instructor. Instructor Yan nodded, opened the basic array theories, and said, this introductory text records some basic principles of array formations, like the celestial circle and terrestrial square, the Bagua positions, the generating and overcoming cycles of the 5 elements, as well as the structure of single arrays, complex arrays, and grand arrays. An array is a manifestation of the natural laws, the external circle and internal square symbolizing heaven and earth, respectively. The placement of different array patterns follows the Bagua principles, and the different elemental array patterns generate and overcome each other. A single array is just that. A complex array consists of multiple single arrays, and a grand array is composed of many single and complex arrays. Grand arrays are extremely powerful, often referred to as sect-protecting arrays. They contain hundreds to thousands of individual arrays, constructed by dozens or even hundreds of array masters, and only a highly accomplished master can take charge of designing and delineating a grand array. To become a chief array master, designing and constructing a grand array is the aspiration of many array masters. Instructor Yan spoke with some emotion, then added, but that's a distant goal. Even becoming an ordinary first-grade array master is no small feat. Mo Hua listened, enchanted by the prospect. Even a single array was already quite mysterious, let alone a grand array once activated. What a sight it would be. Instructor Yan hesitated a bit, then solemnly handed the basic array theories to Mo Hua, saying, take this introductory text to study carefully. Remember not to disclose it to others or discuss it with anyone. Afterwards, Instructor Yan explained some basic theories about arrays, then allowed Mo Hua to leave. Mo Hua returned to the disciples' quarters, holding the thin volume of basic array theories, feeling its significant weight. It was the first time he truly appreciated the importance of cultivation heritage. Without instruction, these teachings were enough to puzzle over for a lifetime. Being merely an ordinary disciple, Mo Hua felt increasingly grateful for Instructor Yan's earnestness. Mo Hua calmed his mind and carefully read through basic array theories, noting down anything he didn't understand, preparing to ask the instructor the next day. Before sleeping, Mo Hua also reviewed the gold stone array diagram, memorizing the array patterns inscribed on the steel, then closed his eyes and practiced the gold stone array in his sea of consciousness. The gold stone array only had 4 patterns, not too difficult, but it required time to familiarize with the patterns and practice them. Thanks to basic array theories, Mo Hua found his thought process while drawing the gold stone array much clearer. Why were the 4 patterns located in the west? Because the west corresponds to metal, matching the attributes of the gold stone array, and the specific drawing method also involves many considerations of trigrams. Previously, Mo Hua only knew to draw according to the diagrams, not understanding why it was done this way. Now, he had a deeper understanding. The next day, Mo Hua went to Tungming Peak. Instructor Yan asked Mo Hua some questions from the array treatises, and Mo Hua answered them all, confirming that he had seriously finished reading basic array theories. Instructor Yan couldn't help but nod. Afterwards, Mo Hua raised some questions he had noted down, and Instructor Yan answered each one, his expression visibly more relieved. On the 3rd day, Instructor Yan used specific arrays as examples to analyze for Mo Hua, helping him understand some basic theories about arrays. Instructor Yan started with a single patterns arrays, including the bright fire array that Mo Hua had painted before, as well as several arrays Mo Hua had not learned before, followed by arrays containing 2 patterns, all new to Mo Hua, who listened very attentively. Among the 4 pattern arrays, the instructor first mentioned the earth solidification array, which Mo Hua had previously consulted the instructor about. Although Mo Hua had already painted it quite proficiently, now listening to the instructor's explanation, he realized he had only known the surface, not the underlying principles, lacking a lot in his understanding of arrays. After discussing the earth solidification array, Instructor Yan then referred to the gold stone array. The gold stone array is similar in function to the earth solidification array. Among the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth generates metal, so when cultivators build their dwellings, they use the earth solidification array to stabilize the foundation, and the gold stone array to reinforce the structures. Because of the generating relationship between earth and metal, the effectiveness of the arrays is enhanced. These 2 arrays can be understood in reference to each other. Mo Hua listened, and his understanding suddenly became clearer. Instructor Yan lectured for an hour, then assigned several tasks for Mo Hua to find some examples of arrays generating and overcoming each other, then let Mo Hua go. Mo Hua returned to the disciples' quarters, pondering more and more. Many of the examples Instructor Yan used were arrays Mo Hua had helped the array pavilion draw. The bright fire array and the earth solidification array were obvious, but the gold stone array was commissioned by the plump manager. Today, the instructor had specifically explained the gold stone array to him. Even though it was to illustrate the generating and overcoming relationship of the 5 elements, it was still too coincidental. Is there some connection between the instructor and the plump manager? Could it be that the instructor already knows that those arrays at Destiny's shop were all drawn by me? Chapter 26, Advancement. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. After classes each day, Mo Hua went to Yan Jiaoxi's place to study the theory of arrays and seek advice on array formations. With Yan Jiaoxi's explanations, Mo Hua quickly learned the gold stone array diagram, and after practicing repeatedly on the steel in his sea of consciousness, it took him just over 10 days to complete 5 sets of the gold stone array diagram. Due to having ample time, Mo Hua painted carefully, failing only once, which after deducting the cost of materials, earned him about 12 spirit stones. During the period of rest, Mo Hua handed over the array formations to Manager Mo, who after reviewing them was quite satisfied, nodding and saying, "Your elder brother's array formations are increasingly systematic." Mo Hua looked at Manager Mo doubtfully. For some reason, being watched made Manager Mo somewhat guilty. He coughed, waved his hand, and said, "Nothing's wrong, just head back to the sect, I'm quite busy here." Mo Hua glanced at the empty Destiny shop, which lacked even a single customer, and curiously asked, "There aren't any customers here, what are you busy with?" Manager Mo felt that his management style was more about being laid back rather than poor business, which he saw as fundamentally different. But the lack of customers was indeed obvious at a glance. Manager Mo became a bit annoyed. What does a kid know? I'm always busy here handling big deals, customer or no customers. When I say I'm busy, I am busy. Then, keep busy, I'll be leaving now, said Mo Hua. As Mo Hua walked a few steps away, he suddenly turned back and asked, "By the way, are you and Yan Jiaoxi close?" Manager Mo guiltily replied, "Not really close, just some camaraderie from the same sect. His temper is both stinky and tough, not something ordinary people can endure, and we haven't been in touch for many years. It was only because we happened to meet recently that we had a cup of tea together and caught up." Oh, Mo Hua gave a meaningful, oh. Saying they were not close, yet the tone was very familiar. That means they were quite close, at least not without a good relationship. Manager Mo quickly waved his hand, go on, don't disturb my business." Mo Hua left Destiny's shop, thinking to himself. It seems Manager Mo and Yan Jiaoxi indeed have some secrets between them. Afterward, Mo Hua's life in the sect was monotonous and ordinary. Every day he attended classes, consulted Yan Jiaoxi about array formations after class, returned to his disciple residence to paint array formations, and after midnight, entered his sea of consciousness to practice on the broken steel. Simple yet fulfilling. Mo Hua's mastery over array formations improved daily, and his spiritual sense grew stronger. He was now able to comfortably draw 4 array patterns of the goldstone array, without feeling a lack of spiritual sense. The orders for Manager Mo's array formations also changed a few times, each time with the excuse, "The market has changed, the previous arrays are no longer bought, need to draw new ones," then handing over new array diagrams to Mo Hua. When Yan Jiaoxi taught the theory of arrays, he would also explain the array formations that Manager Mo gave to Mo Hua, which basically fed Mo Hua with a spoon. This also essentially confirmed Mo Hua's guess that Manager Mo and Yan Jiaoxi must have a relationship, and probably both knew about him painting array formations for Destiny's shop. However, everyone kept this tacit understanding, and Mo Hua also pretended not to know. Mo Hua was puzzled why the instructor was so attentive to him, answering every question about array formations, and Manager Mo also provided many conveniences. Could it really be just because he was talented in array formations? Later, Mo Hua thought it over and felt that he was probably overthinking it. Yan Jiaoxi was meticulous and serious, whether in teaching or array formations, never hiding anything from his disciples. His care for Mo Hua was probably out of a desire to cherish his talent, not wanting it to go to waste, and truly hoping he would advance in array formations. Manager Mo's acquaintance with Yan Jiaoxi was likely under Yan Jiaoxi's arrangement, gradually setting up array formations for Mo Hua to draw. Mo Hua kept their kindness in mind. But for now, he was just a low-level chi cultivation third-level minor cultivator, unable to do much. Even if he wanted to repay this kindness, he would have to wait until later. 2 months later, besides the goldstone array, Mo Hua also learned the mud sand array, flowing sand array, and ventilation array. Including the spirit stones he had saved from painting array formations, he had a total of over 180. Mo Hua planned to save up 200 spirit stones and then choose an intermediate lower tier technique, which would relieve his parents of some burden. Once he had enough spirit stones and had chosen the technique, he would then tell his parents, who he thought would be happy about it. But before Mo Hua had saved enough spirit stones, trouble arose at home. One day during an alchemy class, Yan Jiaoxi suddenly called Mo Hua out with a somewhat solemn expression, telling him his mother was seriously ill and urging him to go home immediately. Mo Hua was stunned for a moment, then felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him, chilling him to the bone. He asked for a few days off from the instructor, then hurried home. But the door to his house was closed, and after knocking several times with no response, he became anxious. Just then, neighbor Aunt Yang came out upon hearing the noise and said, "Is that you, Mo Hua?" "Aunt Yang, my mother. I was just about to tell you, your mother is seriously ill and is currently at the Xinglin Medical Hall seeking treatment from Old Master Feng. Hurry and go see her." Mo Hua thanked her repeatedly and then rushed to Xinglin Medical Hall. Xinglin Medical Hall was the only pill hall nearby. The pill hall had alchemists stationed there, and generally, if cultivators were injured or sick, they would go to the pill shop to have the alchemists diagnose and refine pills for treatment and healing. Old Master Feng of Xinglin Medical Hall was a highly reputable old alchemist in Tongxian City, having studied the way of the pills for most of his life, and in his later years, he passed the fixed grade assessment to become a true first-grade alchemist, one of the few in Tongxian City. Moreover, Old Master Feng was the only alchemist in Tongxian City who, after becoming a first-grade alchemist, still chose to open a shop in the lower-tier cultivators market to diagnose and treat patients. When Mo Hua arrived at Xinglin Medical Hall, Old Master Feng was seeing patients. Wearing a clean but somewhat worn black Taoist robe with white trim, his hair and beard both white, he looked amiable. Upon seeing Mo Hua, he advised the patient in front of him for a moment, then beckoned to Mo Hua. Mo Hua hurriedly approached and bowed, saying, "Grandfather Feng, how is my mother?" Old Master Feng nodded and said, "Good child, I have seen your mother's condition. Although it is somewhat serious, it is not life-threatening. You can put your mind at ease." Mo Hua finally breathed a sigh of relief and regained his composure, but felt his throat dry and burning as if on fire. Mo Hua had been frail since childhood, and in his rush had run too fast. Now suddenly stopping, he felt sweat all over his body. Old Master Feng gently pressed Mo Hua's back with his right hand. A pale blue light flashed through his hand, transferring some spiritual power to Mo Hua. Mo Hua felt a spring breeze passing through his limbs, and his breath became much smoother in an instant. Old Master Feng then gently poured a cup of tea and instructed, "Drink a little at a time, slowly." Following Old Master Feng's instruction, Mo Hua slowly drank some of the misty tea, and his breathing finally eased. Chapter 27, Heartache. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Your mother has overworked herself, using spiritual energy for long periods to stoke the kitchen fire, which has damaged her heart and lungs from the heat, leading to her coughing, weakness, and difficulty in breathing. Old Master Feng explained the condition to Mo Hua and continued. When she was first brought here, she could barely breathe. I've concocted some medicinal pills that have temporarily alleviated her condition. There's no need to worry for the time being, but she must take good care of herself going forward. She cannot use her spiritual energy to stoke the fire anymore, and she must quit her job helping in the kitchen at the spirit meal tower. Otherwise, her heart and lungs will inevitably deteriorate beyond repair. Mo Hua, frightened by the diagnosis, bowed deeply and said, "I will forever remember Grandfather Feng's kindness in my heart." Old Master Feng helped Mo Hua to stand up, smiled slightly, and said, "Saving lives and helping the injured is the duty of a pill master. There's no need to talk of kindness. Although you are young, you speak very precisely, as if I might not be around by the time you wish to repay me." Mo Hua then breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Grandfather Feng, with your benevolent heart, you will surely live for hundreds more years." Old Master Feng laughed out loud. "You've always been a sweet talker since you were little. Why did my mother's heart and lung damage become so severe all of a sudden? She only worked in the kitchen for 4 hours daily before and was fine." Mo Hua couldn't help but ask. Old Master Feng replied, "I spoke to the cook at the spirit meal tower. Starting this year, your mother's kitchen hours increased from 4 to 6 per day. With the longer hours, her spiritual energy is more likely to deplete, and the excessive labor has naturally exacerbated her condition." "Wasn't the fire-resisting hairpin of any use?" "You mean the hairpin your mother wears?" Old Master Feng stroked his beard and nodded as he explained. The hairpin is indeed useful, but as a common spiritual tool, its efficacy is limited. However, it's fortunate she had it. Otherwise, her condition could have been much worse, and even if cured, her heart and lungs might have suffered residual issues. Mo Hua felt somewhat relieved but still apprehensive, and then inquired about the cost of the diagnosis. Old Master Feng said, the manager of the Spirit Meal Tower has already been here. They feel very guilty about your mother's condition, so they will cover all expenses for the medicinal pills. You don't need to worry about that. Old Master Feng winked at Mo Hua and whispered, since they are willing to pay, I won't hold back and will use the best ingredients to ensure your mother is cured. Mo Hua, reassured, thanked Old Master Feng sincerely, then asked softly, may I go see my mother? Old Master Feng nodded, go ahead, she just took her medicine and laid down. Remember to keep your voice down. The Shinglin Medical Hall side rooms were opened up, placing several sick beds specifically for patients to rest. Although simple, they were clean and tidy, with a faint scent of incense in the air. When Mo Hua saw Lu Ruha, she was lying quietly on a bed near the inside, sleeping soundly with light breathing and a pale, somewhat gaunt face. Mo Hua moved a small stool over and sat quietly beside her, looking at Lu Rua's face. Mo Hua remembered how young and gentle his mother looked when he was born. Her smile was very beautiful. 10 years have passed unknowingly. For cultivators with long lifespans, 10 years is not very significant. Some cultivators do not even change their appearance in a decade. But Mo Hua's mother had become somewhat gaunt, and there were even a few white hairs at her temples. Thinking about how his parents were aging slowly without his knowledge until one day, he suddenly realized they no longer looked like the images he remembered. Mo Hua felt a sourness in his heart, and his eyes blurred with tears. Lu Ruha, not knowing how long she had slept, woke up to find Mo Hua by her side with red eyes, feeling both comforted and a bit pained. Lu Ruha touched Mo Hua's head. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be cultivating at the sect? Mo Hua silently watched her, and Lu Ruha, slightly embarrassed, said, I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me. Old Master Feng mentioned you've been working 6 hours daily in the kitchen. 6 hours is nothing. Look at your uncles and aunts in the neighborhood, their tasks are sometimes even harder. Your father goes out to hunt demons, sometimes for days and nights without rest. Everyone lives like this. Mo Hua shook his head. Mother, you're not well. How can you compare? Is our family lacking spirit stones? Lu Ruha sighed slightly. We aren't lacking spirit stones, but you're about to start learning techniques soon, aren't you? A mid-grade lower tier technique would cost over 200 spirit stones, so I thought to save up more to let you choose a better one. Mo Hua was startled. I never mentioned the techniques. How did you know? Lu Ruha touched Mo Hua's head again. Silly child, how could your mother not know? You didn't say because you were considerate, but your parents have to plan for you. We are only chi cultivating cultivators and can't give you the best, but we still want to provide as well as we can within our means. Mo Hua's nose tingled, and then he took out a storage bag and said, Mother, I can earn it myself. I've already earned 180 spirit stones. Lu Ruha was surprised, her mouth opened slightly, and after a moment, she said, How did you earn so much? Mo Hua felt better. I've been helping people with array formations. Is it Destiny's shop on North Street? Yes. Mo Hua said, then paused. Mother, how do you know about that too? Lu Ruha chuckled softly. Your father told me. He saw you taking out so many spirit stones one day, suspected someone was deceiving you with ill intentions, followed you to that merchant, asked the manager a few questions, then found out you weren't being deceived, but rather, it was the manager who had been fooled by you. I didn't even know you had an older brother. Mo Hua's mouth fell open in shock, feeling that he had hidden everything, yet nothing was truly hidden. He didn't even know when his father had followed him to the array hall. Lu Ruha stroked Mo Hua's face, relieved. When you were little, small and thin, I was worried you'd be bullied, and also worried about how you'd make a living in the future. I never imagined that at such a young age, you'd be able to earn so many spirit stones. Now I can rest easy. But keep these spirit stones for yourself. Although it seems like a lot now, when your cultivation is higher in the future, or when you marry and have children, you'll have many expenses. Save up now to avoid being strapped for resources later. Mo Hua shook his head. Mother, I'll earn even more spirit stones in the future. You don't need to worry about that. What's most important now is for you to get well. Don't worry about anything else. Lu Ruha looked at Mo Hua gently, wanting to say more, but couldn't help coughing again. Mo Hua no longer let her speak, urging her to rest well. Chapter 28. A New Idea. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The next day, Mo Shan hurried back. When Mo Shan arrived at Shinglin Medical Hall, his clothes were ragged and stained with mud, his arm wrapped in a bandage as if torn by a demonic beast, with blood seeping through. It seemed he had just battled a demonic beast with his demon hunting team and hadn't had the chance to tend to his wounds before rushing back. Upon hearing that his wife's life was not in danger, Mo Shan finally breathed a sigh of relief. Elder Feng checked Lu Rua's condition and also treated Mo Shan's arm. A few days later, Lu Ruha returned home to recuperate. Following Elder Feng's instructions, she had a light diet, avoided exertion, took her medicinal pills on time, and also could not use her spiritual power for a month. Mo Shan and his son stayed at home for a few days until Lu Ruha sent them out. Mo Shan, as the leader of the demon hunting team, needed to hunt demonic beasts, and Mo Hua, as a sect disciple, had to attend to his studies and could not afford to delay. Fortunately, Lu Ruha couldn't use spiritual power, but her daily life was not significantly impacted. Mo Shan had to ask the neighbor, Aunt Yang, for help, and whenever he was free, he would come back home. Similarly, every 10-day rest period, Mo Hua would take leave from his instructor and return home to check in. Yan Jiaoxi was understanding and did not make things difficult for Mo Hua, only reminding him not to neglect his cultivation and sect duties. A month later, Lu Ruha was almost fully recovered, although she still had to stay at home and could not engage in activities that required spiritual power, as it would cause her to cough incessantly, but otherwise, she suffered no other harm. Mo Hua was relieved, but noticed that his mother was not very happy. Though she still smiled, her expression was noticeably more subdued than before, and she often sat alone in contemplation. Mo Hua was worried but couldn't figure out why, so he asked Mo Shan. Mo Shan sighed and told Mo Hua, your mother's wishes are simple. She wants to save enough spirit stones for you to cultivate properly, watch you grow up, get married, and have children. But now she can't use her spiritual power and therefore can't do anything, let alone earn spirit stones. Having been busy for half her life, suddenly being unable to do anything or help you, she feels somewhat empty inside. Mo Hua felt uneasy and asked, does mother have other interests, like dam patterns or arrays? Other interests? Yes, things she's interested in, like dam patterns or arrays. Mo Shan thought for a moment and said, she hasn't shown much interest in those, but she does enjoy cooking. Not to boast, but within 10 miles, no one cooks better than your mother. Mo Shan added with a sigh, when I promised to marry your mother and become spiritual partners, I boasted that I would open a meal tower for her to research various meals, but after all these years, she's only endured hardships with me, and I never fulfilled that promise. Mo Hua looked at his somewhat remorseful father and knew he couldn't blame him. Mo Shan's cultivation and methods were among the best among the demon hunters in the area, and over the years, he had risked his life fighting demonic beasts, often returning home covered in blood. Despite this, the family was still struggling to make ends meet. Ultimately, the life of a low-level independent cultivator was difficult. Just maintaining a living was exhausting. Mo Hua then said, Father, don't worry, I will definitely open a large meal tower for mother in the future. Mo Shan, knowing his son was trying to comfort him, patted Mo Hua's head, feeling somewhat consoled, good. But his wife could not use spiritual power, and even as a meal chef, spiritual power was necessary. Even if they opened a restaurant, without spiritual power, it would be hard to be a meal chef. Thinking of his wife's melancholy, Mo Shan felt sorry for her and patted Mo Hua's shoulder. Talk to your mother more often when you have time. Sometimes your words work better than mine, don't let your mother think too much. All right, Mo Hua nodded. Afterward, whenever Mo Hua had time, he would actively talk with Lu Ruha, and her complexion did indeed improve somewhat, but when alone, she still appeared melancholic. If only Mother could use her spiritual power, Mo Hua thought, but he also knew this was unlikely. Illness arrives like a mountain collapsing and recedes like drying silk. Moreover, it was a chronic illness accumulated over many years, only treatable through slow rehabilitation. The cultivation world surely had heavenly treasures capable of curing such illnesses, as Elder Feng had mentioned a few, but for a family like Mo Hua's, finding such resources or affording them was nearly impossible. Mo Hua could only give up. Half a month later, the hottest month of the year arrived. The sun hung high, and the ground was scorchingly hot. Tongxian sect, following tradition, began a month-long summer break. A year-end break and a summer break were the two longest vacations of the year. Due to the hot weather, demonic beasts were less active, and those that did appear were primarily fire-type, stronger in such weather and very challenging to deal with. Thus, the summer was also a slow season for demon hunting. Mo Shan would spend more time at home, only occasionally leaving for a few days if his team members discovered valuable demonic beasts, bringing back some spirit stones or skins. One time, after being out for a few days, Mo Shan returned home with a large bundle. When Mo Hua opened it, he found a large pack of beef tendons, his mouth agape in surprise. Father, is this? This is wild mountain ox meat, Mo Shan explained. It doesn't contain much spiritual energy and isn't very valuable, but compared to other demonic beasts, its meat quality isn't too bad, and it doesn't have a strong odor. Recently, the demon hunting team hasn't had much success, so we only got this wild mountain ox. After skinning and butchering it, we couldn't sell the meat. Everyone complained it was too tough and old, hard to cook and hard to chew, so we each took some home to eat, Mo Shan explained. Mo Hua uncertainly said, Father, are you going to cook this meat? Mo Shan ruffled Mo Hua's head. What, you think your father's cooking isn't tasty? Mo Hua just smiled and didn't respond. At noon, Mo Shan cooked the beef, struggling for half a day to get it tender, and served it in a large open-mouthed white porcelain bowl. Try it, see how it tastes. The white porcelain bowl contained soy sauce-colored beef. Lu Ruha glanced at the beef and put down her chopsticks, only scooping up a spoonful of soup and slowly sipping it. Mo Hua, however, picked up a piece of beef, chewed a few times, his teeth aching from the effort, the meat still stubbornly tough, not breaking apart at all. Mo Hua, embarrassed yet polite, spat the meat out and picked up a spoon to sip the soup, then complimented, the soup is good. Mo Shan glared at him. The soup was made with the sauce your mother prepared, of course it's good. Lu Ruha pursed her lips and smiled. I appreciate your effort, but meal preparation isn't something that can be done casually. Even using spiritual power to stoke the fire for cooking requires much attention. When to use high heat, when to use low heat, when to add which sauce and how much, all require precision. Hearing this, Mo Hua suddenly asked, so if it's cooked long enough, would the beef become tender? Lu Ruha responded, in theory, yes, but that would require a cultivator to watch over the pot all day and night, continuously using spiritual power to stoke the fire. A normal cultivator definitely can't do that, and a cultivator who could would probably not be so bored, Mo Shan added. What if we used an array? Mo Hua's eyes lit up. An array, Lu Ruha pondered, I'm not sure, but I've heard from the head chef at the meal tower that some large meal towers have artifact craftsmen craft stoves, then array masters inscribe arrays on them. This way, only spirit stones are needed to sustain the cooking for long periods without using a cultivator's spiritual power. However, hiring an array master is very expensive, and at least the previous meal tower couldn't afford such a stove. I see. Mo Hua mused. Mo Shan also picked up a piece of beef, chewed a few times without breaking it down, and had to admit, it's indeed tough to chew. Then he just swallowed it, forcibly digesting it with his spiritual power. That evening, Mo Hua practiced arrays on the damaged steel while thinking about the meal tower. The next day, Mo Hua didn't stay home to practice arrays but instead went out under the scorching sun directly to North Street. Despite the intense heat making him sweat profusely after just a few steps, there were still some small vendors on the street, braving the scorching sun, their voices weak as they hawked their wares. Mo Hua arrived at North Street and found the largest meal tower there, F. Ulu Meal Tower, then asked the shopkeeper, is your young master surnamed in, called in Xiaofu? No, and Xiaofu? The shopkeeper, not looking down on Mo Hua for his ordinary clothes, instead guessed he might truly be an acquaintance of the young master due to Mo Hua's familiar tone, and courteously responded, the young gentleman is correct, the young master is upstairs, would you like me to send a message for you? Mo Hua, also very polite, said, please inform him that a fellow sect member surnamed Mo is looking for him regarding the matter. Chapter 29, The Stove. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The innkeeper went upstairs and soon returned, politely inviting Mo Hua to come up. Mo Hua saw young master In, who was enjoying drinks with several lavishly dressed young men. The table was adorned with various colorful, juicy spiritual fruits, with maids fanning the air, creating a gentle breeze scented with fragrance, and singers performing songs that echoed around the beams. The room was cool and comfortable, a stark contrast to the summer heat. Screens in the room were carved with ice element array patterns used for cooling and ventilation. Mo Hua, who had been enduring the harsh summer heat to run his street stall for a living, felt a pang of emotion. Here were all Qi cultivation stage cultivators, living in the same city of Tongxian, yet it seemed like they were living in two different worlds. Mo Hua, it really is you, exclaimed young master In happily, gesturing, come, join us for a drink. Young master N's face was flushed from drinking, but he was young and was probably drinking fruit wine, which wouldn't harm his health too much. Mo Hua, however, was not in the mood for drinking and directly said, young master In, I need your help with something. Oh, young master In sobered up a bit and waved the other young men away. You guys go on, I have something to deal with. Then, the innkeeper led Mo Hua and young master In to a quiet private room where Mo Hua got straight to the point. Young master In, I need a favor from you. Young master In, still a bit tipsy, slapped his chest and said, as long as I can help, just say it. Mo Hua looked around the opulent private room and asked, this spirit meal tower, it's owned by your family, right? Proudly, young master In responded, yes. Do your cooks use a traditional stove, or do cultivators power it with their spiritual energy? Confused, young master In thought for a moment, clueless, then shouted, innkeeper. Soon, the innkeeper entered and young master In pointed to him, telling Mo Hua, ask him. Mo Hua repeated his earlier question to the innkeeper. The innkeeper answered, originally, we did use cultivators' spiritual energy, but that method could damage the cultivator's lungs and heart, and it was also unstable. So, the owner decided against it and last year had an artifact smith specially forged a stove. An array master also crafted some array patterns, and since then, we have been using this stove. Curious, Mo Hua asked, is the cost of a stove higher than hiring a cultivator? The innkeeper honestly replied, in the long term, the stove is better. Hiring a cultivator might be more economical in the short term, and you can negotiate down the price. Sometimes, when times are tough, half a spirit stone can hire a Qi cultivation stage independent cultivator. Mo Hua felt somewhat bitter. Even as a cultivator, one couldn't escape being exploited. Can I see the stove? Mo Hua inquired. The innkeeper hesitated, looking at young master In, unable to decide on his own since the kitchen was normally off limits to outsiders. Young master In, now more sober, asked, is it not possible to show others? The innkeeper explained, the recipes are secret, but the stove isn't. Many spirit meal towers have them, and those who don't simply don't want to spend the spirit stones to make one. It's not a secret. Then let's have a look. I haven't even seen that stove myself, young master In said. All right, I'll take you two gentlemen there, the innkeeper, relieved that young master In was coming along, which meant any trouble wouldn't be solely his responsibility. He led Mo Hua and young master into the kitchen, pointing to a huge stove about the height of two men. This is the stove. When spirit stones are placed inside, the array patterns inside the stove convert them into fire energy, which then spreads to every cooking station, allowing the cultivators to cook their ingredients. The stove is connected to each cooking station by array patterns, and each station also has a specific array pattern etched into it to control the intensity of the fire. Mo Hua was fascinated, having never seen artifact crafting and array patterns used in such a way. Young Masterin was also captivated, his usual focus on eating never extending to how the food was actually made. As the innkeeper proudly explained the workings of the stove, Mo Hua examined it thoroughly, peering into every nook and cranny, even the gaps between the stove sections. Seeing Mo Hua's intense interest, as if he wanted to dismantle the stove to see inside. The innkeeper couldn't help asking, "Is there something specific you'd like to know, young Master Mo?" Mo Hua inquired, "Innkeeper, do you know which array patterns are engraved inside the stove?" The innkeeper hesitated but then thought better of it, realizing that just knowing the array patterns wouldn't help much without the skill to draw them. The internal array pattern of this stove isn't complex. It's just a magma array with 5 array lines. However, the placement of the magma array is critical. It must be drawn at the bottom of the stove to ensure even heat distribution. There's also an opening on the outside for placing spirit stones, which allows the spiritual energy of the stones to seep into the magma array, activating the array's firepower. The innkeeper explained everything in detail. Oh, Mo Hua nodded repeatedly. After a long discussion and having his questions thoroughly answered, Mo Hua sincerely thanked the innkeeper and then prepared to leave. Young Masterin held on to Mo Hua. "Don't rush off. Let me treat you to some good food." Mo Hua had other matters to attend to and declined. "Are you not giving me face?" Young Masterin was a bit upset. Mo Hua complimented young Masterin, praising his generosity, and then quietly told him, "Next time your tutor assigns array formation homework, I'll help you draw it for free." Overjoyed, young Masterin eagerly nodded. He didn't care about spirit stones, he cared about face. Having Mo Hua offer to draw rays for him for free was a boost to his pride. The innkeeper watched Mo Hua's departing figure and asked young Masterin, "Young Master, what is Mo Hua's status?" "He's a fellow sect brother of mine, and he's excellent at drawing arrays, even better than me. To be honest, he's helped me with all my array homework." Young Masterin was even a bit smug. The innkeeper, expressionless, thought to himself, "There's really nothing to be proud of in that." "You can go back to your duties. I'm off to drink," young Masterin said, turning to leave but suddenly stopped in shock, gripping the innkeeper's sleeve, his eyes wide. The innkeeper was a bit nervous. Young Master. Young Masterin lowered his voice. "This matter, you must never let my father know." "This matter? That someone else does my homework for me. You must never let my father know." The innkeeper's mouth twitched. All right. Relieved, young Masterin patted his chest. "That was close. Good thing I'm clever, or I would have been exposed." He then made the innkeeper swear not to tell his father, and only then did he feel assured and went upstairs. The innkeeper, feeling helpless, thought, "Can the family's fortunes really be maintained by this unreliable young master?" His thoughts then drifted back to Mo Hua. It seemed he wasn't some wealthy noble's child, just a regular cultivator's kid. Why was he so interested in the stove? The innkeeper took a few steps, then recalled young Master An's words and suddenly stopped. Good at drawing arrays? He wouldn't be planning to replicate the stove's array, would he? Young Masterin is at the 3rd level of chi cultivation, and that Mo Kid is his fellow sect brother, which means he's also at most at the 3rd level of chi cultivation. How could someone at that level have the spiritual sense needed to draw arrays? Shaking his head, the innkeeper decided to find a place to have some tea. Chapter 30, Magma Array Diagram. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Mo Hua returned home under the blazing sun, grabbed the teapot on the table, and gulped down several mouthfuls of tea to cool off before heading to his room to take out paper and ink to plan. First on the agenda was the stove. The stove is a type of spiritual device. Spiritual devices used by cultivators come in a wide variety, including weapons like swords and spears for attack, armors and Taoist robes for defense, magical accessories like hairpins and jade ornaments, and everyday items like pots and stoves. Mo Hua's understanding of artifact crafting was limited to the basic theoretical knowledge taught in the Artifact Crafting General Knowledge course at the Tongxian sect, such as the essentials of furnace use, forging, and quenching. However, when it came to actual crafting, he was unable to proceed. The Tongxian sect's artifact crafting course also required disciples to craft by hand, but since Mo Hua was physically weak and couldn't even swing a hammer, the instructors did not force him. Now, to craft a stove was no ordinary task. It required a specialized artifact craftsman. Next was the array. The magma array contained 5 array patterns, which was challenging for Mo Hua at the moment. The arrays Mo Hua had drawn before consisted of no more than 4 patterns. The difference in efficacy between arrays as they increase in complexity is substantial, and for an array master, each additional pattern represents a significant hurdle. Mo Hua, who drew arrays daily and honed his skills on stone steles, had strengthened his spiritual sense considerably, managing 4 patterns with ease. However, a 5-pattern array was another story. Another difficulty was that this magma array needed to be inscribed on the stove. The furnace's walls, made of fine iron, weakly absorb ink, making drawing on iron far more challenging than on paper, and it greatly increases the consumption of spiritual energy and spiritual sense. According to Basic Array Treatise by Yan Jiaoxi, the medium that carries the array, called the array medium by array masters, is typically paper, followed by materials like iron, wood, and stone. Mo Hua had always drawn on paper, but now facing the challenge of drawing on a furnace, he was unsure if it would pose any problems. Mo Hua thought for a moment, sighed, and decided to take things step by step. The immediate priority was to obtain a complete diagram of the magma array. The next day, Mo Hua got up, had breakfast, and first went to see Manager Mo. Manager Mo, a rather plump man who disliked the heat, was lethargically sprawled on the desk beside which stood a fan, inscribed with arrays that used spiritual power to keep it oscillating. However, in such heat, the fan only circulated hot air. Mo Hua said, "Manager Mo, I see other businesses have installed ice element arrays on their walls for cooling. Why don't you do the same?" Manager Mo gave Mo Hua a listless glare. "Those arrays are expensive. Give me the spirit stones, and I'll set it up." Mo Hua chuckled, then sat at a nearby table, poured himself a cup of tea, and slowly drank it. In the usually quiet Destiny's shop, Mo Hua was a regular and Manager Mo did not mind his presence, letting him be and then burying his head back into his work. After finishing his tea, Mo Hua asked, "Manager Mo, do you have a diagram of the magma array here?" Manager Mo looked up, annoyed. This is a business specializing in arrays. What diagram don't we have? Mo Hua skeptically responded, "Even second-grade diagrams?" Manager Mo banged the table irritably. "Don't be contentious like that, kid," and then asked puzzledly, "What do you need a magma array diagram for?" "I saw such an array drawn on the stove at the spirit meal tower and was curious, so I asked." Mo Hua thought for a moment and then added, "Manager Mo, is there anything special about drawing a magma array on a stove?" Manager Mo unenthusiastically explained, "It's just a magma array, there's nothing special about it. Some restaurants wanted to build stoves earlier this year, and they bought their diagrams from me. I have all their designs." Mo Hua's eyes lit up. "Can I take a look?" "No," Manager Mo responded. "Just a glance," pleaded Mo Hua. Manager Mo wanted to refuse again, but hesitated, then sighed and reluctantly pulled out a large diagram from a cabinet behind him, placing it on the desk. "You can only look at it here. In principle, these are confidential and shouldn't be shown to others." Mo Hua opened the diagram and saw a design of a stove covered in dense annotations including the materials used for the stove and the positions of matching array patterns, and even dimensions of the array, detailing how certain strokes should be altered. Mo Hua curiously asked, "Are these arrays different from regular ones, requiring notation of stroke methods and dimensions?" "Of course," explained Manager Mo, "the patterns of the array are standardized, but their specific applications vary. Some standard spiritual devices can be uniformly designed due to identical scales and dimensions, but custom-designed spiritual devices need to be adjusted based on their shape and structure. I see, nodded Mo Wah. Mo Wah carefully reviewed the diagram, trying to memorize the key points for reference. Manager Mo, seeing that Mo Wah had looked enough, took the diagram back. Mo Wah then asked, Manager Mo, could I borrow a copy of the magma ray diagram? Anticipating Mo Hua's request, Manager Mo took out a magma ray diagram and said, normally, this diagram would cost 10 spirit stones, but I won't charge you. Just make sure to return it to me without any damage. Mo Wah exclaimed, 10 spirit stones? That's expensive, isn't it? Of course, do you think it's like those low-level arrays with only 2 or 3 patterns that are everywhere? The more patterns included, the stronger the array's efficacy, naturally making the diagram more expensive. Manager Mo fanned himself and continued, some diagrams with 10 patterns or even secret transmissions of certain sects and families. Not only would you not be able to buy them with spirit stones, but you wouldn't even be allowed to glance at them. Mo Wah was amazed. Delving into arrays to a deeper level indeed posed significant challenges. Without proper inheritance, even if one wanted to learn arrays, it was difficult to know where to start. Mo Wah sincerely thanked Manager Mo as he took the magma ray diagram. Manager Mo said dismissively, it's nothing, no need for thanks, don't be so formal. But his expression showed he was quite pleased. Before Mo Wah left, Manager Mo advised, you can study it, but don't aim too high or be stubborn. Don't immerse yourself too much. If your spiritual sense is overused, causing damage to your sea of consciousness, it can be a serious problem for an array master. After pausing, Manager Mo coughed and continued, pass this message to your brother as well. Mo Wah smiled, bowed to Manager Mo, and then left Destiny's shop. After leaving, Mo Wah first went home to transcribe the stove diagram. There was a lot of information on the stove diagram, and Mo Wah didn't remember everything, only the key aspects, but this was enough. He didn't need to exactly replicate the spirit meal tower stove design, especially since he didn't have enough spirit stones to craft it anyway. Mo Wah roughly memorized the diagram and then went out to a nearby artifact crafting shop. The artifact crafting shop was modest but spacious, with various spiritual devices and household items displayed on the walls and floor, including candlesticks, teapots, pots, hairpins, bracelets, and even swords and armor, albeit somewhat disorganized. The shop had an old sign hanging outside, Chen's Artifact Crafting Shop, stained with black ash and worn from many years of use. This shop was recommended by Big Tiger and others as the oldest and best craftsmanship in the area. Master Chen, the artisan of Chen's Artifact Crafting Shop, had no children and spent his life forging and crafting artifacts. Although he never became a first-grade artisan, the spiritual devices he crafted were well regarded, and many demon hunters sought him out for crafting armor and weapons. As Mo Wah entered, Master Chen was busy hammering with his apprentices, the sound of clang, 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 filling the air. Chapter 31, The Artificer. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Master Chen, a chi cultivation practitioner of the 8th layer, was over 100 years old. His hair was partially gray, and his physique was robust. His face, perpetually smoked by the furnace flames, was darkened, yet his spirit was lively and his voice robust. Master Chen was overseeing several disciples forging iron. Perhaps due to some mistakes made by the disciples, he glared at them and scolded loudly. The sturdy disciples obediently endured the scolding, not daring to raise their heads. After a thorough scolding, Master Chen himself demonstrated with a large hammer, swinging it vigorously. The red-hot refined iron sparked as it gradually took the shape of a blade under his hammering. Once he finished, Master Chen merely wiped off his sweat, his breathing even, seemingly having exerted little effort. Mo Wah, naturally frail, watched enviously, wishing he too could possess such strength someday. Watch closely, this is how you forge iron. What was that earlier? Weak and listless, even a young lady's embroidery has more spirit than that. Master Chen scolded the disciples again, then turned to see a child with rosy lips and bright eyes, looking at him with a face full of envy. Hesitating for a moment, he asked, little one, do you also want to learn artifice? Life as an independent cultivator is tough, and once outside a sect, one must fend for oneself. Some learn practical skills on their own if they can't learn much within their sect. It was common for cultivators to send their children to Master Chen to learn artifice, enabling them to be self-sufficient in the future. Master Chen usually charged a few spirit stones, or accepted spirit grains as tuition if they had no stones. Mo Wah looked at the tall, muscular disciples, then at his own skinny arms and legs, and helplessly shook his head, then directly asked. Master, do you also make stoves here? A stove? Master Chen looked at Mo Wah. What does a child like you need a stove for? I'm asking for my mother. Of course, I can craft stoves, but making one requires a lot of refined iron, which would not be a small amount when converted into spirit stones. What if it were smaller? Would it be cheaper then? Indeed, a smaller stove would require less refined iron and labor, making it cheaper. However, in Tongxian City, it's rare for anyone to make small stoves since the arrays need to be individually designed and inscribed, which also costs a considerable number of spirit stones. How much would the smallest stove cost in spirit stones? Master Chen, not one to dismiss a child's query, seriously took out a piece of paper, listed the prices of various materials, and then calculated the cost for stoves of different sizes and scales. Handing the paper to Mo Wah, he added. Of course, that's just the cost of materials. We artificers must also charge for labor by the day, based on how many days it takes to make the stove. Oh, Mo Wah noted everything down, then said his goodbyes. I've written it down. I'll discuss with my parents how big a stove we should make and then come back to you. Master Chen nodded, waving his hand, go on home, little one, and be careful on the road. He didn't really take Mo Hua's words to heart. Many cultivators inquire about prices only to never follow up. Especially since it was just a child asking about crafting a stove, a labor-intensive spiritual artifact, it was unlikely there would be any follow-up. Back home, Mo Wah consulted the price list given by Master Chen and chose a stove that was the right size and within his budget. Just the material costs were about 150 spirit stones. There was also the cost of labor, which was still to be negotiated. Mo Wah didn't know how long Master Chen would take to make the stove. However, it would probably take at least 10 to 15 days, which would mean an additional 50 to 75 spirit stones. That was slightly over Mo Hua's budget. He might have to ask his parents for some spirit stones or borrow some. Next, the most crucial part was the array. Mo Wah spread out the magma ray diagram on the table and began to study it carefully. The magma ray diagram included 5 fire-related array patterns, with most strokes located at the fire positions. Just looking at the complex array patterns, they were significantly more complicated than the goldstone array and earth solidification array. Mo Wah sighed softly, put aside all distractions, and focused on noting down the array patterns in the order of strokes. Mo Wah was absorbed in his studies, and before he knew it, it had gotten dark. Even during dinner, Mo Wah was still thinking about the patterns of the magma ray. He chewed a few bites of steamed bun absent-mindedly, holding the bun and daydreaming. Lu Ruha watched him, both amused and annoyed, pinching his cheek. You need to eat properly. Think about things after you've eaten. Mo Wah snapped back to reality, chuckled, then focused on his meal, and after eating, he ran back to his room. Mo Wah had almost memorized the magma ray's patterns, then spent another hour practicing with ink that contained no spiritual energy on rough paper. Later, at midnight, he entered the sea of consciousness and began practicing the array on a stone steel. Although the array patterns were complex, their basic construction logic was no different from other arrays, and memorizing them wasn't difficult. The challenge was likely the spiritual sense. Mo Hua's spiritual sense might not be strong enough to produce a complete magma ray diagram. Mo Wah began to draw the magma ray on the damaged steel. The first 3 patterns went smoothly, but by the 4th, he clearly struggled, his spiritual sense becoming sluggish, feeling increasingly parched. Mo Hua's brow furrowed slightly. When he completed the fourth pattern, pain shot through his sea of consciousness, as if a riverbed drying at low tide was starting to crack. Mo Hua quickly stopped, erased the patterns on the steel, and the pain in his spiritual sense eased. He collapsed on the quasi-physical ground of his sea of consciousness, breathing heavily. That's it, my spiritual sense is significantly lacking. Mo Hua's spiritual sense was only sufficient to draw 4 patterns. After the fourth, he had no strength left to draw the fifth. It seemed just one pattern short, but without a way to quickly enhance his spiritual sense, this single pattern could be a lengthy hurdle. What to do? Mo Hua pondered internally. There's no shortcut to growing spiritual sense, a fact widely acknowledged in the cultivation world. At least for Qi cultivation practitioners in Tongxian City, this was commonly accepted. Mo Hua had consulted Yan Jiaoxi, who had said that growth in spiritual sense mainly depended on the increase in cultivation level. The higher the cultivation realm, the stronger the spiritual sense naturally becomes. Another way was to strengthen the spiritual sense through its frequent use. Array masters, who often need to engage their spiritual sense to draw rays, naturally have a stronger spiritual sense than average cultivators. Mo Hua had also asked if there were any specific techniques to cultivate spiritual sense, and Yan Jiaoxi had bluntly stated there were none. Whether in ancient texts or records of various family techniques, there were no safe and reliable methods to cultivate spiritual sense. Some methods that did exist were often demonic or heretical, and practitioners were at high risk of deviating from their path, becoming demon cultivators to be universally shunned and eliminated. Whether truly none existed or they were secretly kept by powerful families was unknown. But even if there were such methods, Mo Hua was unlikely to obtain them, and even if he did, he wouldn't dare to risk deviating from the path to practice them. Currently at the third level of Qi cultivation, Mo Hua couldn't quickly break through to the fourth level, so enhancing his spiritual sense through cultivation growth was not feasible. The only method before him was to keep drawing rays. The method without shortcuts was, perhaps, the best shortcut. Chapter 32, Eating Out. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Utilizing the Dao steel within the Sea of Consciousness, Mo Hua continuously honed his array techniques, thereby enhancing his spiritual sense. This method, although cumbersome, was the only approach Mo Hua could rely on at the moment. Thankfully, the Dao steel is within the Sea of Consciousness, otherwise, using such a clumsy method would be impossible, Mo Hua thought gratefully. Practicing array formations in reality drained the spiritual sense significantly and recovery was excruciatingly slow. To strengthen his spiritual sense by this method would demand much more time and energy. Resigned to his fate, Mo Hua settled down to practice the magma ray on the Dao steel without any distractions. As long as he kept practicing, he was bound to master it one day. Mo Hua initially managed to draw the first 4 array patterns before his spiritual sense was nearly depleted, at which point he would erase them. After resting briefly, he would continue drawing and then erasing again. This cycle continued until he felt a slight reserve in his spiritual sense, allowing him to add an extra stroke after completing the 4 patterns. The entire night passed, and Mo Hua had managed only to add 2 more strokes, but these at least confirmed that his spiritual sense was indeed growing. Waking up the next day, Mo Hua headed to the market to buy some ink needed for the magma ray. The ink, made from the blood of fire attribute demonic beasts mixed with various herbs, wasn't particularly expensive. Mo Hua bought over 10 portions at once. Because array masters were rare and few cultivators knew how to draw rays, not many were purchasing this ink. The shopkeeper, encountering such a major customer in Mo Hua, even gifted him a few extra portions. Once home, Mo Hua began to practice drawing the magma ray with the ink. Since the ink was purchased with spirit stones, Mo Hua drew with exceptional care, every stroke meticulous. However, limited by his spiritual sense, Mo Hua could still only manage 2 extra strokes beyond the 4 basic patterns, unable to complete the full 5 patterns of the magma ray. After drawing, he would need to rest for an hour to recover his spiritual sense before he could continue. This efficiency was much lower compared to drawing on the Dao steel in the Sea of Consciousness. It also consumed ink and spiritual paper, meaning he was spending spirit stones. However, in order to learn the magma ray sooner, Mo Hua didn't mind the cost. Night after night, he practiced the array, and after half a month, he could add about 10 more strokes, roughly half a pattern. At this rate, he estimated it would take another half month for his spiritual sense to be sufficient to draw a complete magma ray with 5 patterns. Mo Hua silently breathed a sigh of relief. Considering that the crafting of the stove also required time, some preparations needed to be made sooner. During the day, Mo Hua would stroll through the streets, and in the evening, he would return home to dine with his parents. Under the flickering candlelight, the table was laid with fragrant rice porridge, soft white steamed buns, 2 dishes of fresh vegetables, and a small dish of pickled vegetables. For an ordinary independent cultivator's family, this was quite a feast, as meat was rarely affordable. Lu Ruha was skilled in cooking. The meal was simple but delicious, and Mo Hua enjoyed it immensely. Though Lu Ruha cooked the meal, it was Mo Shan who provided the fire with his spiritual power. Lu Rua's expression was usual, but there was often a hint of loss in her eyes, and she occasionally appeared distracted. After swiftly consuming a steamed bun, Mo Hua cheekily asked, "Mom, have you thought about opening a spirit meal tower?" Caught off guard while sipping her porridge, Lu Ruha paused, then smiled. "Why do you suddenly ask this? You cook so well, opening a spirit meal tower would surely earn a lot of spirit stones. Starting a spirit meal tower requires capital, you know. Where would independent cultivators like us get the spirit stones to open one?" Lu Ruha replied with a chuckle, then playfully tapped Mo Hua's nose. "Maybe we can consider it when you're grown up, have a high cultivation level, and can earn lots of spirit stones. We could start with a small one," Mo Hua quietly suggested. "What small one?" Lu Ruha was puzzled. "A small eatery," explained Mo Hua. "I walked around the market today and noticed many such places selling drinks, dishes, snacks, noodles, etc., and they all seem quite profitable." Lu Ruha hesitated, her expression falling slightly. Mo Shan added softly, "Child, your mother. She can't use spiritual power." Unable to use spiritual power meant she couldn't provide the fire needed for a cultivator's meals. Even if she could use spiritual power, running an eatery with customers coming and going, requiring the preparation of many dishes, was not something a Qi cultivation stage cultivator could sustain. Mo Hua raised an eyebrow, pride in his tone. "We'll build a stove." "A stove?" Mo Shan and Lu Ruha looked at each other in disbelief. Mo Hua pulled out a large blueprint from his storage bag. "This is the design for the stove. I've asked Master Chen from Chen's artifact crafting shop about the materials, dimensions, and the spirit stones needed. I'll figure out the array. Once the stove is crafted, it won't need cultivators to power it with spiritual energy. Just insert spirit stones, and it will continuously provide fire, making it much easier to cook and stew ingredients." Mo Shan and his wife were stunned that their son had already prepared blueprints, both momentarily speechless. "Crafting a stove requires a lot of spirit stones, right? We'll make a small one first. I've asked Master Chen, and it doesn't need too many spirit stones. A small eatery will be fine with a smaller stove." "What about the array?" Lu Ruha inquired. Mo Hua feigned nonchalance, though his expression betrayed a hint of pride. "I'll handle the drawing. I've already secured the array diagrams from Manager Mo. The arrays aren't too complex." Despite his nights spent tirelessly practicing without fully mastering the magma ray, Mo Hua felt a slight twinge of guilt at his boast. Lu Ruha looked at him skeptically. "Really not difficult?" Mo Hua chuckled. "Although I haven't mastered it yet, just give me a few more days, and it'll be no problem." A 5-pattern array wasn't easy to learn, after all. Lu Ruha nodded, considering Mo Hua's youth and his relatively short time learning array techniques. If he could learn it, it probably wasn't too complicated. But she pondered a moment and then shook her head. Opening a shop isn't so simple. Even a small eatery requires renting a place, hiring help, and managing many things. It also costs a lot of spirit stones. If we can't make ends meet, it'll be even harder for our family to get by. Right now, the most important thing is to save spirit stones for your cultivation. Mo Shan, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. We'll open this eatery. I'll figure out the storefront and staffing. You don't need to worry. Mo Shan then pulled out a storage bag and handed it to Mo Hua. This contains over 100 spirit stones, which I've earned from hunting demonic beasts in recent months. I know you've been earning spirit stones by drawing arrays for others, but let's use these for the stove first. Mo Hua started to refuse, but Mo Shan pushed the storage bag into his hands. Holding the bag, Mo Hua felt the weight of the spirit stones earned through his father's life and death struggles with demonic beasts, making them seem heavier than ordinary stones. With Mo Shan's agreement, the decision to open the eatery was nearly finalized. After dinner, Mo Hua returned to his room to continue practicing the magma array. Lu Ruha still looked worried. Mo Shan reassured her, don't overthink it. It's just a small business. Even if we lose money, it won't be much. Lu Ruha sighed. Mo Hua is talented and smart. In the future, he'll need a lot of spirit stones for cultivation, to learn techniques and Dao methods, and to become an array master. If we use up all our spirit stones now, what will he do when he needs them for cultivation? Mo Shan spoke gently. Don't underestimate our son. He's already helping merchants with their arrays, even though they're simple ones. Maybe in a decade or two, after refining his skills, he really could become an array master. Mo Shan smiled. By then, we might be relying on our son to support us. Lu Ruha smiled back, but her concerns lingered. Mo Shan took her hand. Then let's make the eatery successful, save up more spirit stones, and later think about finding Mo Hua a wife and seeing him start a family. Lu Ruha considered his words, a smile appearing on her face, though she was still not entirely reassured. But what if? Even if something happens, I'm here. No matter how tough life gets, there's always a way. We'll just have to work harder, hunt a few more demonic beasts. Mo Shan's tone was gentle yet firm. Lu Ruha said no more, silently leaning into Mo Shan's embrace. Chapter 33, Crafting. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The following day, Mo Hua did not practice the magma array but instead took some spirit stones to Chen's artifact crafting shop to find Master Chen. Master Chen was surprised to see Mo Hua, and even more so when he heard that Mo Hua truly intended to craft a stove. Are you really planning to craft a stove? Of course, but just a small one, about 4 feet high. It doesn't need to be made from expensive materials, just sturdy and durable. Master Chen nodded. That's just right. If it were a larger stove, I might not have enough hands on deck. Since it's for personal use and you're from the neighborhood, I'll pick some affordable and durable materials for you, ensuring they are cost-effective yet long-lasting. Thank you, Master Chen. However, Master Chen looked at Mo Hua and peered behind him, puzzled. Where are your parents? Crafting a stove isn't a minor matter. It usually requires an adult to discuss it. Mo Hua patted his chest. My father has left it to me. Just talk to me if there's anything, Master Chen. Master Chen looked at the youngster, Mo Hua, and nodded. Indeed, the children of the poor have to shoulder responsibilities early. After frowning and hesitating for a moment, he still said, did you bring the deposit? The materials for the stove cost 150 spirit stones, with the crafting taking 20 days at 5 spirit stones per day, and a crafting fee of 100 spirit stones. The deposit covers the material costs and must be paid first, amounting to 150 spirit stones, while the crafting fee can be settled after completion. Yes, I brought it. Mo Hua took out a heavy storage bag from his chest, opened the bag, and inside were sparkling, translucent spirit stones. Such an amount of spirit stones would be considered a fortune in a common independent cultivator's family, and here the child was, carrying it in his chest. Master Chen took the storage bag with a complex expression, counted exactly 150 spirit stones, and then took out a spirit contract, detailing the materials, costs, and delivery date for crafting the stove. The spirit contract is a recognized proof of agreement in the cultivation world, specially made and difficult to destroy or forge, serving as a record for transactions involving spirit stones among cultivators. In case of disputes, one could seek arbitration from an authoritative cultivator or request mediation from the Dao court. 2 copies of the spirit contract were made, with Master Chen signing one, and then handing it to Mo Hua. Mo Hua also signed his name, and each kept a copy as proof of the crafting transaction. Master Chen initially wanted Mo Hua to sign using his father's name, but thinking better of it, he decided that since his parents had entrusted him, it was the same if he signed. Under the heavens, all beings are equal, regardless of cultivation level or age. Once the spirit contract is signed, it is binding. Mo Hua. Master Chen saw the dignified and handsome handwriting on the spirit contract and realized that the child's name was Mo Hua. Looking again at his features, red lips, white teeth, and brows like paintings, he found the name quite fitting. After securing a not insignificant business deal, which would take care of half a month's livelihood, Master Chen grew increasingly fond of Mo Hua. Young brother, the spirit contract is signed, and we'll start crafting tomorrow. I'll make sure to hurry and get it done for you. If you have time, you could also come over to check on the progress or learn about crafting. Normally, I don't let those who aren't apprentices in the shop watch. Sure, thank you, Master Chen. Mo Hua was quite interested in crafting, although he might never craft a spiritual artifact in his lifetime. Learning about crafting was beneficial, and this practical crafting skill was not taught in his sect. In the following days, Mo Hua continued to practice the magma array as usual. Whenever he had spare time, he would go to the crafting shop to check on the progress of the stove and inquire about crafting knowledge. Master Chen did not withhold information, answering all inquiries. After a few days of interaction, he was amazed at Mo Hua's aptitude for learning yet lamented his poor physical constitution for crafting. He had seen weak-bodied children before, but rarely one who couldn't even swing the crafting hammer. Otherwise, Master Chen would have truly liked to take Mo Hua as his apprentice. Mo Hua spent several days in the crafting shop, partly to learn the basics of crafting and partly to adjust the flow and measurements of the magma array. While the array was usually drawn on paper, allowing for practice without consequence, now it needed to be drawn on the stove, and Mo Hua couldn't just ask Master Chen to craft another if a mistake was made. Thus, Mo Hua needed to be very familiar with the structure of the stove, frequently visiting the crafting shop to monitor progress. One morning, after finishing porridge personally cooked by his mother, Mo Hua practiced the array for a bit and, before the day grew too hot, slowly made his way to Chen's artifact crafting shop. Upon arrival, he found the usually bustling shop unusually quiet today, without the loud calls or the clang of iron being struck. Mo Hua walked to the backyard and saw Master Chen and a few apprentices cleaning up. The crafting furnace was unlit, and the lid was open with some cleaned ashes on the ground. Master Chen, what happened? Seeing Mo Hua, Master Chen apologized. Young brother, I'm sorry. The crafting furnace is broken, and the stove you ordered might be delayed. The crafting furnace is broken? Master Chen also looked dejected. This furnace is quite old, and it had some minor issues before that were manageable with repairs, but today it just wouldn't light, alas. Can't it be fixed? Mo Hua asked. Master Chen shook his head. Before, it was just external parts that I could repair, but now it seems to be an issue with the internal array, and that's beyond repair. We'll need to consult other masters from the crafting pavilion, and if we need an array master to repair the array, it will cost quite a few spirit stones. Array? Mo Hua perked up. May I have a look? Master Chen paused. Look at what? The array. Why do you want to see the array? Master Chen was puzzled. Do you understand arrays? Mo Hua replied, I've studied some arrays with a master in my sect, and maybe I can help, at least to see if the problem is indeed with the array. Half in doubt, Master Chen thought since the furnace was already broken, looking at it wouldn't cause any harm, so he said, all right, I'll have them completely disassemble the crafting furnace for you to examine the array inside. After speaking, he and the apprentices started to dismantle the crafting furnace piece by piece. The furnace was as tall as 2 men and made of various types of refined iron, making it very heavy. However, the apprentices, endowed with strong physiques and decent cultivation, managed to cooperate and handle it without much difficulty. Mo Hua knew his limitations well and didn't even think of helping physically. Once the crafting furnace was dismantled, the dense array of dark red array patterns inside became visible, some obscured by black ash, but still discernible. The patterns inside were indeed a complete fire array. It was the very magma array that Mo Hua had been practicing every day but had not yet managed to complete. Chapter 34, Array Crafting. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. It's actually a magma array, Mo Hua remarked. Indeed, Master Chen nodded, recognizing Mo Hua's swift identification of the array and feeling somewhat affirmed. His tone became more solemn. Young brother Mo, take a look. Is there something wrong with this array? I'm completely clueless about it and can't see any issues. Master Chen had someone wipe the soot off the crafting furnace, and Mo Hua leaned over the furnace mouth, scrutinizing the magma array patterns on the furnace walls. Although he couldn't yet draw it perfectly, his night and day practice had made him very familiar with the drawing of array patterns, and soon he pointed out a few areas to Master Chen, saying, the problem is indeed with the array. These array patterns have worn out, preventing spiritual power from transmitting, thus rendering the array ineffective. Seeing Mo Hua speak so logically, Master Chen couldn't help but look at him with new respect, then furrowed his brow. Then we'll have to ask an array master for help. Alas, business hasn't been great, and I don't know how many spirit stones this will cost. Mo Hua asked, is it expensive to have an array master repair the array? Naturally, Master Chen replied, array masters are rare, and this type of specialized repair work requires extra spirit stones, otherwise others might not be willing to come. Mo Hua pondered for a moment and then suggested, how about I give it a try? You? Master Chen was astonished. Are you already an array master? Mo Hua modestly waved his hand. Not quite. I've just studied array crafting with the masters in the sect, and I have studied this particular array before. Looking at the youthful and slightly naive face of Mo Hua, Master Chen gently declined. Let's not trouble you, you're just a kid, don't overexert yourself. Knowing Master Chen still had concerns, Mo Hua quickly added, Master Chen, the ones you ask for help aren't necessarily real array masters, right? That's true, Master Chen admitted. Some are merely apprentices, not quite array masters yet. But when asking for help, naturally, we'd speak well of them. Regardless of their real status, calling them array masters is favorable. They're pleased to hear it, and it makes things go smoother. We don't know much else, we just need the array fixed. Then every time, were they able to fix it? Master Chen thought for a moment. A few times, it went smoothly and was quickly fixed, but sometimes they would patch it up half a day, and it still wouldn't work, and we had to change the person to finally get it fixed. That's exactly it. Those who come are mostly apprentices, and even if their skills are higher than mine, they aren't that much higher, Mo Hua confidently said. Of course, the skills of a proper apprentice should be higher than Mo Hua's, but indeed, some apprentices' skills might not surpass his. Mo Hua continued, if they repair and it's still a repair, I might as well try, and if it doesn't work, you can still ask them to come. This logic seemed to make sense. Master Chen was somewhat persuaded, but still hesitated. Seeing this, Mo Hua added, even if you ask for an array master, they can't come immediately, they have to be available. Delaying even one day means the crafting shop loses one day's income, and if it drags on, the expenses will exceed the income. The business of the crafting shop was fair, but the profits weren't high, and Master Chen didn't want to skimp on quality, earning only hard-earned money. Moreover, he had to provide for several apprentices. A prolonged downtime really wasn't easy to manage. Master Chen felt a headache coming on, finally gritted his teeth and said, all right, young brother, give it a try. He then cautiously instructed, but just try, don't force it, and don't ruin the array. Mo Hua assured him, don't worry, at worst, it just won't improve. Master Chen felt somewhat reassured, yet not entirely. Mo Hua asked Master Chen to wait a moment, went home to fetch his pen and fire elemental ink, and also brought the magma array diagram. At the crafting shop, he first showed the diagram to Master Chen. Seeing that the diagram and the array on the crafting furnace were indeed similar, Master Chen felt somewhat relieved, at least it wasn't completely unreliable. This was the first time Mo Hua was drawing an array on a spiritual tool, and he was somewhat nervous, but fortunately, having practiced the magma array many times before, his mindset calmed once he started drawing. Repairing an array was different from drawing a new one. It didn't require much spiritual sense since the array itself was already complete. He only needed to reconnect the damaged parts of the array patterns with ink. What tested the array master was his eyesight, meticulousness, and familiarity with the array. Mo Hua leaned over the stove, completely focused on his drawing. In less than half an hour, Mo Hua had finished repairing the array, and then spent another tea time checking it over. Once he was sure there were no issues, he finally relaxed. Master Chen watched nervously by the side, afraid that Mo Hua might have damaged the array. Seeing that Mo Hua was done, he anxiously asked, is it fixed now? Mo Hua, with clothes dirtied and several streaks of soot on his face, uncertainly said, it should be fixed, shall we light it to test? Master Chen's expression was complicated, but he still joined a few apprentices in sealing the array again, setting up the crafting furnace, and then embedding the spirit stones to activate the spiritual power and light the fire. However, the fire didn't ignite. Mo Hua was startled, touched his chin, his already dirty face now even dirtier, why isn't it igniting? The array should have been repaired. Master Chen asked, young brother, are you sure there's no problem with the array? Mo Hua pulled out the magma array diagram, carefully compared it again, then nodded, the array is fine. Master Chen felt the crafting furnace, sensed the temperature, and told the apprentices, the spiritual power isn't sufficient, put in a few more spirit stones, and throw in a branding iron. The disciples did as instructed, and indeed, the temperature of the crafting furnace gradually rose. Soon, a fire whooshed out. Master Chen was overjoyed, it's fixed. The apprentices also cheered, the crafting furnace was operational, they had work to do, and could continue learning from their master, hence they looked at Mo Hua with admiration. Mo Hua was also pleased, let's try crafting a spiritual tool to see if there are any issues. Master Chen casually threw a knife into the furnace, crafted for a while, and then slightly regretfully said, using it, there's no big problem, but the firepower is a bit less than before, crafting might take a bit longer. Mo Hua was puzzled, the same array, why would the firepower be less? Could it be that the effectiveness of the array decreases after repair? Master Chen shook his head, it's been repaired a few times before, but the firepower didn't decrease much. Then why is that? Mo Hua frowned, wondering if there was something not quite right in how the array was drawn. Master Chen pondered for a moment, then pointed at the inkwell on Mo Hua's desk, maybe it's the ink. The ink used by those who came to repair before was clearly much darker, a bright red, looking like it was burning. Mo Hua realized he had bought the cheapest fire elemental ink available to save money, which was fine for practicing arrays, but when actually drawn on a spiritual tool, the effect was certainly inferior. For the array's effect to be good, higher grade spiritual ink is needed. Mo Hua silently noted this, then somewhat embarrassedly said, then it must be the ink issue. I bought the cheap stuff, the stimulation of spiritual power might not be very good. Master Chen said, why mention that, the firepower is a little less, but it's still usable, after all, old man me still has to thank you. Master Chen thought for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, that stove you wanted, the crafting fee need not be given, I'll help you craft the stove for free. Of course, I can't refund the material cost, after all, I still need to feed a whole bunch of lads. Mo Hua looked around the spacious but simple crafting shop, then at the dusky Master Chen and the apprentices covered in sweat and soot. Knowing they earned their spirit stones with difficulty, he said, Master Chen, just give me a 50% discount on the crafting fee. Master Chen shook his head, that won't do, even this is me taking advantage, asking someone else to repair this array would cost at least 100 or 200 spirit stones. It doesn't need to be that much. Master Chen stubbornly said, we cultivators speak of honesty, a spit and a nail, how can we lightly retract what's been said? Since I said I won't take your spirit stones, then certainly I can't take them. Such integrity. Mo Hua had no choice, thought for a moment, then smilingly said, then how about this, I won't give the crafting fee. After the stove is crafted, I'll give some spirit stones, as a tip for you and the others' hard work. That. Master Chen was momentarily confused. Crafting fee and hard work fee seemed the same, but felt a bit different. It's like giving a tip to a friend who helps out, Mo Hua added. Well, alright. Master Chen felt this made sense. The apprentices also looked at Mo Hua gratefully. Their families were not wealthy, and being apprentices and doing chores allowed them to earn a little to supplement their family income. If they couldn't earn spirit stones, their already difficult lives would be a bit harder. But earning spirit stones, even just a few more, made life a bit easier. Then it's settled. It's getting late. I need to go home for dinner. Mo Hua waved goodbye. Master Chen cautioned Mo Hua to be careful on the road, then added, if you want to craft tools in the future, just come to me, I'll give you a discount. Chapter 35, Fully Prepared. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Since Mo Hua began studying the magma ray, 16 days have passed. On this day, Mo Hua got up early. The morning sunlight bathed the table in a fresh and bright light, devoid of the oppressive heat of midday. Mo Hua laid out paper on the table and adjusted the red ink before he began to draw the magma ray. This had been Mo Hua's daily routine for over 10 days. But today was different. Mo Hua was set to draw a complete magma ray for the first time. The previous night, in his sea of consciousness, Mo Hua was able to draw the magma ray on the remnants of a steel, indicating his spiritual sense was now strong enough to support drawing 5 array patterns. After repeated practice and a repair session on the artifact crafting furnace at Chen's artifact crafting shop, Mo Hua had mastered the array patterns. Mo Hua drew carefully and cautiously. An hour later, as he felt a prickling sensation in his spiritual sense growing towards exhaustion, he completed the final stroke of the magma ray. Mo Hua infused a bit of spiritual power into it. The spiritual power slowly flowed along the red array patterns, starting from the first stroke of the first pattern, gradually moving to the last stroke of the fifth pattern, seamlessly connecting the whole array without any obstructions. It was a success. Mo Hua exhaled deeply, feeling the fulfillment of gradual progress reaching fruition. A 5-pattern array. At the third level of chi cultivation, he was able to draw an array with 5 patterns. Mo Hua knew that a normal third level chi cultivator could at most draw 3 patterns. Disciples from large families and sects, with higher talents and better legacies, might perform better in the same realm, but not by much. With a nod, Mo Hua acknowledged this. Moreover, the more he drew, the stronger his spiritual sense would become, making it easier to learn arrays and eventually become a first-rank array master. Even if he were just an ordinary array master, not officially certified, he would earn a considerable amount of spirit stones, easing his parents' hardships. Thinking this, Mo Hua couldn't help but feel happy. Then, the fatigue from practicing the array over the past few days hit him, and he fell asleep on his bed. Lu Ruha entered the room carrying freshly washed wild fruits. Seeing the freshly drawn array on the table and Mo Hua sleeping soundly on the bed, she tidied up the table. She then covered Mo Hua's belly with a fur blanket and watched him for a long time. Seeing Mo Hua sleeping sweetly, dreaming of unknown delights as saliva glistened at the corner of his mouth, Lu Ruha couldn't help but laugh. She wiped his mouth with her sleeve before leaving the room. A few days later, Dazu came to inform Mo Hua that the furnace had been completed. Dazu, Master Chen's eldest disciple, was tall and robust, with a simple and honest smile. Following Dazu to Chen's artifact crafting shop, Mo Hua saw a man-height furnace, its design ancient yet robust, with 3 legs and a rounded belly, the lid open, waiting for an array to be drawn inside before sealing. The furnace is forged, young brother, take a look, are you satisfied? Mo Hua circled the furnace, inspecting it from all angles and touching it to feel its solid craftsmanship, indicative of high-quality materials and meticulous attention to detail. Not bad at all, Master Chen. This is the best spiritual tool I've seen, Mo Hua said, although he hadn't seen many spiritual tools. Master Chen stroked his beard. Of course, young brother, you asked for the best, and I provided. Thank you, Master Chen. Mo Hua was pleased and took out a storage bag. Here are 60 spirit stones as your fee. The job had taken about 20 days, warranting a payment of over 100 spirit stones, but Mo Hua had offered half that amount, plus a little extra. Master Chen initially wanted to refuse, considering his shop had been struggling for months and his disciples were often hungry. Still, he accepted the payment and said to Mo Hua, next time you need artifact crafting, come to me, and I'll give you the lowest price in Tangshan City. Thank you, Master Chen. Mo Hua responded enthusiastically. But, Master Chen hesitated. The furnace still needs an array drawn on it to function. Who will do that? I'll draw it myself. Mo Hua patted his chest confidently. Master Chen was surprised, yet not completely. The array on the artifact furnace had been repaired by Mo Hua, and since the furnace, pill furnace, and stove shared similar processes and core arrays, it wasn't strange for Mo Hua to attempt it himself. However, Master Chen kindly advised, repairing an array and drawing one are different tasks. Drawing an array consumes more spiritual sense, and with your current cultivation level, your spiritual sense might not be sufficient. Don't force yourself to draw the array and risk harming your sea of consciousness. Don't worry, Mo Hua replied, I know what I'm doing. Master Chen didn't press further. He wasn't more knowledgeable than the young cultivator before him when it came to arrays. Mo Hua, with his short stature, then dismantled the prepared furnace and laid it out on the ground, ready to draw the array. Dazu and the other disciples stood by, watching with curiosity as Mo Hua began to draw the array on the furnace's inner wall. They didn't understand the array, but they were mesmerized by the mysterious patterns flowing from Mo Hua's brush, even though he was much younger than them. Mo Hua first dipped his brush in water to familiarize himself with it and get a feel for drawing on the artifact. He also anticipated the challenges he might face when actually drawing the array. He believed in the importance of preparation. Being ready for anything could significantly increase the success rate of the array. After preparing, Mo Hua laid out the magma ray diagram for reference and took out his brush and a small bottle of ink. The ink was a bright red color, thick and said to be made from the blood of fire-type demonic beasts. While it was only of medium quality, it was the best ink Mo Hua could afford within his budget, costing 10 spirit stones per bottle. It was enough to draw 2 magma rays, so he had to make sure he got it right to avoid wasting it. Mo Hua focused his mind and began to draw the array. The innocent and tender expression on his face gradually became serious. His black and white eyes shone brightly, as if containing starlight. Master Chen and the disciples watched in silence, not daring to disturb him, their expressions more nervous than Mo Hua's. Mo Hua, with his delicate hand, moved the brush with agility, guiding it along the furnace's inner wall to create lively array patterns, with a rhythm that was both swift and steady, demonstrating impeccable technique. Though they couldn't understand the array or the patterns, they were captivated by the mesmerizing flow of the patterns from Mo Hua's brush. After what seemed like an eternity, Mo Hua finally stopped, exhaling deeply. Seeing this, the others inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. Master Chen hesitated, whispering, young brother, did you succeed in drawing the array? A bright smile lit up Mo Hua's serious face once more. Yes, I did. Chapter 36, The Stove. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. As they observed Mo Hua's smile, Master Chen and the others also began to share in the joy. Master Chen couldn't help but praise, young man, you're truly remarkable. I've lived most of my life, but this is the first time I've seen such a young cultivator capable of designing array patterns. Mo Hua, somewhat embarrassed by the compliment, shyly responded, Master Chen, let's first see if the stove with the array pattern on it works. Master Chen called out, and with the help of several sturdy apprentices, they reassembled the stove and tossed a few spirit stones into it. Soon after, flames sprouted inside the stove. Master Chen nodded and said, no problem, it's just a bit smaller in size, but this stove is no different from those expensively forged ones at the spirit meal tower, even the flames are fiercer. Mo Hua breathed a sigh of relief, and then Master Chen and Da Ju's disciples transported the stove to Mo Hua's house. After discussing with his parents, Mo Hua decided to open the eatery at his own home. It was more convenient, and the nearby market spaces were too expensive. Originally a small-scale business, renting a costly shop could lead to financial ruin if they ran at a loss. Moreover, Mo Hua's place, although mostly inhabited by poor independent cultivators, was near a busy road and became quite lively during festivals. As long as the food was good, selling it wouldn't be a concern. Mo Hua's home was small, a typical layout for chi cultivation independent cultivators with 2 rooms and a living room, plus a small courtyard. It was sufficient for a family of 3 but cramped for an eatery. Mo Shan discussed with some neighbors and paid them some spirit stones monthly to use their courtyards. Then he invited friends from a demon hunter team to help remodel a kitchen. They connected several courtyards, creating a large open space where tables and chairs could be set up for dining. The stove was too big to fit into a storage bag, so Dazu and the other disciples carried it to Mo Hua's house. When they arrived, Mo Shan and his wife were tidying up the courtyard, digging and building walls, making it appear somewhat disordered. Dazu and the others helped install the stove and then sat down for a cup of tea before taking their leave. Although Mo Hua had assured them beforehand and was generally reliable, seeing the stove forged in front of them, Mo Shan and his wife still found it hard to believe. Lu Ruha touched the stove and remarked, "It looks just like those at the big spirit meal tower, only smaller, but clearly more sturdy and well crafted, though it must have cost quite a few spirit stones. I helped Master Chen fix the array in his artifact forging furnace, and he gave me a 50% discount. Plus, I drew the array on this stove myself, so it didn't cost too many spirit stones," Mo Hua said, a bit smug. Lu Ruha and Mo Shan exchanged glances. They knew Mo Hua had some talent in arrays, but they hadn't realized he could not only repair arrays for others but had even started crafting them on spiritual artifacts himself. Lu Ruha hugged Mo Hua and exclaimed, "Hu you're truly amazing." Mo Shan looked at his son, his eyes filled with pride. Originally worried about Mo Hua's frailty, seeing his son's talent in arrays now assured him that even without physical cultivation, Mo Hua could make a living through arrays, avoiding the dangers of battling demonic beasts like himself, which was more than ideal. "Mom, let me tell you how to use the stove." Mo Hua took Lu Ruha's hand, explaining how to operate the stove, the amount of spirit stones needed, and how to control the heat. These instructions were not complicated, and Lu Ruha understood them after one explanation. Using the stove, Lu Ruha then cooked a simple yet tasty meal consisting of a pot of clear rice porridge, a few vegetable dishes, and soft, white steamed buns. Eating the meal prepared by his mother moved Mo Hua deeply, especially since most of their recent meals had been cooked by Mo Shan, whose culinary skills were understandably not as refined. "Mom, your cooking is much tastier than Dad's," Mo Hua declared openly. "You little rascal," Mo Shan chuckled as he ruffled Mo Hua's hair, but seeing the smile on his wife's face, he couldn't help but laugh as well. After the meal, Lu Ruha asked, "Opening an eatery is fine, but what should we sell?" Mo Shan and Lu Ruha both looked at Mo Hua. "Beef," Mo Hua responded, meeting his parents' gaze. Mo Shan paused, frowning, "But where would we get the beef? Spirit-infused meat is expensive, and we can't afford it. Besides, the nearby independent cultivators wouldn't buy it either." "Dad, remember the wild mountain ox you killed before? We could use that meat." "That wild ox meat. It's too tough and dry. No one would want to eat it." "Then we could stew it for 2 days and 2 nights. Even the toughest meat should soften by then, and it would surely be flavorful." "Stew for 2 days and 2 nights." Mo Shan's gaze involuntarily shifted to the stove. "So, you had this stove forged not only to spare your mother from using spiritual energy for cooking but also for stewing meat?" "Yes," Mo Hua nodded. "Will that really work?" Mo Shan was hesitant. "It will work." Lu Rua's eyes brightened. "Meat infused with spiritual energy is delicious and doesn't need to be stewed for long, or it loses its essence. But that meat is expensive and not affordable for families like ours. Meat without spiritual energy is cheaper, but tough and needs to be stewed for a long time. While affordable for independent cultivators, they lack the means to properly stew it, so it's rarely consumed. With this stove, we can stew meat that's both inexpensive and delicious, even affordable for ordinary cultivators." Mo Shan nodded, then added, "But stewing for 2 days and 2 nights would also consume a lot of spirit stones, wouldn't it?" Mo Hua counted on his fingers and then said, "It should take about 10 spirit stones, but one batch can stew a lot of meat, and if sold, it should at least break even." "All right, I'll try stewing the pot the day after tomorrow to calculate the costs," Lu Ruha decided. Mo Shan nodded, "I'll go get some more wild ox meat. We've run out at home, and the Zhao family should still have some. If this meat can sell, then the meat from hunting demonic beasts might also find a market, improving everyone's living conditions." As the day drew to a close, Lu Ruha urged Mo Hua to go to sleep. Rising, Mo Hua suddenly recalled a question and asked, "Mom, forging a stove isn't that hard, but why do we seldom see ordinary independent cultivators using one?" "Oh, you silly child." Lu Ruha touched Mo Hua's face and chuckled. "Aside from the complexity of artifact crafting, if you aren't drawing the stove's array yourself and have to hire another array master, that would cost a lot of spirit stones. Becoming an array master is difficult, and once someone is, they naturally aim to advance further. Depending on their family and sect, they craft higher level arrays to earn more spirit stones, hardly sparing a thought for us poor independent cultivators. Not just array masters, but all cultivators are the same. When people climb higher, they seldom look back." Mo Hua felt a complex mix of emotions and was momentarily lost for words. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 37, Beef. The next day, Mo Shan left the house and returned in the evening with a large bundle on his back, filled with wild mountain ox meat. "I went to old Zhao, he had a lot left. Nobody was buying the meat, and he couldn't eat it all, so I took it all back," he said. Lu Ruha soaked the meat to remove the blood, then marinated it with spicy and aromatic seasonings. These seasonings were harvested and sun-dried by Lu Ruha herself, a method she learned from a neighbor's aunt. It's a common practice among independent cultivator families in Tongxian City, but Lu Ruha's spices smelled particularly good. After marinating overnight, the meat was placed in the stove the next day to cook. After simmering for half a day, Lu Ruha removed the meat, drained the water, and added fresh water and spicy seasonings. She boiled it on high heat first, then reduced to a simmer, stewing it for another day and night. By the evening of the 3rd day, she finally extinguished the stove fire and lifted the pot lid. Steam surged out, and the aroma of meat mixed with the seasonings filled the entire house. Lu Ruha took a small knife, cut a slice of meat, and placed it thinly sliced on a plate on the table, then waved Mo Hua over. "Hu come and try this." Mo Hua picked up his chopsticks, took a piece, and after chewing a few times, felt the meat was tender and flavorful, leaving a fragrant aftertaste in his mouth. The slight gaminess was also balanced by the spiciness, creating a unique flavor. "Mom, this is the best meat I've ever eaten." Mo Shan also tried a piece, his eyes lighting up, and he praised his wife. "It's even better than what those chefs make at the tavern." Lu Ruha smiled, tasted a piece of meat herself, and thought it was still not perfect. The flavor is still a bit off. The spices should be milder, the spicy flavor stronger, and the fire higher. Mo Hua thought it was already delicious. In his 10+ years of life, he had never eaten such tasty meat. As for whether he had in another life, he couldn't remember. The taste of the wild ox meat was excellent, giving them confidence to open the eatery. Lu Ruha cut some of the beef into small boxes for Mo Shan and Mo Hua to share with neighbors and friends. Mo Shan distributed it to the neighbors and friends from the demon hunter team. Mo Hua carried a box first to Mr. Feng of the Xinglin Medical Hall, to thank him for treating his mother, and then to Master Chen, since the stove was made by Master Chen, and the beef stewed in it deserved to be tasted. Mr. Feng, skilled in dietary health, usually abstains from meat, but couldn't resist trying a few slices of the beef Mo Hua brought, and he couldn't stop praising it. Master Chen, needless to say, shared half of the beef with Dazu and his disciples, stowing the rest away for himself to savor slowly with his drinks. Mo Hua also delivered some to the Ming family home. The Ming family members all share the surname Meng, but the three boys, Da Hu, Shuang Hu, and Xiao Hu, are not biological brothers. The Ming family was once thriving, with 3 generations under one roof. The old man had 3 sons, each of whom had a son. These were Da Hu, Shuang Hu, and Xiao Hu. However, the good times didn't last. Shuang Hu's father died while hunting demonic beasts, and his mother succumbed to depression and illness soon after. Xiao Hu's father got involved with another female cultivator while on a business trip and never returned. There were rumors that he had changed his name and started a new family or had been bewitched by a nefarious demoness, his essence drained and turned into a human pill. In any case, he was not coming back. Embarrassed, Xiao Hu's mother remarried. The old Mr. Meng had hoped his descendants would thrive for generations, perhaps producing a foundation-building cultivator, making them a minor renowned family in Tongxian City. But in a blink, he lost 2 sons, and overwhelmed by grief, he soon passed away. With only the eldest son left as the pillar of the Ming family, he never complained, raising his brother's children as his own. They shared meals when food was plentiful and hunger when it was not. When the children misbehaved, he disciplined them equally. As the 3 boys grew, so did their appetites, stretching the already modest means of their family even further. When Mo Hua arrived with the beef, the Ming family was having dinner. Da Hu, Shuang Hu, and Xiao Hu were munching on steamed buns and pickles. Hearing that Mo Hua had brought beef, their eyes widened. As Mo Hua opened the food box and the aroma wafted out, they drooled in anticipation. Aunt Ming scolded the boys, "Before you eat what others give, thank them first." Shuang Hu was the first to pound his chest and declare, "Mo Hua. Between brothers, there are no strangers. Anyone who bullies you, I'll beat up for you." Da Hu and Xiao Hu also chorused, "Me too, me too." Aunt Ming tapped each of the 3 boys on the head with her chopsticks, annoyed, "All you know is fighting. If the 3 of you together were half as sensible as Mo Hua, I'd be thankful." After she spoke, seeing the 3 kids looking pitifully at the meat, she softened and said, "Go on, eat, but remember to help your Uncle Mo and Aunt Lu with some chores, and don't just freeload." The 3 boys nodded vigorously, then each took a piece of meat and put it in the bowls of Uncle Meng and Aunt Meng before they started on the remaining meat themselves. As soon as the beef was in his mouth, Xiao Hu's eyes widened. "This meat is so delicious." Da Hu and Shuang Hu, mouths full of meat, nodded continuously. Pleased that his mother's cooking was praised, Mo Hua was also very happy. Uncle Meng and Aunt Meng tasted the meat, nodding continuously, then picked the remaining pieces for the 3 boys. Aunt Meng said enviously to Mo Hua, "Your mother's cooking skills are really good." Mo Hua also praised, "Aunt Meng's cooking is great too." Aunt Meng laughed, pulling Mo Hua's hand. "I don't know how such a well-behaved and sensible child was born." Uncle Meng tasted the beef and curiously asked, "Is this wild ox meat?" "It doesn't taste like it." "It is wild ox meat, it was cooked for a very long time." No wonder, Uncle Meng nodded, then told Mo Hua, "I heard your family is opening an eatery. If there's anything we can help with, just tell your uncle and aunt, and we will definitely help." "Thank you, Uncle Meng." After a few more pleasantries, Mo Hua got up to leave. Aunt Meng packed some freshly steamed buns and some wild fruits for Mo Hua to take home. "We don't have much at home, but take these buns and fruits back with you." Mo Hua did not refuse, packing the buns into the food box, munching on the wild fruits as he walked home. The beef stewed in the stove for a long time was praised by everyone who tasted it. Lu Ruha further perfected her cooking and seasoning skills, adjusted the stewing heat, and even made several bowls of beef noodles for Mo Hua to try. The broth was rich, the noodles were chewy, and the beef was fragrant, making Mo Hua happily squint his eyes. Additionally, Lu Ruha added some other beverages and snacks to the eatery for sale. Alcohol was indispensable, but the independent cultivators were poor, and the grains used for brewing were of low quality, so the taste was not very good. However, Lu Rua's own brewed alcohol was different. She added some flowers, fresh fruits to the brew, which had a lower alcohol content, and the rich aroma of different fruits added a sweet and lingering taste that Mo Hua particularly liked. Besides beef, the meals also included some pastries, fruits, pine nuts, and beef noodles. With the help of neighborhood friends, preparations were complete, and the eatery opened on the first day of the month. Initially, according to the street naming tradition, the eatery was to be called Mo's Eatery, but at Mo Hua's suggestion and with Mo Shan's approval, it was finally renamed Lu's Eatery. Lu Ruha, unable to resist her son and husband, agreed. Chapter 38, Grand Opening. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. The pricing at the eatery was not expensive, considering most patrons were neighbors or common independent cultivators, who didn't have much to spend. This pricing strategy ensured that at least everyone could afford a meal, aiming for small profits but high turnover. The eatery's specialty was beef. A serving of beef was priced at 2 spirit stones per plate, which was not exactly cheap for independent cultivators, but compared to other eateries serving spiritual meat or beef, it was a bargain. Beef noodles were even cheaper. Plain noodles cost only 3 fragments of a spirit stone, and with beef added, the price was 6 fragments of a spirit stone. For an ordinary chi cultivating cultivator, a day's income was roughly 1 spirit stone plus a few fragments. A plate of beef required 2 days of hard work to afford. It was something to enjoy occasionally, but impossible to eat every day. However, for 2 spirit stones, one could have a meat dish, the only such offer in all of Tongxian City. Even just to satisfy a craving, a bowl of beef noodles cost only 6 fragments of a spirit stone. A few days after opening, the customer base had already started to grow. Local independent cultivators, while not able to afford meat daily, always had someone looking to indulge a bit and have a good meal every day. Some were chi cultivating cultivators from relatively well-off backgrounds who could afford to eat meat every few days. Others met with Taoist friends, not wanting to be too extravagant nor too frugal, so they would order a plate of beef with some side dishes to accompany their drinks. Some parents, seeing progress in their children's cultivation, would bring them for a spicy beef noodle treat to reward them. Occasionally, traveling merchants, weary from their journeys and hearing that the eatery served meat, both wanted to indulge but hesitated because they were short on money, would be wide-eyed upon hearing that a full plate of beef cost just 2 spirit stones. They were still wary, wondering if such cheap meat could taste good. But then, seeing how busy the eatery was, they figured the taste must not be too bad and decided to give it a try. Once they had a taste, they couldn't stop eating. From then on, traveling merchants regularly stopped at the eatery, ordering a plate of meat and a few drinks. Even those who used to pass by without stopping now paused to enjoy some meat and chat. Some merchants, who originally did not pass through, would even make a detour to the eatery just to savor the beef and relieve the fatigue of their long journeys. After all, within 100 miles, this was the only place where one could eat such delicious meat for so cheap. As more patrons came, the eatery became busier, and the 3 brothers from the Ming family came to help out. After a day's work, they would eat a big bowl of beef noodles and take some beef home, fully satisfied. But as the Tongxian sect was about to start its new term, there would soon be a shortage of hands. Mo Hua, not wanting his mother to overwork herself, suggested hiring someone to help. Mo Shan, considering his wife was still recovering and unable to use her spiritual power, agreed with Mo Hua's idea. After discussing with his wife, they hired a hunter's wife from the demon hunter team to help in the eatery for 30 spirit stones a month. The next day, a young-looking and shy woman came by, holding a basket of fresh wild vegetables still dewy from being picked that morning on the mountain. From his parents' conversation, Mo Hua knew the woman's surname was Zhang and her given name was Yun. Her husband, surnamed Chu, had been severely injured by a demonic wolf during a hunt, and the family had spent all their savings on his treatment. Though his life was saved, he was too injured to continue hunting, and the family had no income. Zhang Yun had a poor spiritual root and had left the sect after reaching only the 4th level of chi cultivation. A few years later, she married and had a child. After her husband was injured, she looked for work to support the family, but with her low level of cultivation, she couldn't earn much. The odd jobs she found paid very few spirit stones and were unstable. Plus, with a young child to care for, making ends meet was extremely difficult. Now, with a steady job at the eatery earning 30 spirit stones a month, she was very grateful. Zhang Yun was inherently introverted and not good with words. She wanted to express her thanks but could only repeat the few phrases of gratitude she knew, her face flushing with embarrassment. Lu Ruha quickly reassured her, telling her not to overthink and just focus on her work. Finally, Zhang Yun settled down, following Lu Ruha's instructions diligently. She was hardworking and meticulous, slow to learn but serious, which Lu Ruha found endearing. After closing for the night, Lu Ruha packed several bowls of noodles with extra pieces of meat for her to take home. Zhang Yun initially refused, her face turning red as she insisted, "Sister Lu, you have been too kind to me already. I can't take this." But Lu Ruha insisted, saying, "Take it for your child." Unable to refuse any longer, Zhang Yun accepted the food container, thinking of how to express her thanks, but still unable to articulate more than a few words of gratitude. Lu Ruha simply comforted her, "Don't think too much about it. It's getting late, go home and check on your child." Zhang Yun carefully carried the food container, and as she walked home, she paused at a corner, standing still as if in tears, then silently wiped her eyes with her sleeve before continuing on her way. From a distance, Mo Hua watched her retreating figure, his emotions complex. His family was not wealthy either, living from hand to mouth, but in Tangshan City, many independent cultivator families were even worse off. He wished that all cultivators in this world could be free from the struggles of making a living. Mo Hua thought quietly to himself. Lu's eatery had a smooth opening. Lu Ruha was busy with the eatery every day, looking thinner but healthier and more radiant. Running the eatery allowed her to study various diets and save spirit stones for her son's future cultivation and marriage. Lu Ruha felt very satisfied, her face often bright with smiles. Seeing his wife's current state, Mo Shan felt reassured. And Mo Hua, enjoying more delicious food, also became happier. With the eatery's opening, the family's income from spirit stones increased, and they no longer had to live as frugally as before. By the time Tangshan sect's term started, the eatery had profited over 200 spirit stones. Lu Ruha gave all the earned spirit stones to Mo Hua, urging him to choose a suitable cultivation technique at the sect and reminding him not to neglect his cultivation. Mo Hua nodded in agreement. The next day, as the summer vacation ended, Tangshan sect opened its gates, welcoming disciples back to school. Mo Hua waved goodbye to Lu Ruha at the foot of the mountain and then stepped into Tangshan sect. As disciples gradually returned to school, the previously quiet Tongling Peak became lively again. However, after 2 months of summer break, many disciples had become lax in their cultivation, and returning to school, their expressions carried a trace of nervousness. Yan Jiaoxi, in an effort to refocus everyone, abruptly announced a sudden array formation assessment. The lingering heat of summer was instantly quenched by this unexpected cold shower, leaving many disciples with a look of utter despair. This assessment was to be done on the spot, without the opportunity for any tricks. However, Mo Hua was not the least bit intimidated. He had already mastered drawing 5 array patterns, making him an experienced apprentice. The sect's basic array assessments were no challenge for him. Moreover, during the latter part of the summer break, he had practiced array formations day and night, pushing his spiritual sense to its limits and continuously strengthening it. Such a minor assessment was nothing to him, and he was confident it would be a piece of cake. But when the assessment papers were handed out, Mo Hua was taken aback. He checked several times to make sure, and finally realized that the assessment was not on individual array patterns, but a complete array formation, including 6 array patterns. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 39, Grading. Mo Hua frowned slightly. Something wasn't quite right. Why would the third-level Qi cultivation array examination include a formation with 6 array patterns? Could it be that the instructor had handed out the wrong exam papers? It seemed unlikely for the instructor to make such a mistake. Could there be a deeper meaning? At this point, several disciples were fervently writing, but most likely they knew nothing and couldn't leave the paper blank, so they were blindly sketching with their eyes closed. Mo Hua collected his thoughts and reminded himself. If the instructor has chosen to test us on a formation with 6 array patterns, there must be a purpose behind it, perhaps to show us the profound and extensive nature of array formations, and to prevent us from becoming arrogant. After calming his emotions, Mo Hua focused on studying the array. The name of the formation was Steady Water Formation, and while its purpose was not specified, it was well annotated. Although the formation included 6 array patterns, the patterns were fairly simple and had been discussed frequently during lectures, so they were not obscure. Still, memorizing the array patterns and learning to draw the formation in a short period of time, let alone completing it, was highly unlikely. If everyone failed to draw it, the instructor would likely grade based on the completeness of the formation. Mo Hua did his best to remember as much as he could. Once he began focusing on drawing the formation, time passed quickly, but when the examination time ended, Mo Hua had only managed to draw slightly more than 5 array patterns. He hadn't had time to check the drawn patterns for errors, which was a bit regrettable. He deeply understood that he still had a long way to go in mastering array formations. After completing the formation, it was sent to the Hall of Virtue at Tongling Peak. All the instructors of Tangshan sect would archive and grade the coursework there. Yan Jiaoxi, usually a stern instructor, now showed a displeased expression, looking quite dissatisfied at a middle-aged cultivator wearing the elder's robe of Tangshan sect. Elder Qian, what is the meaning of this? Weren't we only supposed to test the first 2 patterns of the steady water formation? Why was the entire formation tested? The path of array formations is profound and extensive. I wanted the disciples to understand this early on. And then, Yan Jiaoxi raised an eyebrow. Then, they will understand the difficulty and not foolishly aspire to become array masters. Elder Qian calmly stated, a formation with 6 array patterns is the threshold for becoming an array master. Such a challenging formation is not something these talentless outer sect disciples can learn. Yan Jiaoxi, suppressing his anger, said, I am the instructor of the outer sect. Isn't Elder Qian being a bit too interfering? Elder Yan, these outer sect disciples will never become array masters. Teaching them is a waste of time. How so? Elder Qian's demeanor became more polite. Elder Yan, we are all aware and greatly admire your level of skill in array formations. But with your talents, teaching these dim-witted outer sect disciples, especially those who are independent cultivators, don't you think it's beneath you? What do you mean? Yan Jiaoxi's gaze sharpened. Elder Qian earnestly said, if you agree, the Qian family would be honored to hire you as our instructor to teach our family members about array formations. Whether it's spirit stones, spiritual items, or inheritance of formations, just say the word, and we will do our best to satisfy your demands. Yan Jiaoxi blinked slowly, not speaking. Elder Qian paused, then added, of course, if you prefer not to leave Tangshan sect, that's fine too. I can recommend you to become an elder of the inner sect and teach array formations to the inner sect disciples, even the direct disciples. At that time, all the sect's direct disciples would have to respectfully address you as master, and your status would be much higher than that of a regular elder. Yan Jiaoxi was silent for a moment before slowly saying, and if I don't agree? Elder Qian's expression cooled. Why must Elder Yan be so stubborn? I teach array formations to pass on knowledge, not for these worldly gains, Yan Jiaoxi said. Elder Qian scoffed, fine, keep your noble act, and left without another word. Zhou Jiaoxi then said, Elder Yan, why bother? The Qian family is powerful, and we cannot afford to offend them. Yan Jiaoxi sighed, I just can't stand it. If things continue this way, the sect and the families will be indistinguishable, and these lower-level independent cultivators will have no way to pursue cultivation. Zhou Jiaoxi also sighed. When the old sect master was in charge, he could withstand the pressure from the Qian family. Now that he is aging and about to step down, Tangshan sect might change. Yan Jiaoxi also looked worried. From my point of view, Elder Qian did show you respect. You have indeed been very dedicated in teaching these outer sect disciples, but what good does it do? There aren't many who can go far on the path of array formations, and the lack of array masters among independent cultivators isn't without reason. Zhou Jiaoxi advised, don't let it come to a point where you can't even be an instructor. Unmoved, Yan Jiaoxi replied, as long as I am an instructor, I will do what needs to be done. Zhou Jiaoxi shook his head and said no more. Yan Jiaoxi sighed again and calmed himself before opening the array formation examination papers on his desk. Even if there were errors in the exam questions, he still took the grading seriously. Naturally, the results were a mess. Most disciples could only draw 1 or 2 array patterns, and some who didn't know how to draw anything sensible doodled random things to bluff their way through. Yan Jiaoxi silently noted down these disciples' names. Not knowing was understandable, but doodling carelessly was not. Some did better, usually those from wealthier families in Tongxian City who had been exposed to array formations from a young age. These disciples could generally draw 3 array patterns, which was the limit for a third-level Qi cultivator's spiritual sense, and already quite commendable. Yan Jiaoxi thought of Mo Hua, a child of an independent cultivator with an exceptional talent for spiritual sense, who was rare indeed. Based on Mo Hua's progress, he estimated that he could draw about 4.5 array patterns, possibly more if he hadn't slacked off during the summer break. As Yan Jiaoxi continued grading, he finally came across Mo Hua's paper and was startled when he opened it. The paper was neatly filled with 5.5 array patterns. The last half pattern was clearly rushed due to lack of time, but there were no mistakes in the technique. That is to say, Mo Hua, a third-level Qi cultivator, had managed to draw 5.5 array patterns on his first attempt at the steady water formation. 5.5 array patterns. This not only required experience and insight into array formations but also robust spiritual sense support. Yan Jiaoxi had seen Mo Hua draw array formations before. While he could draw 4 patterns, it was a bit forced, and his spiritual sense was not yet sufficiently broad. But 2 months had passed, and he had managed to draw 5.5 patterns of the steady water formation. If true, this indicated that not only was Mo Hua naturally gifted with extraordinary spiritual sense, but also that his spiritual sense was growing at an astonishing rate. Aside from cultivation progress, there were no known rapid methods to enhance spiritual sense. Yan Jiaoxi held his breath, unable to believe what he saw, and re-examined Mo Hua's paper before slowly exhaling, murmuring to himself, this can't be possible. Hearing this, Zhou Jiaoxi noticed Yan Jiaoxi's distracted state and asked, Elder Yan, what has happened? Regaining his composure, Yan Jiaoxi considered for a moment before saying, some disciples' array formations are just too far off the mark. I was momentarily taken aback. Zhou Jiaoxi showed a look of understanding. Teaching these disciples is indeed not easy. Elder Yan, don't take it too seriously. You should cultivate your character and maintain your calm. Yan Jiaoxi nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on Mo Hua's paper, his emotions fluctuating. The Quest for Immortality. Published by Ranobes. Chapter 40, Plans. Yan Jiaoxi stared at Mo Hua's exam paper, pondering for a moment before marking a grade A on it. Yan Jiaoxi then continued to correct other disciples' array methods. After a while, he remembered something, and flipped back to the previous papers, upgrading other disciples from grade B to grade A. Now, Mo Hua was not the only one who had achieved grade A. After finishing the corrections, Yan Jiaoxi sat at his desk lost in thought for a long time, muttering to himself. It seems I can no longer stay at the Tongxian sect. When the array exam papers were distributed, Mo Hua nodded at the grade A on his paper but wondered if the other Qi cultivating disciples could really draw the stabilizing water array. This was an array with 6 array patterns, after all. Curious, Mo Hua inquired around and heard that other disciples also received grade A, feeling surprised and reflective. There are always higher skies and people beyond us. I must not be complacent about my own level of array methods. What Mo Hua didn't realize was that his grade A was genuine, while the grade A others received was inflated by Yan Jiaoxi. Later, Mo Hua planned to continue his studies at the Tongxian sect, learning array methods, and after a while, consider choosing a technique to practice. But half a month later, he heard something utterly preposterous. Yan Jiaoxi is leaving the Tongxian sect, and henceforth, the outer sect will no longer teach array methods. Mo Hua stood rooted to the spot. No more array methods to learn. Mo Hua went to find Yan Jiaoxi, who looked at him with a complex expression, saying nothing, only telling Mo Hua to go back first and come find him again in a few days. After Mo Hua left, Yan Jiaoxi went to see Manager Mo. Have you heard anything about the matter I entrusted to you? Manager Mo handed Yan Jiaoxi a letter. The person you're looking for isn't in Tongxian City anymore. Here's the clue, but I can't guarantee its authenticity. Thank you. Manager Mo hesitated for a moment before saying, are you really planning to leave the Tongxian sect? Not just the Tongxian sect, I'll also leave Tongxian City. Will you ever come back? It's hard to say. Yan Jiaoxi forced a smile. Like you said, let's leave it to fate. Manager Mo wanted to persuade him, but thinking better of it, said nothing. He knew persuasion was futile. The parting of cultivators can be longer than their lifespan. In the end, without words, they had to substitute tea for wine and drank a cup together. Take care, said Manager Mo. Take care. Yan Jiaoxi nodded and disappeared into the bustling streets under Manager Mo's gaze. Staying in the outer sect of the Tongxian sect had become meaningless without the teaching of array methods. Moreover, Yan Jiaoxi kept the issue of the independent cultivator's array diagram in his heart and wouldn't give it up. Before leaving Tongxian City, Yan Jiaoxi's last task was to find an array master for Mo Hua. He prepared some fine wine and tea gifts, knocking on the door of a cave dwelling on North Street in Tongxian City. This cave dwelling was one of the grandest on the street, splendid and luxurious. The owner of the cave dwelling was one of the 2 first-rate array masters in Tongxian City, known as Master Luo. Yan Jiaoxi presented the tea gifts, explaining his purpose. Master Luo, having good relations with Yan Jiaoxi, was intrigued and said, does this child truly possess such talent to warrant Yan's personal plea? Yan Jiaoxi showed Master Luo the blazing fire array diagram drawn by Mo Hua. This was drawn by him when he was at the 3rd level of Qi cultivation. He didn't bring out the stabilizing water array with 5.5 array patterns that Mo Hua had drawn, as it would draw too much attention. Generally, at the 3rd level of Qi cultivation, being able to draw an array with 3 array patterns was already considered exceptional. Master Luo's eyes lit up and he nodded, indeed not bad. After reviewing the blazing fire array diagram, he asked, which family does he belong to? The Qian family, the Yin family, or the Chen family? Yan Jiaoxi fell silent for a moment and said, he's an independent cultivator, not from any family. Master Luo then became quiet, his interest fading significantly. Yan Jiaoxi tentatively asked, does Master have any concerns? Teaching an independent cultivator is troublesome, Master Luo said. Brother Luo. Master Luo waved his hand, Yan, you know what I mean, but taking an independent cultivator as an apprentice is complicated. You should understand. Mo Hua is young but sensible, diligent, and has a high talent for arrays. Just a little guidance from you, Brother Luo, and his future in array methods would be limitless, Yan Jiaoxi earnestly said. That's not the issue. Master Luo sighed. Regardless of his talent or comprehension, it's about the fees for accepting a disciple. Can he afford it? Master Luo stood up, pacing slowly. It's not that I covet these fees, but there are rules to accepting disciples. I've taken many disciples, and each has paid a significant fee. If only he can't afford it or pays less, how would I explain it to the other disciples? Even if they don't say anything, they would surely feel some resentment, thinking I am biased. Not just the fees for discipleship, but the costs of paper, ink, and other materials for studying arrays. Can an independent cultivator's background support that? And even if he eventually becomes proficient, becoming an array master, he still has only 2 paths, to attach to a family or a sect. If he doesn't attach, his cultivation and study of arrays would be very difficult. If he does attach, then it's like selling himself, losing his own name, background, and parents, not his own master anymore. How could he still regard me as his master? So, whether taking him as an apprentice or a disciple, there's no benefit to me. Master Luo finished speaking and sat down to drink some tea. Yan Jiaoxi remained silent, understanding Master Luo's points, with nothing to refute. He had hoped that seeing Mo Hua's exceptional talent, Master Luo would at least consider, but it seemed he had oversimplified things. Independent cultivators without an array master had their reasons. Yan Jiaoxi looked dejected. Seeing this, Master Luo also sighed, his tone softening. If he had any family background, even a minor one, I could have accepted him. But as an independent cultivator, there are too many concerns, and I don't have the energy for it. It's too hard for an independent cultivator to become an array master. Master Luo lamented. Yan Jiaoxi still wanted to try one last time and said, Mo Hua's talent in array methods is truly unparalleled, as he started to bring out the stabilizing water array with 5.5 array patterns. But before he could fully present it, Master Luo said, it doesn't matter if he can draw 3 array patterns, even if he could draw 4 or 5 array patterns at the 3rd level of Qi cultivation, I wouldn't accept him. Yan Jiaoxi's hand stopped, and with no other option, he put the array back. Brother Luo, is there really no way? Yan, you can come here anytime to discuss or chat, but on this matter, there's no room for negotiation. Brother Luo, Yan Jiaoxi had nothing more to say, only sighing, just don't regret it later. Many cultivators have said that to me, but Luo has never regretted it to this day. The two remained silent, and Master Luo poured tea to see his guest off. Yan Jiaoxi sighed, looking disappointed, and stood up to leave. After Yan Jiaoxi left, Master Luo sat in the room, with a disciple serving him tea, who quietly asked, Master, if he can indeed draw the blazing fire ray at the 3rd level of Qi cultivation, then his talent is truly remarkable. Yes, Master Luo picked up his tea, taking a sip, but what use is high talent? Cultivation isn't just about talent. How many people were brilliant in their youth but ended up indistinguishable from others? Spirit stones, heritage, family background, all these are crucial. Without them, talent is just rootless vegetation, bound to wither eventually. But, Master, if you just gave him a few pointers, he would at least be grateful to you. Master Luo shook his head. You're oversimplifying human nature. Coming from a poor independent cultivator background, they tend to be radical in temperament. A slight mishap could easily breed resentment, creating more enemies than gratitude. Why should I muddy the waters? Master's words are wise, but such talent is indeed a pity. It is a pity. Master Luo put down his teacup, sighing, but that's fate, and it can't be forced. Chapter 41, Visitation. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Master Luo is a first-grade array master and has refused the request of Yan Jiaoxi. With no alternatives, Yan Jiaoxi had to settle for less, seeking array masters who, while not officially ranked, have studied the path of arrays for many years, to take Mo Hua as a disciple. However, some outright refused, others made excuses, and some, although they agreed, made such unreasonable demands that accepting them would mean Mo Hua would spend his life merely as a tool or puppet, devoid of any freedom, akin to selling oneself. After days of fruitless searching, Yan Jiaoxi returned to his residence and sat alone, deeply sighing. Time was short as he would soon leave. If he could not find a suitable master, Mo Hua's progress in array cultivation might be hindered. After much deliberation, Yan Jiaoxi seemed to have made up his mind. He carefully sealed Mo Hua's test papers and placed them in a storage bag. In the evening, Yan Jiaoxi left Tongxian City, heading southeast towards a mountain peak outside the city. This southeastern mountain of Tongxian City was secluded and beautifully scenic, creating its own tranquil charm. There were no signs or gates, just a small path leading into the residence nestled in the mountains. Standing at the foot of the mountain, Yan Jiaoxi heard a frail voice after a long silence. Please. The voice seemed close yet echoed in his sea of consciousness. Yan Jiaoxi adjusted his Taoist robe, patted his storage bag, and with a resolved expression, began ascending the mountain. Meanwhile, Mo Hua planned to withdraw from Tongxian sect. Being merely an outer sect disciple, his relationship with the sect was primarily a transactional one based on the cultivation of his spirit stones. There was little emotional connection. Especially since Yan Jiaoxi was leaving, and the outer sect would no longer teach arrays, there was no point in Mo Hua staying. His spiritual root destined that his spiritual power wouldn't be strong, and his cultivation speed wouldn't be fast. The other teachings of the sect, such as body refining, pill concoction, artifact crafting, and talisman making, were also of limited use to Mo Hua, worthless to learn but also a pity to abandon. The only prospect for Mo Hua in cultivation was in arrays. But within the outer sect, aside from Yan Jiaoxi, Mo Hua believed no one else could teach him arrays. Da Hu and the other two also planned to withdraw from the sect. However, their reason wasn't educational but economic, as their families were too poor to afford the increased sect dues and various fees. According to Mo Hua, the old sect leader would retire in a few months and no longer involve himself in the sect's affairs, leaving Elder Qian in charge, or essentially, the Qian family. The Qian family planned to reform the sect with various methods, but the core idea was to increase the collection of spirit stones. Whether it was pill concoction, artifact crafting, or talisman making, the sect previously taught only the basics. Now, they would teach more advanced techniques, but at an additional cost of spirit stones. Including the previously free transmission of techniques, Elder Qian had added a fee with the rationale that sect teachings are precious and not easy to pass on, hence they come at a cost. With these reforms, wealthy family disciples or those from affluent backgrounds could afford more spirit stones to receive better teachings. But the poorer disciples, especially independent cultivators in the outer sect, could barely learn anything new and had to pay even more in spirit stones as sect dues. For such independent disciples, other than withdrawing, there was no other choice. Thus, through these reforms, Tongxian sect was gradually purging its poorer disciples based on their family's economic status, leaving these low-level independent disciples with no choice but to fend for themselves in their future cultivation. Mo Hua discussed his plan to withdraw with his parents. Mo Shan was not entirely agreeable but recognized the inevitability of the situation. It wasn't just about Mo Hua, but about all the lower-class independent cultivators in Tongxian City. Lu Ruha was indifferent. Knowing Mo Hua's dedication to his cultivation and that he had his own plans, she didn't object. Now that the restaurant business was doing well, even if her son did nothing at home, she could well afford to support him. Thus, Mo Hua, at the 3rd level of Qi cultivation, withdrew from Tongxian sect. He simply processed his withdrawal of the sect, receiving back half a year's dues, about 50 to 60 spirit stones. After withdrawing, the biggest issue was the cultivation techniques. Mo Shan agreed to explore the demon hunter path to see if there were suitable techniques for Mo Hua to practice, but this would take some time. The other issue was arrays. Without the sect's guidance, Mo Hua had to rely on himself to learn, or perhaps find an array master to take him as a disciple. But Mo Hua knew, for independent cultivators like himself, it was difficult to find an array master willing to teach, as not all were as open-hearted and keen to impart knowledge as Yan Jiaoxi. Mo Hua planned to visit Yan Jiaoxi to thank him for his careful guidance during this period. But he didn't know where Yan Jiaoxi lived, and just as he was about to ask the steward for information, Yan Jiaoxi found him. Having not seen each other for a few days, Yan Jiaoxi looked somewhat weary, as if he had been busy with something. Mo Hua respectfully greeted Yan Jiaoxi, who nodded and asked, "Do you still want to learn arrays?" Mo Hua nodded. Yan Jiaoxi approvingly glanced at Mo Hua and said, "Follow me." He took Mo Hua to a mountain peak outside Tongxian City, to the southeast. Mo Hua remembered Da Hu mentioning that this mountain seemed to have been purchased by someone for secluded cultivation, keeping it off limits to cultivators. The mountain had no demonic beasts, precious herbs, or spirit mines. Its only merit was its scenic beauty and tranquil environment. Tongxian City, bustling with independent cultivators, wouldn't linger for the landscape, so it was rarely visited by cultivators. Yan Jiaoxi brought Mo Hua to the foot of the mountain and said, "There lives a reclusive master on this mountain, whom I met by chance. I don't usually disturb him, but since I'm leaving in a few days, I wanted you to meet him." "Does this master know arrays?" Mo Hua curiously asked. Yan Jiaoxi nodded. "Indeed, this master is highly skilled in arrays." "Is he a first-grade array master?" Mo Hua asked. "I'm not sure of his exact rank, but he's at least first grade," Yan Jiaoxi replied. Mo Hua respectfully admired the possibility. Just being a first-grade array master was impressive enough, and Mo Hua dared not even contemplate the abilities of those beyond that rank. Could they truly possess the legendary power to steal creation and alter the heavens and earth, as rumored? Why does this master live in such a secluded place? Because he dislikes noise? Mo Hua asked further. The master is naturally detached and dislikes worldly matters, hence he doesn't wish to be disturbed. This mountain peak is seldom visited, Yan Jiaoxi explained. Looking at Mo Hua, Yan Jiaoxi said, "You've guessed why I brought you here, haven't you?" Mo Hua nodded. "To have this master take me as a disciple?" Yan Jiaoxi nodded. "You guessed correctly. What I can teach you is limited, so I hope the master can guide you further." "You've already taught me a lot," Mo Hua gratefully said. "What I can teach you pales in comparison to what the master can offer." "But," Yan Jiaoxi shook his head, "you're young and don't fully understand. The more you see, the more you'll realize the vastness and depth of array cultivation, which cannot be comprehended by merely chi cultivating or even foundation building cultivators. Your spiritual sense is exceptional, your comprehension good, and you are diligent. You're a promising student for learning arrays, so you must cherish this rare talent and not waste it. Today, I bring you here hoping you can be accepted by the master. His nature is reserved, and he's reluctant to take disciples. Even if you could be a nominal disciple, learning even a little would help you progress further in the path of arrays." Yan Jiaoxi gestured forward, indicating the mountain path that stretched up to the mid-slopes, shrouded in mist. In the mist, a simple yet mysterious courtyard gate could be seen. Yan Jiaoxi instructed, "Proceed up the mountain alone, be respectful, and answer honestly to whatever the master asks. If he takes you as his disciple, it will be your good fortune. If not, don't be discouraged. It simply means the fortune has not yet arrived." Mo Hua nodded seriously, then couldn't help but glance at Yan Jiaoxi. "Teacher." "Go on," Yan Jiaoxi said no more but waved his hand. Mo Hua hesitated for a moment, then with a firm stride, began his ascent up the mountain. Chapter 42, The Path of the Heart. Published by Ranobes. The Quest for Immortality. Among the mountains, there is a mist, and within the mist, a courtyard, enclosed by a bamboo gate at the end of a narrow path that snakes down to the feet of Mo Hua. It appears entirely unremarkable. Mo Hua steps onto the path and immediately senses a fluctuation, as if something has been activated. Yet looking around, the peaks are still just peaks, the trees remain trees, and the flowers and grass are unchanged. Mo Hua pauses and surveys his surroundings, but discerns nothing unusual. Mo Hua has heard that some venerable seniors enjoy setting up arrays or scenarios to test others. Perhaps the master on the mountain has similar inclinations. Or could it be that this very path is itself a test? Mo Hua feels inexplicably nervous. Since he is an array master and there are waves of spiritual sense, there likely is an array set up on this path. But what kind of array could it be? With Mo Hua's limited experience with arrays, he is clueless. No matter how he looks, the scenery around him seems no different. As Mo Hua walks, he ponders, but comes to no conclusion. He simply remembers the instructions of his teacher. To keep a clear mind, let things come naturally, neither forcing nor discouraging himself. Walking on, he soon reaches the gate of the courtyard. The bamboo gate of the courtyard is simple but charming. Beyond the gate, the view opens up to a beautifully scenic yard, with elegant bamboo dwellings, verdant grass underfoot, mist over the pond, and cranes sipping dew. A sight that lifts the spirits. In the yard stands a gaunt old man. Mo Hua quickly greets him. "Greetings, sir." The old man's voice is as raspy and dry as his appearance, sounding like wind through decaying wood. "I am not the master. The master is inside. Follow me." He leads Mo Hua into one of the bamboo dwellings, which is refreshingly cool and open to breezes on all sides. In the middle of the room sits a middle-aged cultivator in white robes, his demeanor effortlessly graceful and unconstrained, giving off an aura of detachment, as if all of creation could not linger in his heart. This was the most transcendental person Mo Hua had ever encountered. The middle-aged cultivator greets Mo Hua with a casual smile. "You must be Mo Hua. Mr. Yan has told me about you. I'll ask, and you answer freely, without restraint. Speak your mind." Mo Hua bows. "Yes, sir." The cultivator introduces himself. "My surname is Zhuang. You may call me Mr. Zhuang." Mo Hua bows again. "Mr. Zhuang." Mr. Zhuang nods slightly. "When you passed that path on the mountain, what did you see?" Mo Hua thinks and replies. "There were mountains, trees, flowers, grass, and a path." "Anything else?" Mr. Zhuang asks with interest. "Did you see anything else? Perhaps people or events?" Mo Hua shakes his head. Mr. Zhuang reveals, "That path contains an array called the water mirror array, gifted to me long ago by a fellow Taoist. The first time someone walks it, it can reveal some of their circumstances or even predict some aspects of their future." Mo Hua is shocked. Such an array exists that can reveal one's circumstances and future? Then what does it mean that he saw nothing? Surely it doesn't mean he has no future. Mo Hua is momentarily anxious, but recalling Mr. Yan's earlier advice, he honestly says, "I saw nothing else." Mr. Zhuang looks surprised, then nods. "I understand." He then produces an array diagram and continues. "Here are some brushes and ink. Draw as much of this array as you can from this diagram." Mo Hua looks at the diagram. It's the stabilizing water array, the same one Mr. Yan had used to test him previously. "Yes." Mo Hua takes the paper and brush, and following the diagram, begins to draw the array. An hour later, his spiritual sense exhausted, he has only managed to draw 5.5 lines of the array pattern. Since he last attempted the stabilizing water array only a few days ago, his spiritual sense hadn't grown fast enough to complete 6 lines in such a short period. His attempt this time is more skilled, and his strokes more precise. Mr. Zhuang examines Mo Hua's drawing of the array, raises an eyebrow slightly, then says, "Not bad. Would you like to become a recorded disciple here? I won't teach you the specific sector arrays, but if you wish to learn the common arrays of the cultivation world, I am willing to teach you." Though unsure why, Mo Hua feels he has somehow passed Mr. Zhuang's test. Mo Hua is overjoyed and respectfully bows to Mr. Zhuang, saying, "Thank you, sir, I am willing." In the cultivation world, there are 2 types of master-disciple relationships, recorded disciples and direct disciples. Direct disciples address their masters as master, and receive personal instruction, forming a deep bond akin to parent and child. Recorded disciples are more casual. They can learn whatever they wish, though they cannot address their master as master, only as sir. There is still affection between them, but not as profound as between direct disciples. However, Mo Hua is grateful that Mr. Zhuang is willing to accept him as a recorded disciple. Mr. Zhuang nods and says, "Return today and come back tomorrow at dawn. I will begin teaching you some array techniques." "Understood, sir." Mo Hua bows once more, this time as a disciple bidding farewell to his master, then respectfully takes his leave from Mr. Zhuang's courtyard. As he descends the mountain, he finds Mr. Yan still waiting at the foot. Learning that Mr. Zhuang has agreed to take him as a disciple, Mr. Yan breathes a sigh of relief and advises Mo Hua. "You are fortunate to have caught Mr. Zhuang's attention. Treasure this opportunity. He is a great master. Show him respect." "Yes, teacher," Mo Hua responds. They walk along the mountain path for a while until Mo Hua suddenly becomes curious and asks, "Teacher, have you been to Mr. Zhuang's courtyard? What did you see when you passed that path?" Mr. Yan turns to look at Mo Hua silently for a moment before saying, "When I passed that path, I faintly saw some scenes. Those fleeting images told me that Mr. Zhuang was willing to accept you as his disciple and that you would become an outstanding array master in the future." After saying this, they arrive at a crossroad, and ahead lies Tongxian City. Mr. Yan looks at Mo Hua, then solemnly says, Mo Hua. Mo Hua turns back, and after a moment of hesitation, Mr. Yan continues. Array masters seek the Tao, which is boundless, while human life is fleeting. Only by passing down arrays from generation to generation can cultivators possibly comprehend the Tao and benefit all beings with their arrays. In the future, if you become a high-ranking array master, or even higher, and encounter cultivators with good character and talent in arrays, I hope you will not hesitate to guide them. The path of arrays is like water. Only by passing it on can it flow far and wide. Otherwise, it will remain stagnant. Mo Hua suddenly feels the weight on his shoulders. He bows to Mr. Yan earnestly, saying, I will remember, teacher. Mr. Yan looks relieved. Mo Hua can't help but ask, Teacher, are you leaving Tongxian City? Mr. Yan nods. I cannot stay in Tongxian sect any longer, and I have some personal matters to attend to. I will be leaving soon. Will I see you again? Mr. Yan looks into Mo Hua's dark and clear eyes, smiling. We'll see how fate decides. He reaches out to ruffle Mo Hua's hair. Go back to your parents and tell them the news. Mo Hua heads towards the city gate, but after a few steps, he turns back and bows to Mr. Yan once more. Mr. Yan waves his hand gently and says, Go on. He watches Mo Hua until his figure becomes small in the misty mountains, then turns and walks away. At that moment, Mo Hua turns back again to look at Mr.